Imagine waking up to discover that the entire world has been thrown into a brutal survival game. Every survivor receives a random vehicle, every road is crawling with monsters, and every mile forward could be your last. Most people are lucky if they can outrun the undead in a rusty sedan. I awakened a system that lets me reroll fate itself. One golden tank later, I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was hunting. As the roads filled with mutated beasts, elite players, ruthless factions, and impossible trials designed to kill anyone reckless enough to challenge them, one name started spreading through the global chat like a nightmare. Xiao Yao, the guy who crushed zombie hordes beneath 40 tons of steel. The player who walked into legendary trials everyone else fled from. The whole world had just crossed over into this nightmare the road survival. We were all thrust into this wasteland with a randomly assigned vehicle to keep us alive. While everyone else was struggling to survive in their junkers, barely scraping by, I was about to drop into a golden tier muscle tank and carve a path of destruction through the zombie hordes. Why? Because I'd awakened the Lucky Emperor refresh system. Every single time I opened a chest, I could refresh the results up to 10 times. And the 10th refresh was guaranteed to drop a purple tier reward or better. With my heart hammering against my ribs, I stared at the vehicle supply chest in front of me. I slammed the open button, and 3 options materialized. A gray quality mountain bike, a white quality road motorcycle, and a blue quality family B-class sedan. Honestly, the highest being blue was a total letdown. I clicked refresh. Blue quality off-road sedan, blue quality C-class sedan, gray quality road bike. I wasn't about to settle for that. I kept refreshing, but reality quickly set in. Getting high-tier loot was basically a skill issue. 8 consecutive refreshes, and I was still staring at nothing but blue quality trash. Finally, on the 9th pull, something decent popped up, a purple quality F1 racing car. It boasted insane speed and grip, with a theoretical top speed of 450 kilometers per hour, provided the road stayed perfectly flat. Finally a win, I muttered, but it felt underwhelming. In this apocalypse, raw speed wasn't the goal, I just needed to outrun the zombies. Plus, a racer had practically zero storage space. That was a death sentence in the long run. I clicked refresh one more time. Ding. This is your final refresh. A purple tier or higher reward is guaranteed. Even here, I couldn't escape the pity system. It's giving main character energy, specifically the kind that has to grind for everything. I took a deep breath and hit the button. A brilliant, blinding golden light erupted before my eyes, nearly searing my retinas. 3 options shimmered into view. 2 of them were absolute garbage, but the third. It radiated a golden aura that practically screamed dominance. Muscle tank, gold quality, possesses overwhelming impact force and massive storage space. The undisputed overlord of the road and a true arc for surviving the end of days. Talk about a glow-up. I had expected to hit the pity system and walk away with a mediocre purple, but I hit the jackpot instead. I claimed the vehicle without a second of hesitation. In a flash of light, I was teleported inside a hulking iron beast. I looked around at the luxurious, spacious interior, feeling a wave of genuine safety I didn't think was possible in this hellscape. Then, the system chimed again. Congratulations, player Xiao Yao, for entering the Doomsday Road survival. Please collect supplies to upgrade your vehicle. Note, all vehicles feature autonomous driving, though manual control increases speed by 22%. You have a 3-day protection period where you are completely invincible. Please reach the first town as soon as possible to claim your beginner weapon chest. I looked at the dashboard, feeling like I'd just hacked the game. I couldn't wait to reach that town. I was dying to know what kind of gear I'd pull from that weapon chest. Hopefully it wasn't another case of task failed successfully. I pulled up the vehicle stats to get a better look at my new home. Vehicle, muscle tank, level 1, top speed, 180 kilometers per hour. I quickly realized that this world didn't require fuel. My vehicle absorbed radiation from the sun during the day to sustain itself. That was a massive weight off my shoulders at least. I wouldn't be stranded in the middle of nowhere because I forgot to fill up. Since my muscle tank was a gold quality masterpiece, it came loaded with 2 passive perks. First, it had infinite growth potential. Its size and stats would scale with every level up. Second, I could tether a sub-vehicle to it and swap between them whenever I wanted. Honestly, the math ain't mathing. How is it this broken? Having a backup vehicle meant I wouldn't have to sweat it if someone tried to track my primary ride. I pulled up the upgrade panel to see what it would take to evolve this beast. The requirements were steep: 5 tons of metal, 1 ton of plastic, 0.25 tons of glass, 0.5 tons of rubber, and 10 metal coins. Fortunately, I had an absorption skill that allowed me to harvest materials directly, which was a lifesaver. Without it, I'd be hauling scrap metal until my back gave out. My patience is definitely under maintenance, so having a shortcut felt like a blessing. After taking in the basics, I set my destination to the beginner town, Peaceful Valley, and flicked the switch for autonomous driving. While the car navigated the wasteland, I killed time in the system chat channel to see what the competition was dealing with. I just grabbed my weapon chest. One user, A-kun, posted. Pulled a few blue quality weapons, settled on a beta type blade for now. Same here, just standard blue tier junk, another replied. Grabbed a sword for self-defense. Then came Nai Long. I actually pulled a purple quality pistol. Not bad, right? The chat was popping off. The more I read, the more I realized that these weapon chests weren't just for blades. High-tier firearms were definitely on the table. Before long, a notification chime cut through the silence. Destination reached. Beginner town. Weapon chest issued. Note, the town is a public safe zone, but it's also crawling with hidden dangers. I arrived at Peaceful Valley and immediately claimed my chest. I wasn't settling for anything less than a firearm this time. I opened it up, and my hopes took a nosedive. Nepal Dragon Slayer, blue, Iron Sword, blue, and a Malay Chris, white. It was just more melee trash. I hit the refresh button, but the results were just as disappointing. More blue-tier police batons and shields, or white-tier tools like wrenches and axes. It's giving main character energy, but the kind that gets bullied by the RNG. I kept hammering the refresh button. Then, on the 8th pull, the screen erupted in that familiar blinding golden light. My jaw dropped. I was nowhere near the pity count. I was essentially speedrunning the loot system. I leaned in, eyes locked on the prize. M249 light machine gun, gold. Boasts devastating firepower and sustained output. Recognized as one of the ultimate weapons in the apocalyptic wasteland. I couldn't help but grin. My luck was absolutely cracked today. The M249, the legendary Big Pineapple, was a beauty. It fired 5.56mm rounds at a blistering rate of 1,000 per minute, backed by a 1,000-round reserve and an ammo belt that seemed to never end. I didn't hesitate for a second. I claimed at bad boy immediately. They say all fear comes from a lack of firepower, and honestly, holding this thing was the kind of romance only a guy could truly appreciate. I hopped into my muscle tank, feeling like I could take on the world. With the M249 providing some serious backup, even a lion would have to think twice before tangling with me. The road ahead was a mess of crumbling asphalt and dilapidated buildings, with swarms of the undead shuffling through the streets like they were looking for a place to clock in. Individual zombies were low threat, but a full-blown horde? That was catastrophic. Still, looking at the pack of zombies ahead, I didn't feel panic. I felt a rush of adrenaline. I've always believed that truth only exists within the range of a cannon, and I've been dying to test out my tank's raw power. I floored the gas and charged right into the mess. The sound of impacts was music to my ears. Bang, bang, crash as zombies were sent flying hundreds of meters through the air. Suddenly, a flicker of white light caught my eye. I squinted and realized it was a loot chest dropping from a downed zombie. Notification, killed zombie. Dropped white quality loot chest. Random rewards below white tier plus 5 metal coins. Wait, farming mobs drops loot chests. These weren't a horde. They were bags of gold walking around waiting to be claimed. I spun the tank around and started drifting through the crowd, turning the street into my own personal playground. In no time, I'd collected 5 more chests. Honestly, running them over started to feel a bit repetitive, so I grabbed the M249 and stepped out of the tank. System alert, player level 1. Outdoor activity limit, 2 hours. Time was money. I braced the machine gun against my shoulder and let the lead fly. The sheer thrill of the spray was unreal. I was racking up loot chests like I was playing an arcade game. My brain had too many tabs open, but the only one that mattered was this sweet damage output. By the time the street was clear, I had 6 more chests in my inventory. The drop rate was insane. It felt like hitting one hit 999 in a classic RPG. With the immediate threat neutralized, I scanned the area and spotted a supermarket. It was stocked with food and drinks, though, naturally, it was crawling with more undead. To anyone else, it looked like a death trap. To me, those were just walking loot boxes waiting to be opened. I didn't even bother with a stealth approach. I just pulled the trigger. Within seconds, the supermarket was a mess of gore, and I was the proud owner of 2 more white chests. Once I cleaned up, I grabbed a stack of shopping bags from the counter and started raiding. I loaded dozens of bags of canned goods, instant noodles, and ham into the tank, along with enough water and soda to last a lifetime. I threw in every snack, fruit, and living supply I could find. Doing a quick mental tally, I had enough food to last me months. Anything extra could be used for trade later. Looking at my warehouse packed to the brim, the exhaustion of the day vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated satisfaction. I had actually achieved food freedom in the middle of the apocalypse. It's giving main character energy, for sure. With my stomach sorted, I turned my attention to gathering materials for the vehicle upgrades. I walked over to a metal shelving unit, placed my hand on it, and activated my absorption skill. In the blink of an eye, the metal twisted and bent, dissolving straight into my palm. Ding! You have obtained 0.1 tons of glass and 0.5 tons of metal. This was way more efficient than manual labor. I felt like I was on a roll, so I tracked down a local hardware store and got to work. I left with a haul that included everything from lighters to raw supplies. I grabbed some flashlights and other essentials before wandering into a massive shopping mall. To my surprise, the shelves had been picked clean of supplies, but the place was crawling with hundreds, maybe thousands of zombies. As they surged toward me, like a literal flood of rot, I couldn't help but grin. This wasn't a survival scenario, this was pure combat-grade entertainment. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger on the M249, and a torrent of lead erupted from the barrel, shredding the front line of the horde instantly. The sheer firepower kept them from even getting within clawing distance. By the time I cleared the wave, I'd netted 13 white tier loot chests. Feeling the rhythm, I moved to the 3rd floor, hitting the home appliance section. I scavenged several electric kettles, hair dryers, and induction cookers. Basically, all the creature comforts I could manage to haul. I didn't stop there. I used my absorption skill to break down every piece of scrap metal and plastic in the store. After the mall was essentially stripped down to its studs, I raided a nearby restaurant, grabbing every pot, pan, chair, and table I could get my hands on. 2 hours of outdoor time flew by. I'd basically turned the entire town into my personal warehouse, and as I finally climbed back into my muscle tank, I felt a deep, satisfied exhaustion. Working hard or hardly working? Definitely the former. Just as I settled in, the system chimed, ding, initiating decontamination process to clear Z radiation from the player. Duration, 10 hours. Looks like I'm taking a mandatory nap. I set the vehicle to autonomous mode and, while the system worked its magic, I pulled up the chat interface to see how the rest of the world was coping. Is everyone holding up okay? One user posted. I fought like hell just to grab 3 bags of instant noodles from a zombie swarm. I can't even get near the market, another lamented. The streets are packed. I'm just trying to stay alive. I don't know if the guys I was talking to this morning even made it. I managed to kill 1 zombie. A third person chimed in. Got a white loot chest for my trouble. Whoa, you're a beast. I'm still just hiding every time I see one of them. Scrolling through the messages, it was clear that everyone else was struggling just to exist. Compared to them, my life of relative luxury felt almost guilty, but hey, I wasn't complaining. It's giving main character energy, and honestly, I was loving it. Speaking of loot, I realized I had dozens of unopened chests sitting in my inventory. I pulled out the 21 white chests I'd farmed today, my heart racing with anticipation. Click, pop, clatter. The rewards started rolling out. A pack of sanitary pads, white, a bag of instant noodles, gray, an electric kettle, white, and then, something that actually caught my eye. Zombie antitoxin, white. Description: effective at treating infections caused by low-level zombie bites. Not bad. Even though my current combat power meant I wasn't exactly worried about getting bitten, having a get-out-of-jail-free card in my back pocket was a massive relief. I kept opening them, watching as a mountain of random supplies piled up around me. I really am living the dream. Who knew the apocalypse could come with a side of retail therapy? After pocketing the loot, I kept hitting the refresh button, hoping to strike gold again. A new option popped up that I'd never seen before. Vehicle module. White quality spikes. These things would generate 5 cm steel spikes on my bumper. They couldn't be repaired once damaged, but I could fuse identical modules to upgrade them, eventually evolving them into blue quality gear at level 5. The spikes were a perfect match for my muscle tank. It was basically a match made in heaven. I claimed them without a second thought, my goal now clearly defined. I needed to farm as many vehicle modules as possible. I tore through the rest of the white chests, and the haul was incredible. I walked away with structural reinforcements, reinforced glass, a mini fridge, a built-in bed, and bulletproof tires. Plus, my stash of metal coins had grown by 105. Honestly, I felt like a kid in a candy store. If more zombies could just do me the favor of dropping more chests, I'd be set for life. With my inventory sorted, I pulled up the vehicle upgrade interface. Thanks to my earlier obsession with absorbing every piece of scrap I could find, I already had all the materials for my first major upgrade. Ding! Sufficient upgrade materials detected. Would you like to proceed? I didn't hesitate. Upgrade. Upgrade successful. Muscle tank modified. Reach level 2. Top speed 200 km per hour. Fuel capacity 2,000 units. Consumption 100 units per 100 kilometers. Overall performance, weight, structural integrity, and traction increased. Player granted 10 attribute points. My speed had nearly doubled. Between the structural upgrades and those new spikes, I felt like I could plow through a horde 10 times the size of the one I just cleared and come out without a scratch. I was loving it. I turned my attention to my character's stats. Player, Xiao Yao, attributes, strength, speed, spirit. Strength and speed were obvious choices for survival, but spirit felt a bit like a dump stat, though I knew better than to neglect it entirely. Still, I was torn on how to distribute the points. Ultimately, I decided to dump most of them into strength. After all, the hardest part of my day hadn't been fighting the undead, it was lugging all those heavy supplies back to the car. If I had brute strength, I could dominate this wasteland without breaking a sweat. I assigned 10 points to strength and split the remaining points between speed and spirit. As soon as the confirmation blinked, I felt a surge of raw power ripple through my muscles. It was like I just hit the I'm built different button. I could practically feel the potential to lift a ton of steel with one hand, and my reflexes were noticeably sharper. Feeling refreshed, I broke out a self-heating hot pot and a few drinks. I kicked back in the driver's seat, enjoying the feast while scrolling through the chat channel. My luck is pretty decent, one user bragged. Got plenty of food from the white chests. Are there any pros out there? Another pleaded. I'm starving. Can someone spare some food? I've got plenty of supplies, a reply popped up. Any girls want to form a team? Just listen to me, and food won't be an issue. Typical. I could see right through that guy's pathetic attempt at being an alpha. It was obvious that everyone had made it to the beginner town by now, but the gear gap was already creating a massive divide in standard of living. It was a dog-eat-dog world or, well, a zombie-eat-everyone world. Hey guys, someone suddenly posted, breaking the stream of begging and posturing. Is there some kind of military sweep happening near us? Military? Are you high? Another replied immediately. Bro, have you been bitten? There's no military out here. That's impossible. The first user typed back. My heart skipped a beat. If they weren't military, what the hell were they seeing? I just passed through a town, and honestly, the place was a wreck. Buildings were shredded, and the zombies were turned into Swiss cheese. Wait, that actually sounds like something I did. Looks like someone else went through after I cleared the area, I murmured to myself. I watched as the chat exploded in response. You're serious? There's a hero like that out there? No reason to lie, the original poster replied. I'm just trying to find whoever it was to say thanks. There were enough leftover supplies for me to survive a while longer. You're so lucky. I wish I had a high-tier player carrying me. Big boss, are you seeing this? Please, take me in. I'll do whatever you want. Watching the desperation unfold in the chat, I felt a secret sense of pride. Still, I wasn't about to blow my cover. Rule number 1 of the apocalypse. Keep your head down and prioritize your own survival. That interaction gave me something to chew on, though. If there was an order to this exploration, then there were likely players ahead of me, people with faster progression and better gear. I needed to stay sharp. Then again, given my current hardware, I wasn't exactly shaking in my boots. If anyone wanted to try their luck and come for me, I'd be more than happy to let them experience the overwhelming majesty of my muscle tank and the M249. Time slipped away, and as the first day drew to a close, the chat channel's member count had dropped to 11,000. Clearly, those 4,000 missing players hadn't survived the trial of the beginner town. It was a sobering reminder of just how fragile life was, but then, a specific message cut through the morning. Does anyone want to trade a vehicle module? I have one up for grabs. What kind? Let's hear it, I replied, my interest piqued. It's an interior modification. Once installed, it adds a household appliance outlet to the car. Useless, someone chimed in. We're literally starving here. Where are we supposed to find appliances? The chat went quiet, but I was practically vibrating. That was exactly the piece of the puzzle I needed. I'll trade, someone else offered. What do you want for it? I only want one thing, an exterior vehicle module, no exceptions. The moment that requirement hit the screen, the enthusiasm died. Just ask for something else, man. I've got a crate of bottled water. I'll trade a box of instant noodles. Sorry, the seller shut them down. I'm only trading for another module. Seeing the wall they were hitting, I sent a friend request to the user Gummy Bear and followed it up with a direct message. I've got something you might be interested in. Let's see if it catches your eye. You better have something good, Gummy Bear replied, sounding skeptical. If it's not a module, don't waste my time. How does 30 metal coins sound? There was a long pause. For Gummy Bear, getting 30 coins in a single day was shocking. Even with the information advantage that helped them snag a module on day 1, acquiring that many coins normally meant grinding through hundreds of zombie kills. To me, it was just a drop in the bucket, but for everyone else, it was a fortune. I couldn't help but wonder who exactly Gummy Bear was, but under the siren call of 30 metal coins, the trade closed almost instantly. Once the transaction cleared, I integrated the power module into my tank, and a sleek, industrial-grade outlet materialized on the interior wall. Finally, I could charge my gear. Your ride must be massive, Gummy Bear sent in a follow-up. It's all right, I replied, keeping my cards close to my chest, just enough room for one person to survive. Lucky you. Keep me in your contacts for future trades. I love a good deal. No problem, I messaged back. Just hit me up if you find more modules. As dusk settled over the wasteland, I tidied up the cabin and drifted off to sleep. I woke up at the crack of dawn, grabbed a quick bite, and realized my muscle tank had auto-navigated to a new location, another small town, eerily similar to the first. In the distance, a few stragglers were wandering aimlessly, but the moment they caught sight of my tank, they let out guttural shrieks and charged. I didn't even bother hitting the brakes. I floored it. Crunch. The sound of impact was deafening as a small horde of zombies went flying hundreds of meters, turning into nothing more than smears on the horizon. My muscle tank didn't even shudder, not a single scratch. Honestly, I barely felt them. I was half convinced they were just speed bumps. If they had a problem, they could take it up with my insurance company. After confirming through the reinforced windows that the coast was clear, I stepped out, feeling pretty smug. The encounter had dropped a few more loot chests. I quickly scooped up a white-quality food chest, which promised a random food item and 5 extra metal coins. In this hell, food was the ultimate currency, so even if I didn't need it right now, it was a win. I tossed the chest into my inventory and set my sights on a nearby supermarket, but the second I stepped through the threshold, a zombie lunged at me. This time, I didn't reach for the M249. Instead, I stood my ground, and the world seemed to shift. The zombie's frantic movements, once terrifying, appeared agonizingly slow to me now. I waited, keeping my calm while it swiped at the air. As soon as it overextended and hit that brief window of rigidity, I planted a kick square in its chest. The impact sent it hurtling backward, slamming into a display case with such force that the shelves buckled. It didn't get back up. The raw power of those attribute points was insane. Fighting these things felt like child's play. I had them exactly where I wanted them. I spent the next hour combing through the store, but I only walked away with a few bottles of soy sauce and some dry spices. Task failed successfully. Compared to my haul at the last town, this was a massive letdown. It was clear now. Danger levels were directly proportional to resource quality. Since this place only had one zombie, the cupboards were predictably bare. I spent the rest of my time scouring the rest of the town, but aside from some busted furniture, it was a ghost town. I made sure to use my absorption skill on everything left behind, hoarding raw materials for my next big upgrade. Back inside the safety of my tank, I finally opened the food loot I'd collected. A bag of soft, fresh bread, white, a traditional 5-nut mooncake, white that smelled surprisingly sweet, and a single tin of oily fish, gray. It wasn't a 5-star meal, but in the end times, it was practically a feast. Surströmming, the world's most notorious stink bomb. The system description warned me not to touch it unless it was a literal, life-or-death situation. Suffice it to say, I wasn't that desperate yet. I left the tin of fermented fish untouched and spent the next 2 days leaning into some much-needed R&R. During those 2 days, the chat channel population plummeted below 10,000. Desperation was the new normal. The feed was a relentless scroll of people begging for scraps. "I'll pay you back 100-fold. Just please, I'm starving," someone would plead. "Don't hold your breath, kid," others replied. "We're all one missed meal away from meeting our maker. Nobody's handing out charity." Just as the collective morale hit rock bottom, a voice of reason broke through. Why not use metal coins to trade for food? It was the obvious solution. Everyone started with 10 coins from their beginner chest, making them the only reliable currency in this dumpster fire of a world. I decided it was time to capitalize. "I've got some extra rations for sale," I typed into the channel. "Pricing is 2 metal coins per item." The reaction was instantaneous. "2 coins. You're a saint. I'll take 5. Me too. Give me 10. My inbox was flooded. I offloaded 100 bottles of water and a mountain of instant noodles and bread before finally pulling the plug on the trades. By the end of it, I was sitting on 330 metal coins. I spent a fair amount of time aggressively blocking the sob story beggars who tried to squeeze me for freebies. I'm not playing the role of the apocalypse saint today. Between the massive coin haul for my next vehicle upgrade and the extra buffer for emergency repairs, I was feeling pretty untouchable. Back on the open road, a dark, shifting mass appeared on the horizon, blocking my path. As I closed the distance, the shape resolved into a small herd of mutated sheep. These weren't your average farm animals. They were massive, covered in coarse, gray-brown fur, with horns that shimmered with a metallic, razor-sharp sheen. Steel-hoofed sheep, Grade 1. Mutated creatures of the Wasteland. Their hides are hardened and their horns possess the durability of steel. They attack primarily through high-velocity ramming. In the center of the herd stood their leader, a colossal specimen with eyes like burning embers and an aura of pure, unadulterated malice. Leader sheep, Grade 2, the alpha of the herd, possesses the battle charge ability and can track the biological signatures of nearby prey. Well, I muttered, gripping the wheel. "Let's see if your horns are harder than my bumper." I floored the gas. The muscle tank roared to life, and I smashed into the herd like a wrecking ball. The cabin shuddered a few times, but it was nothing compared to the carnage outside. The sheep didn't even have time to bleat before they were folded into the asphalt. Some of them shattered like glass, their metallic horns disintegrating on impact. Ding! Killed mutated sheep. Obtained white quality loot chest. Meat, flesh category. Fresh meat? That was a massive win. I'd been living off snacks and canned goods for days, and my stomach was practically begging for something fresh. I pushed the tank to its limit, turning the remaining herd into a series of speed bumps. Only the alpha remained. Seeing its entire entourage turned into roadkill, it went absolutely feral. With a terrifying, guttural roar, the beast launched itself into the air, its heavy hooves slamming down onto my hood with the force of a falling anvil. The alpha sheep recoiled, shock etched across its face. Instead of denting my armor, it had slammed its own hooves into the steel spikes lining my bumper, leaving it bleeding and reeling. I watched the scene unfold through the windshield, a smirk tugging at my lips. I hadn't spent all those resources on structural upgrades and spike modules just for a photo op. The initial herd had already dropped 6 white-tier chests, but I was fixated on the leader. I was dying to know what kind of loot an alpha would drop, maybe a blue-tier chest. With that curiosity burning, I went full berserk, flooring the accelerator and slamming into the beast repeatedly. It didn't take long for the creature's stamina to give out, and with a final, shuddering impact, it collapsed. Ding. Killed leader sheep. Obtained blue-tier loot chest. Contains exclusive mutated sheep module. A blue chest and a module. Whoever said these things were just roadblocks clearly didn't have my kind of luck. They were basically delivering presents to my front door. After setting the tank to autonomous mode, I spent a few coins to patch up the minor durability loss on my chassis and dove into the loot. 2 white-tier lamb chops, purified mutated meat, great for a slight boost to strength and speed, a serving of savory meatballs, and some fish. I also pulled a piece of earth meat gray tier, which had an 80% chance of giving me a 30-second debuff. I shoved that trash into the back of my inventory. I'd save the good stuff for when I really needed it. Then, the moment of truth. The blue chest. It dropped a sheep wool module, white, an interior upgrade to help resist extreme cold. It was cool, but white tier wasn't enough to impress me. I braced for a grind, but even with a refresh system, I had to burn through all 10 attempts to hit the pity timer. Finally, the screen flashed blue. Vibration sensor, blue. Generates a real-time sensor image of living organisms within a 1 kilometer radius. My heart skipped a beat. Visibility was everything in this hellscape, especially at night. Having an early warning system gave me the tactical high ground. I integrated the module instantly, and the display on my dashboard lit up. Almost immediately, a notification popped up. Destination reached, Mountain Military Factory. Difficulty, catastrophic. Caution advised. Resource density, 5 stars. Catastrophic difficulty, I'd never heard of that rank before, but a 5-star resource rating was impossible to ignore. My M249 was running low on ammo, and this was the perfect place to restock. I didn't care if the place was crawling with nightmares. I was going in. I glanced at my new vibration sensor. Deep inside the factory, the screen was swarming with a massive, dense cluster of red dots, zombies, no doubt. But just a few dozen meters away, 2 lone red dots were sitting perfectly still. Were those survivors? Inside the factory, 2 scavenged private cars sat parked in the shadows. "What's the play, boss?" one man muttered, his voice trembling. "We've been waiting all day. No survivors." "Patience," the leader hissed, clutching a makeshift weapon. "This factory is a death trap. We wait for a sucker to stumble in, then use them as bait to draw the monsters out. Then we grab the scraps." Suddenly, a thunderous roar of an engine echoed through the cavernous halls. The leader's eyes went wide. "Someone's coming. Get hidden. Is the trap set?" "Relax, boss. It's all handled. Get your gear ready. Don't let him slip away," one of them hissed. "What tier of vehicle is he even driving?" The other whispered back, eyes wide. "The noise is insane. It's gotta be a heavy-duty model. If we can hijack a purple tier ride, we're set for life." But as the engine's roar intensified, their confidence began to crumble. The ground started to vibrate so violently it felt like the floor was about to give way. "This isn't a truck," the leader stammered, his face draining of color. "Is he driving a damn tank in here?" Before they could process the sheer scale of the machine, I tore through the entryway. The sight of my level 2 gold tier muscle tank left them frozen in their tracks. It was a mechanical beast that made their makeshift hideout look like a toy. Their trap, a pathetic line of steel spikes, was nothing more than a minor annoyance. I rolled right over them, flattening the metal as if it were cardboard. My tires didn't even register the bump. I felt a surge of cold irritation. Talk about the audacity. Someone actually thought they could lay a trap for me. They had no idea how much trouble they were in. I didn't even need to consult the sensor to know they were cornered behind the nearby debris. I checked the display, confirmed their coordinates, and let out a dry, humorless chuckle. I didn't bother with a warning. I slammed the gas, turning the steering wheel sharply as I plowed directly into their cover. "Boss, it's over," he saw us. The structure shattered like brittle glass, leaving the 2 scavengers exposed and scrambling to find their footing. I killed the engine and stepped out of the tank. For a split second, they looked ready to grovel, but their expressions shifted the moment they saw me, a young guy, alone. The leader regained his composure, a greedy glint sparking in his eyes. A gold-tier vehicle? That was the pinnacle of combat power in this world. "If I take this, I'm the new king," he clearly thought. He gestured to his lackey, and they both gripped their weapons, swaggering toward me with newfound confidence. I didn't waste a single syllable on them. My hand moved with muscle memory, pulling out the M249. The shift in the room was instant. The color drained from their faces, and their weapons clattered to the floor as if they'd suddenly lost the use of their hands. Gold-tier vehicle and a legendary weapon. One of them squeaked, his voice cracking. Whoa, big guy. It's just a misunderstanding. We're all friends here, right?" That's crazy work. I still preferred them when they were acting like tough guys. There was no way I was letting them walk. If some newbie had rolled up here instead of me, they would have been used as meat shields and discarded without a second thought. "Anything you want to get off your chest before I finish this?" I asked, keeping my fingers steady on the trigger. They started stammering, but I was done waiting. I took out one of them without a second thought. The other lunged forward, pleading, "Wait, I'll talk. I'll tell you everything." I paused. It turned out they weren't just looting, they were using others as bait to lure out the local horrors. But then he dropped a bombshell, the secret of the factory. It wasn't just a high-difficulty catastrophic zone, it was the hunting ground for a Grade 2 earth-drilling armored centipede. A normal player wouldn't just lose, they'd be erased. "How do you know that?" I pressed. "Did you look up a walkthrough?" He spilled the beans. In this world, some locations were static, and this military factory was one of them. Information had leaked out from those who had barely escaped in the past. Once I had the intel, I sent him to join his partner. I turned my attention to the facility. From the outside, it looked like a standard courtyard with a few scattered buildings, but the real infrastructure was carved deep into the mountain. In the distance, a gaping, shadow-choked tunnel led into the earth. It was pitch black, a silent, hungry void waiting for the next victim. Even from a distance, I could hear the rhythmic, hollow thudding of zombies slamming against the interior gates. They knew something was out here. They were waiting. My heart rate stayed steady, but I tightened my grip on the wheel. This was going to require more finesse than a brute force approach. I retreated to the cabin to check the sensor again. The density of those red dots was suffocating. A conservative estimate put the head count at over 300 zombies. My M249 was sitting at roughly 600 rounds. That was plenty for crowd control, but if I burned through that ammo on basic infantry, I'd be defenseless against the armored centipede. The math was simple. Use the tank to crush the trash, save the lead for the boss. My eyes drifted to the two junkers left behind by the scavengers I'd just dealt with. I almost forgot to loot the bodies. This was my chance to snag a support vehicle. I bypassed the standard sedans, their utility overlapped too much with my tank, and settled on a rusted, modified dirt bike. Its compact frame was perfect for navigating the narrow, claustrophobic tunnels of the factory. Support vehicle bound successfully. Vehicle storage function enabled. The system pinged with a notification. I could now stash my rides in a pocket dimension whenever needed. Even better, they passively absorb radiation as energy while stowed. I pulled up the bike's stats. Modified dirt bike grade 2, shared ability, inherits modules, energy source, and level bonuses from the primary vehicle. Max speed, 220 kilometers per hour. Swap cooldown, 7 days. Bro understood the assignment. This was a massive upgrade. Having the bike mirror my tank's capabilities meant I didn't have to scavenge twice the materials. I rolled up to the tunnel entrance, and as a little bonus, I hit the entrance gate with my absorption skill. Ding. Obtained. Metal 8 tons, rubber 2 tons. With my resources boosted, I dove back into the muscle tank and gunned it, tearing into the tunnel like a hell-sent wrecking ball. The carnage was instant. Within seconds, the tunnel floor was carpeted with sleeping zombies, and loot notifications started scrolling across my vision like a high-speed ticker. It was the largest horde I'd ever cleared, yielding over 50 white-tier chests, weapons, food, modules. The haul was legendary. Suddenly, a massive crimson dot flared on my sensor, dead ahead. Crash. The impact felt like hitting a brick wall at terminal velocity. Even with the tank's reinforced chassis, the violent shudder forced me back several meters. Before I could even shift gears to retaliate, the system chimed again. Ding. Killed earth-drilling armored centipede. Obtained. Blue-tier loot chest, module. I sat there, blinking in disbelief. That's it? It had gone down that easily? I'd expected a cinematic showdown, but apparently, my bumper had other plans. Still, the impact hadn't been free. It cost me 60 metal coins to patch the damage to my chassis. I barely blinked at the price. That was just the cost of doing business. While the tank underwent self-repair, I hopped onto the dirt bike to scout the perimeter. When I pulled up alongside the centipede's carcass, I felt a genuine shiver crawl up my spine. It was 5 meters of nightmare fuel, covered in a dense, pulsing forest of serrated, chitinous legs. Just looking at the thing made my skin crawl. Not me doing that. It was a good thing it was dead. Its attack power was likely higher than that of the alpha sheep, though it clearly lacked the same level of HP. I shook off the unease and pushed deeper into the facility. As I rounded a sharp turn in the tunnel, the scene ahead left me completely dumbfounded. It was an arsenal. I hadn't just stumbled into a military factory. I'd found the motherlode. Rows upon rows of weaponry stretched out before me, everything from standard-issue rifles to massive pieces of heavy artillery. I felt like a kid in a candy store. I reached out to scoop it all into my inventory, but the system flashed a stern notification. Weapons are in a state of severe disrepair. Cannot be stored. Task failed successfully. Talk about a buzzkill. I was just about to turn away when a soft, pulsing violet light caught my eye at the end of the corridor. I followed the glow to what looked like an ancient altar, with a glowing purple-tier chest resting at its center. A purple chest? My pulse quickened. The military factory was turning out to be a gold mine. I reached out to grab it, but the system intervened again. Fixed chest. Module type. Fixed chests of purple tier and above are rare treasures scattered across the central world. The array is not unsealed, cannot be collected. Array? What array? I muttered, annoyed. I'd already cleared the local boss, so what else could there possibly be to unlock? I jumped back on my dirt bike, needing a second opinion. I pulled up my chat history and messaged the guy who'd sold me the power module. Hey, you busy? I need to pick your brain. Have you ever heard of a fixed chest? I can talk, he replied, but information isn't free. 2 pounds of food. Deal, I replied instantly. I'm at the Mountain Military Factory. I found a fixed chest, but it says the array isn't unsealed. There was a long silence before he responded. Wait, you're at the Mountain Military Factory. How the hell did you get in there? That place is a death trap. It's guarded by a pair of earth-drilling armored centipede, before male, 1 female. My blood turned to ice. 2. I'd only taken down 1. Before I could process the implication, a deafening, subterranean roar vibrated through my very marrow. The entire cave system shuddered violently, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling as if the earth itself were tearing open. My eyes darted to the sensor, and my stomach dropped. A massive red dot was closing the gap at terrifying speed. Oh, that's not good. I didn't waste a second. I gunned the dirt bike and bolted. Mere seconds after I'd cleared the altar, the ground exploded. A second centipede, significantly larger than the one I'd slaughtered, erupted from the stone floor, like a demon breaking through the veil of reality. It was gaining on me. I need a 6-month nap, but this thing is definitely not going to let me have one. The monstrosity was fast, scary fast. Every time I glanced back, the gap between us had shrunk significantly. It was clear that its sheer size didn't hinder its speed. It only made it more lethal. With the beast's jaws snapping inches from my rear tire, I realized I had no choice. It was time for a desperate, high-stakes gamble. I slammed the brakes, scrubbing off speed just long enough to hurl myself sideways off the bike. Thanks to the massive boost in my strength stats, I landed in a roll rather than a heap of broken bones. Finally, I got a clear look at the monstrosity. Earth-drilling armored centipede. Grade 2. A subterranean mutant that feeds on metal, boasts an impenetrable shell and razor-sharp limbs built for extreme speeds. Attacks by spraying corrosive fluids. A searing, liquid fire splattered against my shoulder of the corrosive spray. Even with my enhanced physique, the pain was blinding. I didn't have time to process the damage. Survival was the only objective left on my menu. The muscle tank was useless in this cramped tunnel, so it was just me, the beast, and my M249. The centipede let out a deafening, shrieking roar and lunged. I didn't hesitate, pinning the trigger and unloading a torrent of lead. The air filled with the rhythmic ping-ping-ping of bullets ricocheting off its armored plating. It was like shooting a tank with a BB gun. Still, a few rounds found the gaps, and the beast buckled for a split second. Task failed successfully. I tried to scramble toward the bike, hoping for an exit, but the centipede was smarter than it looked. It surged up from the earth, erupting directly beneath the bike and shielding it with its massive, armored coils. It was cutting off my escape. My situation was rapidly going from bad to apocalyptic. I could suppress it with fire, but my ammo was bottoming out. I needed a Hail Mary. My eyes darted across the chitinous armor, searching for a flaw. It was a fortress of plating, but even the strongest walls have windows. My gaze locked onto its eyes, the only soft, unprotected surface on its entire head. I forced my breathing to steady, locking my sights on the target. Bro is fighting demons. I squeezed the trigger, whispering a prayer to the god of ballistics. The sound of the final round striking home was distinct, a wet, sickening thwack of lead entering flesh. The centipede's screech turned into a gurgling wheeze as it collapsed, thrashing in the dirt. I didn't let up, keeping the barrel trained on the wound until the massive carcass finally went limp. Ding. Killed earth-drilling armored centipede. Obtained. Blue tier loot chest, module. I exhaled, my lungs burning, and turned back to the altar. A mechanical click echoed through the chamber. The array was down. The purple chest was mine. I claimed it, but decided I'd earned 5 minutes of silence before I cracked it open. My phone buzzed a message from Gummy Bear. Still alive. You're a real comedian, I typed back. Protagonists don't just die in the first act. Impressive. The centipede didn't scratch you? I took your advice and hauled ass the second things got hairy. Good call. I wasn't about to admit I'd actually stood my ground and went full berserk on the thing. Common sense is like deodorant, people who need it most never use it. By the way, I asked, the weapons in the factory are all broken. Is there any way to fix them? Yeah, keep grinding. The zombie chests in the factory have a drop rate for repair kits. That was all I needed to hear. I tore through my stack of 50+ white tier chests. Luck was on my side. After the dust settled, I had 17 repair kits sitting in my inventory. I headed back to the armory. I burned 3 kits to restore a stash of M249 ammo, then spent another few to bring an AK-47 back to life, complete with 1,000 rounds of fresh ammo. As I was packing up, something caught my eye, a heavy-duty launcher sitting in the corner. I wiped away the grime to reveal an RPG. Certified Hood Classic, a portable rocket launcher with a 1-kilometer range and a 300-meter blast radius. If that wasn't the perfect tool for the rest of my trip, I didn't know what was. I didn't hesitate for a second. I dumped every single repair kit I had into that rocket launcher until it was combat-ready and fully loaded with 9 shells. With that, my supply of kits was bone dry, but I didn't care. I spent my final minutes in the facility scavenging every scrap of metal and glass I could find, even going so far as to rip the air conditioning unit straight out of the wall to bring back to the tank. Productivity loading. Back inside the muscle tank, I set the autopilot and settled in for the loot reveal. I had 2 blue tier module chests and that coveted purple tier chest waiting for me. I cracked the first blue one. Rotary cutting saws. It generated 2 heavy-duty, high-speed rotating chainsaws beneath my front bumper and chassis. My tank was already a beast at bulldozing through crowds, but it had always struggled with smaller, nimble targets that dodged my reach. Not anymore. Skill issue. Solved. The second blue chest gave me acidic venom, an upgrade that grew copies of the centipede's serrated forelegs along my hull, drenching anything that touched me in a concentrated sulfuric acid spray. It was a solid defensive measure for when the hordes got too clingy. Finally, I got to the main event. I opened the purple tier chest, heart hammering against my ribs. Ding! Roof-mounted machine gun blue. Wait, it was only blue? I sighed. I had always wondered why the gun mounted on my roof never fired, but now I knew. It hadn't been activated. It was a nice piece of hardware, sure, but I had my sights set higher. A blue module wasn't my endgame. I burned my refresh chances, searching for something better. I cycled through a steel armor plating, adding a centimeter of hardened steel to the hull and an afterburner, a 25% speed boost with immunity to slow effects, but I turned my nose up at both. I held out for the pity timer refresh. Ding. Heavy metal cannon. Bro understood the assignment. It didn't just add a gun, it absorbed my raw metal reserves to purify the roof-mounted machine gun into a massive heavy cannon. The damage output now scaled directly with my metal stockpile. This was a game changer. My tank finally had long-range artillery to back up its crushing power. Just as I was admiring the new hardware, the system chimed again, casting a shadow over my victory. Beginner protection period has ended. In 3 days, the central world will experience an extreme weather event. Equatorial purgatory. Duration, 3 days. Equatorial purgatory. Just the name sounded like a death sentence. I looked over at the AC unit I'd ripped out of the factory wall and hoped it was up to the task. Still, compared to the average survivor, I was practically living in luxury. I decided to focus on the present and worry about the heat wave when it arrived. For the next 2 days, I went on a rampage. Every town I crossed was stripped bare, every zombie I saw was shredded into mulch. I used the loot to push my sensor module to level 2 and leveled the muscle tank all the way to level 3. I'd even grown comfortable enough with Gummy Bear that we'd formed a loose, elite circle for intel sharing. One of the guys in the group had survived entirely on a bicycle. So far, I didn't know whether to report him for insanity or nominate him for a medal. That's crazy work. Soon enough, the sky began to turn a sickly, oppressive orange. The day of the Equatorial Purgatory had arrived. Ding. Extreme weather event, Equatorial Purgatory has commenced. Daytime temperatures will reach a minimum of 60 degrees Celsius, with nighttime lows of 20 degrees Celsius. Players are advised to implement thermal insulation measures. During this event, level 1 to 3 red rock beasts will spawn hazard level catastrophic. Note, resource yields across the central world have increased, and ruins containing abundant supplies will spawn, though they carry extreme risk. Outside my window, the sun had transformed into a blinding, malicious eye. Shimmering heat waves rolled off the asphalt like a mirage, and the air itself felt thick and suffocating. The chat group was already spiraling. "I'm cooking in here," one player wailed. "I'm hiding in the shade and I'm still basically a rotisserie chicken." Another begged, "I've downed 3 bottles of water and I'm still parched. Any big shots with an AC unit willing to let me crash?" I allowed myself a smug smirk. Thank God I'd ripped that air conditioner out of the factory wall. Between the cooling unit and the stash of ice-cold water in my fridge, I was living the high life while everyone else was slow roasting. I even managed to offload some ice water to the players in my elite circle, netting a cool 200 metal for my trouble. Work smarter, not harder. After 2 hours of driving, I pulled into a fresh zone on the map, Purgatory Town. Finally, a decent-looking town. I checked my sensor. The density of red dots was encouraging. Where there are monsters, there's usually loot. I began a slow circuit to scout the perimeter, but the calm was cut short. A wave of blistering heat slammed into the front of my tank. I looked ahead and saw them, a pack of humanoid monsters standing right in my path. Red Rock Beast, Level 1. A specialized mutant spawn during the Equatorial Purgatory. High defense. Body temperature exceeding 70 degrees Celsius. Proximity causes severe burns. Not me doing that. I didn't even bother braking. I cracked the window, leveled the freshly repaired AK-47, and opened fire. A few short bursts later, the pack was nothing more than smoldering ash. I was feeling pretty good about the situation until I noticed the temperature gauge on my dashboard creeping up, accompanied by a low-frequency rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. It felt like an earthquake was chasing me. I glanced ahead, and my blood went cold. More red rock beasts were congregating, but this time, they were swarming around something much, much larger. Red Rock Beast, Level 2. A sub-leader of the red rock race. Surface temperature exceeds 90 degrees Celsius. Proximity leads to rapid melting. Before I could even shift into gear, the leader let out a guttural, earth-shaking roar. The pack surged forward in a synchronized frenzy. I'd been waiting for a reason to test the Level 3 tank's ramming force. Let him cook. I punched the gas and slammed the accelerator to the floor. The impact was glorious. The pack of beasts didn't just die. They were scattered to the 4 winds, disintegrating into a pile of loot. Ding! 5 white-tier chests added to the inventory. With the path cleared, it was time to see if the heavy metal cannon was worth the hype. I locked the targeting reticle onto a dilapidated structure in the distance and keyed in the fire command. Charging, 30%. The anticipation was almost as intense as the heat. When the bar hit 100%, I triggered the blast. A sphere of raw, black energy tore from the muzzle, with such force that even inside the reinforced hull, I was jolted by the recoil. A split second later, the world erupted. The distant building didn't just collapse, it was pulverized into fine dust. The surrounding environment looked like a meteor had struck it. Peak cinema. That purple tier module was everything I'd hoped for. Satisfied with the carnage, I checked my character sheet. When I'd leveled the muscle tank to level 3, I'd been gifted 10 attribute points. I dumped them all into strength, pushing the stat to 16. I'm built different. I funneled the remaining attribute points into speed and spirit. A wave of vitality surged through my veins, crisp and exhilarating. With my current physical stats, I felt like I could go toe-to-toe with a level 1 mutant even without a weapon. My speed had hit an insane 9.57 seconds. For the 100-meter dash, I'm built different. That wasn't just fast, that was human-tier peak performance. I turned my attention to the loot from the red rock beasts. The white-tier chests yielded a mixed bag. An insulated cup 30% thermal reduction, a solar thermal kettle 30% faster heating, and a gray-tier thermal lighter. As promised, the drops were tied to the environment, though none of these trinkets felt like game changers. I kept hitting the refresh button until a better option appeared. Insulation module. White. It coated my tank in a thermal reflective film, dropping the interior temperature by 10%. It wasn't much, but in the Equatorial Purgatory, every degree counted. The next chest gave me the real prize. An insulated leather suit. Crafted from the pelt of a red rock beast, it promised to block 70% of external heat. Now I could finally step outside the tank without being cooked alive. Just then, a familiar, guttural roar echoed from the horizon. Found you. I scanned the distance and saw 3 vehicles, hopelessly boxed in by a massive pack of red rock beasts. The drivers were clearly panicked. Over the group radio, I could hear the desperation. My chassis is buckling. I'm taking heavy damage, another shouted. Are we actually going to die here? They were moments away from total collapse. I grinned. I volunteer as tribute. To keep my identity under wraps, I threw on the insulated suit and hopped onto the dirt bike. I didn't slow down as I approached the scene. Instead, I throttled up. One of the stranded drivers caught sight of me. There's a level 3 red rock beast in the center. If you can just draw some aggro, we'd be eternally grateful. Level 3? My heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from greed. Would a level 3 beast drop a higher tier chest? That sounded like a future me problem, but I was definitely interested. The pack sensed me and shifted their focus, stampeding toward my bike like a tide of living lava. I didn't panic. I set the bike to autopilot, drew my M249 in one hand and my AK-47 in the other, and unleashed a dual-wielded wall of lead. Productivity loading. In seconds, the low-level grunts were dropping into a permanent, iron-induced slumber. What the? That guy has a gun. One of the survivors stammered over the radio. He's putting out enough fire to suppress a whole battalion. Who is this guy? With the cannon fodder cleared, the level 3 beast finally stepped into the light. It moved with the predatory grace of a tiger, its body encased in thick, flowing magma armor. Every step it took sent a wave of blistering, pressurized air rippling outward. I knew if that thing tagged me, I'd be walking away with a permanent debuff. Let's see if you're as tough as you look. The level 3 beast lunged, its body wreathed in roiling heat. I knew the drill, the status effect, a 30-second burn, was a death sentence for any normal survivor. The guys in the stranded cars were holding their breath, probably waiting for me to get turned into a crispy snack. Task failed successfully. Instead of scrambling for cover, I holstered my dual firearms and shouldered the heavy, blackened launch tube I'd snatched from the armory. Is that an RPG? One of them gasped. Get down. He's gonna hit us with the splash damage. I didn't blink. I triggered the shot. A streak of fire tore through the air, and the next second, the beast was vaporized in a spectacular bloom of orange and black. Ding. The notification hit my HUD. Killed level 3 red rock beast. Obtained. Blue tier loot chest. Exclusive. Finally, a blue chest. I'd been drowning in white tier junk for days. The survivors piled out of their vehicles and scurried over to me, looking equal parts terrified and relieved. Thank you. You saved our lives. We would have been toast without you. Call me Xiao Yao, I said, waving them off. Don't sweat it. It was on my way. We passed a steel factory a while back, the leader added, still shaking. People say it's a catastrophic difficulty zone, but if you're interested, we have the coordinates. Sure, send it over. I didn't mind the tip. As a thank you, I handed over a few coordinates of my own. I've already cleared out the zombies in those towns. There's still some basic loot left behind if you guys need to restock. After we parted ways, I climbed back into the muscle tank. Time for the best part of the day, the loot haul. I cracked the white chests first. Red rock beast meat, white, permanent minor fire resistance. Nice. Then came the rock armor coating, white, 10% more defense, and 20% fire resistance. It was white tier, but the stats were top tier. Finally, I opened the blue chest from the boss, Flamejet module, blue. It used energy to provide a 50% speed boost. My tank was already a fortress, and now it was going to be a rocket. I was about to kick back and enjoy the win when a ping hit the elite chat group. It was Bicycle Lou. Can someone help? I'm trapped in the Purgatory ruins. I heard there's a legendary vehicle in here, and even career advancement opportunities. The Purgatory ruins. This wasn't on my bingo card. The system had hyped it up as a treasure trove. I didn't even pack a bag, I just started the engine and roared toward the coordinates. When I arrived, 2 familiar faces were already hovering at the entrance, Great Sage and Trucker Wang. We exchanged quick nods. Great Sage hadn't pulled a gold tier cloud, but his purple tier industrial shovel truck was a beast at level 3, and his combat experience was nothing to sneeze at. Trucker Wang's Daeyeon was only blue tier, but on the open road, it hit like a gold tier tank. We were a formidable squad. What's the situation inside? I asked, eyeing the dark maw of the ruins. 2 main goals, Wang explained. The Red Rock Beasts and the Relic Inheritance. The former is just a gauntlet of monsters, the latter is where Liu is trapped. What's in the inheritance? I pressed. Resources, mostly car modules for days, Great Sage chimed in. If you clear enough trials, you can even snag a purple chest, but the real prize? The career advancement badges. That's what we're really after. Career advancement? That was a new one for me. Once your vehicle hits level 5, Great Sage explained, his voice serious, you can choose a class. We're talking warrior, psychokinetic, mechanic, medic, assassin, and a handful of rare, mysterious classes. Every one of them grants unique abilities. As the central world levels up, the monsters are going to outscale our standard firearms. If we want to survive, we need those classes. And the special classes, I asked, what's the deal with those? Great Sage leaned in. Think of them as the top 0.1%. They're insanely rare, and dozens of times stronger than the standard paths. If I'd managed to snag a special class back in the day, I wouldn't have spent 500 years under that mountain, would I? He chuckled, then shifted gears. He transformed into a cicada, a neat bit of recon work, and zipped into the cave to scout. When he returned, the mood had soured. There are two major factions inside, the Symbiosis Alliance and the Beast God Hall. Both their leaders are rocking level 3 vehicles. They're a massive threat. Worse, inside the cave, everyone is a target, people, red rock beasts, the works. But I've already pinged Liu. The second we clear the beasts, he's going to trigger the inheritance. We'll get a short window of invincibility. That's our exit strategy. We finalized the plan and rolled into the cavern. The place was packed. It looked like a shantytown built out of scrap metal and engine grease. The moment we pulled in, the gossip mill kicked into overdrive. Holy crap, is that a purple tier shovel truck? Who are these guys? They're rolling at the same level as our faction leaders. This is about to get messy. Then, I did something that made the entire cave go dead silent. I hopped off my bike, pulled my portable fridge out of my inventory, and casually cracked it open to grab a few ice-cold waters. The reaction was instantaneous. Did he just pull a fridge out of nowhere? I'm out here dying of heat stroke, and this guy is chilling with a refrigerator. The audacity. In the middle of an Equatorial purgatory, a cold drink was worth more than gold. My fridge was essentially a loot magnet. Before we could even find a parking spot, two blue-tier vehicles swerved to cut us off. "Hold it right there," one of the drivers sneered. "You can enter, but the toll is that fridge." I hadn't even opened my mouth to respond before Trucker Wang decided he'd heard enough. Without a word, he slammed his foot onto the gas and treated the blockade like a speed bump. The two guys clearly weren't expecting a move that aggressive young people these days. No respect for the rules, just out here stealing my parking space. Crunch. The sound of twisting metal echoed through the cavern. The two blockade vehicles were instantly reduced to scrap, their frames mangled by Wang's day-in. Wang's rig barely had a scratch on the bumper. He leaned out his window, looking at the wreckage with mock surprise. "Hey kids, I was just making a turn here. Why'd you have to go and park your cars under my tires?" The Dayun truck didn't just dent their vehicles, it practically paved them into the concrete. The onlookers stood paralyzed, jaws hanging slack. Just how many modules does that rig have? That's some crazy work. I stepped out of the truck, the heavy clack of my boots echoing through the cavern. As I straightened up, I let the golden tier AK-47 rest casually in my hands, the metal gleaming in the dim light. I didn't say a word, but my posture spoke for me. "Try it again, and you won't just be losing a bumper, you'll be losing your life." "He's got a fridge and a gold tier rifle. How are we even playing the same game?" someone whispered, eyes wide. I watched them scramble to clear a path. Task failed successfully. I tucked the rifle away. I didn't need to brandish it like a toy. Great Sage and Trucker Wang exchanged bewildered looks, clearly struggling to compute the absurdity of my gear. One of the guys in the group chimed in, "Xiao Yao, that weapon is insane. Hunting red rock beasts or running the rescue is going to be a cakewalk now." I just shrugged. "It's just a little something I picked up. Nothing to lose your heads over." They seemed unconvinced, but we pushed deeper into the cavern, the air growing thick with the scent of ozone and burning rock. We finally reached the heart of the lair, a massive gate guarded by a swarm of red rock beasts. Off to the left sat a ramshackle human encampment, but my focus snapped to a shimmering purple glow near the ruins. I crept closer and saw it, a motorcycle, radiating a violet aura that defied logic. Void Fire motorcycle, purple tier, speed, 300 km per hour, increases by 100% when threats are detected. Passive, surrounded by violet void fire that deals continuous burn damage to nearby hostiles. Stealth, reduces engine noise by 90%. Bro understood the assignment. That bike was peak cinema. My eyes shifted to its owner, a muscular guy in a suit who looked like he could bench press the cavern wall. The way he carried himself told me he wasn't just another loot goblin. The cavern was essentially a pressurized sauna, with hundreds of people crammed into a tight space while the red rock beasts acted like walking furnaces. Temperatures were pushing 50 degrees Celsius. People were sweating through their shirts, even inside their vehicles, and those caught outside were practically melting. That's when 3 vehicles roared toward us, cutting off our route. The Dune trio. All 3 were level 3 vehicles, and they'd just finished off a level 3 boss. They were well-known, dangerous, and clearly looking for a payout. "If we grab that fridge, we're set for the summer," one of them growled. The entire camp fell silent, eyes locking onto us. The Dune trio grew emboldened, their grins widening. "Hand over the fridge, and we might just let you walk out of here in one piece," the lead driver mocked. Some of the onlookers were already cheering, practically popping imaginary champagne in anticipation of the looting. Trucker Wang, however, looked bored. He knew what kind of firepower I was packing. He didn't see a threat, he saw a clearance sale. I didn't waste my breath on small talk. I hopped onto my bike and zipped right up to their bumpers. I didn't bother with a warning, I just pulled out my AK-47. The smugness vanished from their faces, replaced by the realization that they'd messed with the wrong target. I'm not arguing, I'm explaining why I'm right. The next second, the air filled with the roar of gunfire. My aim wasn't perfect, but with my enhanced physical stats, recoil was a non-issue. I held that trigger down, and the Doom trio learned exactly what it felt like to be on the receiving end of a very bad day. The cavern walls seemed to shudder as my bullets tore through the air, finding their marks with brutal efficiency. The Doom trio's windshields shattered in a heartbeat, showering them in glass and terror. I could see the confusion and sheer panic on their faces. It was clear they'd been sold a bill of goods by whoever told them I was just another easy mark. Who the hell told us this guy was a pushover? One of them screamed, scrambling for cover that didn't exist. Our leaders only have submachine guns. Where did he get a tactical rifle? I didn't offer a rebuttal, and I certainly didn't let up. Moments later, a series of deafening explosions rocked the cave. The doomed trio had officially clocked out for their permanent shift in the afterlife. The entire camp went deathly silent. The onlookers were staring at the wreckage of what they had assumed would be a one-sided robbery, now realizing that the blue-tier vehicle guys were playing a totally different game than everyone else. I harvested the salvage from their twisted remains and rolled into the heart of the camp. My eyes were constantly scanning, ready to summon the muscle tank the second anyone tried to get cute with the trigger. Common sense is like deodorant. People who need it most never use it. Fortunately, the display of power had clearly done its job. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and the leaders of the two dominant factions, the Beast God Hall and the Symbiosis Alliance, stepped forward to greet us. "Welcome, gentlemen," they said, their tone measured and cautious. "Our camp has a rule: peace until the Red Rock beasts are purged." I gave them a cold smile. Interesting. Funny how that peace rule didn't seem to apply when your boys were trying to rob us. The leaders didn't blink. Misunderstandings happen. The doomed trio brought this on themselves. Besides, you didn't suffer any actual losses, did you? Who says I didn't? I countered, deadpan. I burned through 2/1000ths of my ammo supply. I'm down to only 10,000 rounds now. You guys gonna reimburse me for that? They chuckled, clearly trying to smooth things over. You've got a sense of humor, friend. Why not join the Beast God Hall? We'll offer you the highest tier of treatment. The Symbiosis Alliance leader chimed in with the same offer. I just patted Great Sage on the shoulder and turned to the leaders. Boss, these two seem decent enough. Maybe put away the RPGs and the heavy cannons for now? The leaders froze. At this stage in the game, the only way to pull an RPG was through a purple tier chest, which meant clearing a catastrophic dungeon. They started sweating, wondering if I was bluffing or if I was actually armed to the teeth. Trucker Wang, meanwhile, looked at me with wide eyes, remembering exactly what I'd said earlier about having a whole pile of these things. Is he actually serious? Does he really have an RPG? We brushed off their invitations and plunged back into the chaos. The fighting outside was grim. Desperate survivors were ramming their vehicles into the beasts, choosing to go out in a blaze of glory rather than die slowly. Great Sage led the way, his purple tier shovel truck crackling with a lightning module that made quick work of the perimeter guards. Wang was a force of nature, his Daeon plowing through the fray without breaking a sweat. I pulled ahead, hunting for a level 3 boss. I spotted one not far off. I'd used an RPG last time, but I wanted to see if the AK could get the job done. I leveled the barrel, tracking the beast's erratic movements, and squeezed the trigger. Each round connected with surgical precision, slamming into its head. In the blink of an eye, the beast collapsed, disintegrating into a blue loot chest. Task failed successfully. It turns out, even these fiery monstrosities have a soft spot for lead. Watching the beast collapse into a loot chest with such ease, the onlookers standing nearby looked like they'd just witnessed a magic trick. The murmurs began to drift my way, something about me playing a hacked version of the game. The math ain't mathing, I heard one of them mutter. How is the gap between players this wide? I didn't care about their jealousy. I was too busy scanning for the next target. A few minutes later, another level 3 Red Rock beast crossed our path. I aimed for the head, ready to end it, but the beast dodged with an agility that caught me off guard. It moved with intent, weaving around my shots like it knew exactly where I was going to pull the trigger. Xiao Yao, watch out, Great Sage warned. Level 3 and above mutants have actual intelligence. They adapt, they watch your rhythm and develop countermeasures. The beast lunged, a blur of molten fury. Great Sage didn't hesitate, surging forward to slam his shovel truck into the creature, overclocking his electric module. The monster locked up, frozen solid by the massive voltage. I took my shot, hitting the mark and finishing the job. Skill issue, I thought, letting out a breath. That teamwork was going to be the only thing keeping us alive. We spent the next few hours tearing through the remaining grunts and splitting the loot. In the middle of the chaos, a frantic ping hit my radio from Bicycle Lou. Are you guys in yet? I heard heavy gunfire outside. You have to be careful. My life is literally in your hands. I keyed the mic, letting a smirk creep onto my face. Is there a chance, maybe, that you were hearing me kick the door down with lead? Oh, thank God, Lou replied, his relief audible. I knew you guys were legendary. I can finally breathe. By the time the next morning rolled around, the Red Rock beasts were all but purged. Great Sage, having spent the night scouting via his transformation ability, returned with grim news. We've got a problem, he said, his face etched with concern. 100 more reinforcements just entered the cave, all from those two major organizations. If their leaders, Kishia and Daytu, have upgraded their vehicles to level 4, we're in over our heads. We can't get sloppy now. What's the play then? Asked, keeping my voice low. Don't sweat it, Great Sage replied. Lou told me the formation inside is shifting. The moment it fully activates, he'll trigger the career inheritance. We'll have a window of total invincibility to make our break. I decided to lean into the drama. I started acting out, deliberately making it look like I was running dry on ammunition, letting the beasts chase me in a panicked scramble. It worked like a charm. Finally out of bullets, huh? A voice boomed from the shadows. It was the faction leaders. In the central world, the vehicle is the only true strength. Without your rifle, That blue-tier bike of yours is just a glorified paperweight. They moved to seal the cave exit. There are 4 tokens required for the career inheritance, one of them announced, his eyes glinting with greed. Between our 2 organizations, we've only found 3. We need the 4th, and nobody is leaving until we have it. And you the kid with the fridge? Hand over everything in your inventory. Respectfully, no. Daitu didn't waste another second. He whipped out a shotgun, leveling the heavy barrel straight at my chest. Beside him, a squad of his men clad in dark gear fanned out, inching forward to box us in. The tension in the cavern spiked, the air suddenly thick and suffocating. I kept my hands steady, my eyes tracking their movements. Out of my peripheral vision, I caught it. Trucker Wang, standing casually by his rig, flashed me a subtle, distinct, okay hand sign. Teamwork makes the dream work. The corners of my mouth twitched upward. I didn't reach for my rifle. Instead, I bypassed the small arms entirely and hoisted the heavy, menacing tube of the RPG onto my shoulder. Daitu's eyes widened, but before he could even process the absolute absurdity of the situation, I pulled the trigger. The recoil punched my shoulder as a streak of fire erupted from the tube. At that exact microsecond, a crisp mechanical voice chimed in my head. System notification. Player Xiao Yao has acquired the career inheritance qualification. Invincibility protection activated immediately. Note: player cannot initiate attacks during this period, or the protection will be voided. Daitu clearly hadn't expected me to call his bluff, let alone escalate the situation from a shotgun standoff to high-explosive ordnance. Boom. The warhead connected right behind Daitu's squad. The resulting explosion was deafening, a shockwave that tore through the cavern. His men were instantly vaporized, turning into nothing but fading wisps of smoke before the debris even hit the ground. Daitu only barely managed to survive, relying on his Kamui spatial phase ability to ghost through the blast radius. When he rematerialized, he was gasping for air, trembling from the near-death experience. "That RPG hits like a Six Paths truth-seeking orb," he muttered, pale as a ghost. "If my reaction time was a split second slower, you guys would be looking at my reanimation jutsu right now." The blast broke the standoff. Daitu's remaining grunts snapped out of their shock and opened fire, unloading everything they had in a desperate frenzy. A hail of bullets tore through the air, converging straight on our position. Kishia, standing safely out of range, let a smug, victorious grin stretch across his face. But then, the dust began to settle. We hadn't moved an inch. The bullets were hitting us, sure, but they were pinging harmlessly off a shimmering, translucent barrier that clung to our skin. I casually dusted off my jacket. I'm not lazy. I'm on energy-saving mode. Kishia's grin vanished, replaced by an expression of sheer horror. "Am I seeing things?" Someone in the crowd yelled, pointing at us. "They aren't taking any damage." "Bro is in creative mode," another shouted. "They aren't even trying to hide the hacks anymore." "Hold on," a more observant survivor chimed in. "That looks like an invincibility buff. But how the hell did they trigger it?" The cavern descended into a chaotic frenzy of theories and panic. I just smiled, raising a hand to point casually toward the massive gate of the inheritance ground. "Let me introduce you guys to something," I announced, my voice echoing off the cavern walls. "Meet our 4th party member, Bicycle Lu." Right on cue, the heavy doors of the inheritance ground creaked open. Out rolled Lu, pedaling his bicycle with a wide, triumphant grin. "Godfathers, I did it. I locked it all down," Lu called out, skidding to a halt near us. He glared at the surrounding crowd. "Now, how do we want to clean up these trash mobs?" Kishia looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. He had strutted in here convinced he was playing chess while we were playing checkers, believing he held all the cards. That's enough internet for today. I hadn't realized someone had already reached the finish line ahead of us, so that was why the 4th token had been impossible to find. This kid had already smuggled it inside. Task failed successfully. "He's playing 4D chess while we're playing checkers," one of the leaders spat, his face flushing with rage. "Damn it, everyone, move in." The scene devolved into absolute chaos. The alliance fractured instantly, teammates started stabbing each other in the back, and others simply scrambled to save their own skins. "You'll regret this," the leaders screamed, retreating under the heavy guard of their remaining men. "When this inheritance is over, we're coming for you." I watched them flee, completely unbothered. Honestly, letting them go was fine. I hadn't even had the chance to deploy my muscle tank yet. I turned my attention to the loot. The system might have barred me from attacking, but it didn't say a word about scavenging materials. I strolled through the wreckage, picking off the best parts from the abandoned wrecks. I'm not lazy. I'm on energy-saving mode. I found a vehicle that had self-destructed in a pathetic attempt to take me out. "Seriously, you couldn't even aim that thing? You're like the king of failed grenades," I muttered, stripping the chassis clean. When a few survivors begged for help, promising to be my beasts of burden if I just saved them, I kept walking. I wasn't about to toss away my protection window for strangers. Ding. The system chimed. "All inheritance tokens collected. Player, proceed to the inheritance site immediately. Space opens in 30 minutes. Guided by Bicycle Lu, we reached the site and found those 2 familiar faces from the organizations already there. They glared at us, radiating pure spite. "You guys are despicable. I won't forget this." "Look," I said with a shrug, "everyone's in a protection state once we enter. Let's just settle this after the trial." I pulled out my fridge, tossing some rations to my teammates. I wasn't sweating the supply count. Between what was in the fridge and the extra inventory stashed in my vehicle, we were set for weeks. Ding. Career inheritance trial beginning. Prepare yourselves. Before I could even blink, the world blurred, and I was teleported to a desolate, endless highway. The heat hit me like a physical blow, easily over 60 degrees Celsius. It was essentially the Equatorial purgatory all over again, just with a different coat of paint. I wasted no time summoning my muscle tank, eager to put some armor between me and the blistering air. Trial Layer 1. Speed test. Reach the destination 100 kilometers away within 30 minutes. All fuel and durability costs will be refunded upon completion. I heard Day 2 bragging in the distance. His vehicle was a beast, clocking 150 kilometers per hour stock, and with his custom modules, he was hitting a staggering 400 kilometers per hour. Poor bicycle, Lou looked like he'd seen a ghost. He'd spent all this time preparing, only to realize the speed test was basically a death sentence for his ride. His white bicycle could technically hit 200 kilometers per hour, but that required standing up and pedaling so hard the chain would literally start smoking. That's crazy work. I didn't have time for sympathy. I dropped 100 metal coins into a speed module upgrade. The legendary class was my goal, and that required more than just passing. I needed to be first. I engaged the flamethrower module I'd salvaged earlier and slammed the throttle. With the 20% passive speed boost from active driving and the combined output of my modules, my speedometer spiked to a ridiculous 800 kilometers per hour. Bro is built different. I wasn't driving anymore, I was piloting a land-based jet. I was crossing the landscape so fast I was practically blurring into the scenery. It took me a few minutes, and just like that, I skidded to a halt at the finish line. Ding. The system notification cut through the air. Congratulations to player Xiao Yao for completing the trial. Rating, 95 points. Awarded top-tier prize, blue tier chest. 30 minutes later, the rest of the pack finally stumbled across the finish line. When the rankings were displayed, I wasn't the least bit surprised to see Bicycle Lou sitting firmly in last place with a bare minimum passing grade of 60. But the real shocker was the look on the others' faces. They were staring at my blue-tier motorcycle, completely bewildered. There's no way, one of them muttered. How is that thing so fast? Even Wang and Great Sage were staring at me, stunned. They knew I was holding back, but they hadn't realized I was hiding a machine of this caliber. I'm not weird, I'm just limited edition. Before I could enjoy the silence, the next challenge hit. Trial Layer 2, Survival Test. Environmental temperature increasing. Second sun manifesting. Ambient outdoor temperature, 70 degrees Celsius. Red rock beasts will spawn. Requirement. Survive for 30 minutes while defeating at least one beast. Rewards. Material packs and rank-based bonuses. As the system finished, a second sun flared into existence in the sky, turning the horizon into a shimmer of heat waves. In the distance, 3 red rock beasts were already closing in, their bodies radiating molten fury. This was hardly a challenge for me, but I was worried about Lou. I hoped his bicycle could handle this kind of furnace-like heat. I swapped over to my muscle tank and didn't waste a second, arming the heavy metal cannon. One shot was all it took. The beast didn't even have time to register the hit before it was vaporized. Ding. Congratulations to player Xiao Yao. Rating, 100 points. Awarded top-tier prize. Blue-tier material pack. Not bad. That's another step toward upgrading the muscle tank. Half an hour later, the rankings updated. Daitu took second, and while Lou was still dead last, he'd actually survived. I started to wonder if he was just secretly the undisputed king of heat resistance. Trial Layer 3, Defense Test. No counterattacks allowed. Survive continuous assaults from a level 1 red rock beast for 1 minute. Reward, Flamethrower, 30 miter range with 3 30-minute fuel tanks. The trials flew by. I aced every single one of the first 5, securing the highest rating and the best loot every time, another blue tier pack for the 4th, and a glorious purple tier chest for the 5th. Poor Liu didn't have the same luck. He got eliminated in the 4th round. He wasn't dead, but his shot at the career inheritance was over. Then came the 6th stage, and my heart skipped a beat. Trial Layer 6, Combat Test. Defeat 30 red rock beasts in an extreme heat environment. No time limit. Reward, Fire-type Special Career Transfer Certificate. 30 beasts. Even without a time limit, the difficulty was absurd. The outdoor temperature had climbed to a terrifying 110 degrees Celsius. My muscle tank was literally baking in the sun, and I could feel the tires beginning to soften and melt under the heat. I had to keep dumping metal coins into the repair system just to keep the frame from falling apart. This wasn't on my bingo card. The red rock beasts swarming the field were all level 2 and above, with a terrifying number of level 3 variants lurking in the mix. Facing 1 or 2 might be manageable, but this was a concerted, coordinated horde. The difficulty spike was practically vertical. I didn't hesitate for a second. I slammed my hands onto the controls and unleashed the full fury of my metal cannon. Shell after shell tore through the air, turning the battlefield into a symphony of destruction. When the dust finally settled, the system pinged with the news I'd been waiting for. Ding! Congratulations to player Xiao Yao for completing the trial. Rating, 100 points. Awarded top-tier prize, Fire-type Special Career Transfer Certificate. I doubt anyone else expected this hellish gauntlet to be treated like a speed run, but what can I say? I'm the main character for a reason. I'm built different. Between my gear, the custom modules, and my vehicle, if I couldn't clear this, then nobody could. When the final rankings dropped, the gap was staggering. I sat at the top with a perfect 582, leaving everyone else scrambling for scraps. How? How is he still at max points? I heard them muttering in disbelief. I ignored them. I'd secured the special career, and I was feeling pretty good about life. Productivity loading. Without warning, the world shifted, and I was teleported back to the heart of the trial grounds. My stomach dropped. 7 suns hung in the sky, and the temperature spiked to a blistering 150 degrees Celsius. My tires began to liquefy the moment they touched the asphalt. Not even my high-end air conditioning or specialized insulation could counter that kind of furnace. I was hammering the repair command and dumping ice water coolant over myself just to stay conscious. But the cabin air was growing thin, scorching my lungs with every breath. At the end of the horizon, a sea of heat shimmered and surged toward me. As it drew closer, the truth revealed itself. An army of red rock beasts, so dense they looked like a plague of locusts. My skin crawled just looking at them. Was this the true face of the Central World? The final apocalypse that could fell gods? Trial Layer Combat Challenge. Requirement: eliminate or contain the red rock beasts using only your vehicle's base functions. This is an optional stage. You may withdraw without penalty, but doing so forfeits the legendary career inheritance. The density of that swarm was insane. The heat radiating off them had to be pushing 200 degrees Celsius. If my muscle tank got too close, it would be slag in seconds. Respectfully, no. Even an aircraft carrier would have melted under these conditions. But as I reached for the withdraw prompt, my hand froze. The legendary career was right there. Could I really turn my back on this? Should I play it safe and keep farming loot chests? Or do I roll the dice and try to turn this bike into a war machine? It's giving main character energy. I wasn't leaving with regrets. If I was going down, I was going down swinging. 1,000 red rock beasts, they were nothing. I engaged the metal cannon to its maximum output and activated the front-mounted flamethrowers. Suddenly, my muscle tank surged with a blinding, incandescent light. I stacked every offensive buff I had: collision boosters, cannon fire, flamethrowers, and the final gamble, the self-destruct sequence. Take this, I roared, watching the monsters swarm. It's my last ripple. I kicked the door open and leaped out, ignoring the laws of physics and the speed limiters. The air hit me like a physical wall of fire, and for a terrifying second, I felt like I was being slow roasted alive. The moment my muscle tank slammed into that writhing sea of beasts, the world didn't explode, it vanished. The pain I expected to feel was entirely absent. For a heartbeat, everything went black, and then, as if I just blinked, I found myself back inside the cockpit of my truck. The horizon was empty. The thousands of red rock beasts had simply ceased to exist, and the temperature had plummeted back to a comfortable, ambient level. It was as if that entire nightmare scenario had been nothing more than a fever dream. I sat there, stunned, processing the reality. My muscle tank hadn't detonated. The situation had shifted in a way that defied everything I knew. Ding. Assessment complete. Quick-witted, decisive, courageous, and capable. Mission accomplished. Rating: perfect. Title: living through death. Reward dispensed: legendary fire-type career transfer certificate. A strange realization washed over me. The final test hadn't actually been about raw strength. It was a trial of the spirit. Perhaps annihilating 1,000 beasts was a literal impossibility, a death trap designed to force the challenger to walk away. The system wanted to see who would gamble their life for the goal. Someone who prioritized survival over everything might live longer, sure, but they'd never be worthy of a legendary career that demanded one walk alongside the apocalypse itself. Meanwhile, in a desolate realm of churning magma, a mysterious figure stood beside a colossus of a vehicle, a massive lava dragon coiled patiently at his side. The man suddenly paused, his expression shifting from surprise to a faint, appreciative smile. "Not bad, newcomer," he murmured, his voice echoing through the heat. "Not bad at all." Back in the cave, the atmosphere was thick with tension. "You actually stepped into the legendary tier trial. And you made it out alive?" Kishia stared at me, his face pale. "Did you actually pass? What if I told you I came back empty-handed?" I asked, my voice flat. "I'd believe you, but I'd be wrong." Kishia's bluster had evaporated, replaced by a jittery, nervous energy. "Look, we made a mistake. Let's just settle this peacefully. We won't say a word about what you found here." "I'm not arguing, I'm explaining why I'm right." I stared at him, cold and unmoving. Did he really think I just let him go because I felt charitable? Kishia must have sensed my refusal, because he panicked, yanking his weapon and pulling the trigger in a desperate, last-ditch effort. He was certain he had the drop on me, that my reaction time couldn't possibly cover that distance. Clang. The sound of his bullet rebounding off an unseen barrier rang through the cave. Before he could even register the failure, the roar of an engine shook the very foundations of the tunnel. A massive, hulking shape materialized out of thin air. Despair, sharp and absolute, washed over Kishia's face. "I knew it, you were hiding a high-tier vehicle." I didn't give him another second. I manned the machine gun, pulled the trigger, and wiped the remaining hostiles off the board. Only Daitu managed to weave through the chaos, narrowly escaping using some bizarre ninjutsu. With the threat gone, we split the loot. Everyone walked away stronger. Trucker Wang, in particular, scored big. His personal vehicle evolved into the National Highway Great Transport. It came with a legendary tier skill, mandatory relocation, which allowed him to forcibly teleport a target onto the highway for an instant execution. It was a one-use-per-day concept-tier god skill. On that road, he was untouchable. Even the top brass in the Central World had to tip their hats and whisper, "Kid, you're about to run into some serious luck." I offered to trade Bicycle Lou up to a purple-tier motorcycle, but he shook his head. "I'm good, really." He smiled, looking at his frame. "The bike is low-tier, yeah, but it levels up fast. Before I got here, I was a long-distance tourer. I hated the bike at first, but now, I think I've found my rhythm." Maybe it was just fate, or perhaps he'd just grown genuinely attached to the thing, but the bicycle had become a part of his. We reached a nearby town to hunker down for a bit of rest, and the local group chat was already buzzing. "Did you guys hear?" Someone messaged. "The inheritance grounds are in total chaos. Those two major organizations tried to wipe everyone out. I wonder if Bicycle Lou and his crew made it out." I chuckled, tapping back a quick reply. "Don't worry, everyone. We're out and we're safe." The reaction was immediate. "You're safe? Did those two organizations actually let you go?" "They're nothing," I wrote back. "Besides, they're not nearly as tough as my crew." "Wait. Did you actually get the transfer certificates?" Another user asked, sounding skeptical. "Obviously," I replied. "I even picked up a purple-tier great transport truck. If anyone needs help on the national highway, just give me a shout." There was a long silence, and then someone muttered, "Man, this guy is out here getting free purple-tier vehicles. Honestly, it's not my own failure that hurts. It's seeing my friends succeed that really stings. It do be like that." We held a small victory banquet that night, splurging on plates of beef and mutton. As we ate, I checked the status of the Equatorial purgatory. It was finally winding down, and the outside temperature was returning to something approaching sanity. After saying goodbye to my teammates, I hit the road again, finally having some breathing room to crack open my hoard of loot. I had 60 white chests, 3 blue ones, and a single purple prize waiting for me. I started with the whites. The first, a gray husky, was an adorable little thing. It crawled around the cabin, automatically picking up trash and keeping my ride spotless. Then there was Door, a cute pink dog that would periodically fish healing agents out of its pocket, providing a sweet 10-second health regen burst. They were cute enough that I decided to keep them around as pets. I also pulled some netherite armor, crafted from ancient debris. It was harder than diamond and gave me a solid 20% boost to my defensive stats. The rest of the white chests were mostly just food and some basic vehicle modules, but I was just getting started. I moved on to the blue chests. The first was a fish spine module, which coated my chassis in sharp, serrated spikes, granting 10% defense and 20% friction. Talk about a return damage meta that's basically a thorn mail for my truck. Then came the universal mud, a strange substance that could be magically transmuted into egg tarts or pizza. Adulting is soup, and I'm a fork, I thought, shaking my head at the culinary absurdity. Finally, a heavy cotton coat, which offered a massive 80% insulation boost against frigid weather. Then, the moment of truth, the purple chest. Module, Heatwave Aura, consumes significant energy to generate a 200 degrees Celsius thermal barrier around the vehicle, grants immunity to all fire damage, synergizes with the user's fire elemental abilities for amplified effects. I remembered my tires melting in the Equatorial purgatory, and I felt a wave of relief. High-temperature environments wouldn't be a problem anymore, and once I hit level 5 and finalized my transfer into a fire-type career, this module was going to be an absolute game-changer. Over the next few days, I scavenged like a madman, finally pushing my muscle tank to level 4 and dumping my remaining attribute points into my stats. After a lot of thought, I decided on my career path, mechanic. While a pure combat warrior had its perks, my arsenal was already overflowing with weapons. Becoming a mechanic would skyrocket my combat efficacy to a whole new level. I even treated myself to a new purple-tier side vehicle, a sleek, ominous darkness motorcycle, to round out the fleet. I also equipped the energy barrier skill. It only consumed a negligible amount of fuel, yet it could manifest an invisible, impenetrable shell around my chassis, neutralizing 80% of any incoming damage. With a defensive module like that, even when I wasn't inside the muscle tank, my sense of security was off the charts. That's when I remembered the location of a disaster steel plant that one of the survivors I'd rescued had given me. It seemed like the perfect proving ground to test the true power of my new Heatwave Aura module. I set a course and pushed forward. Inside the plant, a handful of private vehicles were idling. "Boss," a scout whispered, eyes wide. "There are thousands of level 3 zombies in there, and they've actually formed a semi-organized force. Plus, there's an advanced Lion King leading them." The group collectively paled. Level 3 zombies weren't just cannon fodder. Their stats were equivalent to level 3 vehicles, and they possessed a disturbing level of coordination. Pair that with an advanced Lion King, and the difficulty wasn't just high, it was lethal. Suddenly, a sharp blast of a car horn echoed through the yard. "Boss, someone's here." "Perfect," the leader sneered. "Grab him." But as the leader caught sight of me rolling up on my purple-tier motorcycle, he abruptly held up a hand, signaling his men to stand down. "Hold on, something's off. Don't make a move yet." I arrived at the perimeter, killed the engine, and stepped off the bike. With the energy barrier humming around me, I wasn't worried about an ambush. If things really went south, I still had my muscle tank as my ultimate trump card. I surveyed the room, scanning the faces of the group. They were wary, eyes tracking my every movement with a distinct hostility toward an outsider. Looking at their gear, most of them were piloting level 3 vehicles or higher, and the leader himself sat behind the wheel of a level 5 purple-tier monstrosity. The leader, who introduced himself as Q1, the head of the Annihilation Organization, stepped forward to break the silence. "I'm Q1, who might you be?" "Just call me Motorcycle Xiao Yao," I replied nonchalantly. Qi Yuan's eyes lit up. "Ah, the legendary Xiao Yao, who took down the Symbiosis Alliance and the Beast God Temple. How about it care to join our organization? We could do great things together." "Respectfully, no. I prefer flying solo," I told him. "Don't be so quick to refuse," Q Yuan pressed, his smile looking a little too practiced. "There are thousands of zombies in this plant. Most of my boys are level 3 or 4, but with your strength, we could sweep this place in half a day. We'll split the purple tier chests and all the materials right down the middle. How about it?" The deal sounded almost too good. "Wouldn't that be unfair to you guys?" I asked. "Of course not. Everyone here respects your strength." He sounded friendly enough, but my eyes weren't glued to his face. I was watching the periphery. Slowly, his subordinates were drifting into position, weapons drawn, forming a tight, calculated perimeter around me. Common sense is like deodorant. The people who need it most never use it. "Since you think my strength is so impressive," I said, my voice dropping, "why exactly are you trying to play me?" Before he could lie his way out of it, my darkness motorcycle vanished into thin air. In its place, the massive, imposing form of my muscle tank materialized, casting a long, intimidating shadow over the group. "No way! Is that a legendary tier truck?" someone shrieked. "Bad move. Fall back. Whoever's the slowest is frontline bait." It was too late. My muscle tank erupted in a blinding, radiant light, and a pulse of searing, high-impact heat rippled outward. In a matter of seconds, anyone caught in the blast was reduced to carbonized husks. The entire organization was wiped off the map in a blink. Their motive was as transparent as it was pathetic. They just wanted a high-level pawn to act as a meat shield for their treasure hunt. Task failed successfully. Did they really think I was that easy to scam? Whether they were after the loot or my career transfer certificate, they'd severely miscalculated. My display screen suddenly flashed a warning. Outdoor temperatures had spiked to a blistering 260 degrees Celsius. That heatwave aura module was terrifyingly efficient. It was a purple tier upgrade, and it definitely earned its keep. Once the dust settled, I got to work harvesting materials from the wreckage. I managed to scrounge up plenty of upgrade resources and a few dozen modules, though most were duplicates of things I already owned. To bridge the gap in the metal coins needed for my vehicle upgrade, I put the excess stock up for sale. Because demand was through the roof, the transaction went through in seconds. With enough coins in my pocket, I immediately pulled the trigger on the muscle tank's upgrade. Once the requirements for a career shift were met, I didn't hesitate. I locked in mechanic. As soon as I confirmed the selection, my brain flooded with an encyclopedic knowledge of advanced ballistics and engineering. Mechanic class shift successful. Basic skill, firearm enhancement, level 1, boosts firearm and projectile damage by 100%. Then a follow-up notification chimed, secondary vehicle detected, eligibility for dual class transfer confirmed, please proceed. I blinked, then a grin spread across my face. Sounds like a future me problem? Nah, sounds like a future me bonus. I selected warrior. Warrior class shift successful. Basic skill, physique enhancement, level 1, grants 50% extra strength and 20% extra speed. I was stoked. A powerhouse warrior wielding heavy machine guns, whether it was close quarters carnage or long-range bombardment, I was untouchable. I didn't stop there. I fed the legendary career transfer certificate into my mechanic class. Legendary skill, Flame Destroyer, infuses all firearm ammunition and shells with fire elemental damage, upgrades all rounds to incendiary status, significantly boosts destruction radius. The description was simple, but the raw potential was devastating. I stepped out and fired a few test shots into the empty lot. The bullets hit with lethal precision, tearing up the earth and leaving behind patches of persistent, hungry flames. And this was just level 1. Once I broke through to the Gamma tier, I'd awaken even more skills. I did the same for my warrior class. Legendary skill, Thermal Physique, level 1, rapidly raises body temperature during combat to amplify explosive power and speed. Grants total immunity to extreme cold. My power level had just hit an exponential growth curve. After I tweaked my attribute points and finished fine-tuning my modules, I finally stepped into the disaster steel plant. The interior was a desolate, chilling nightmare. The air was damp, cold, and heavy with the scent of decay, with the temperature dropping dozens of degrees lower than the scorching outside world. I hadn't taken more than a few steps when I spotted them, a pack of snarling, disfigured zombies lurking in the shadows of the factory floor. They locked onto my scent immediately, letting out blood-curdling shrieks as they charged. This is fine. I didn't even flinch. To my muscle tank, these guys were barely a nuisance. Still, I couldn't help but notice that these level 3 zombies were a different breed. Their physical capabilities were a massive step up from the lower-tier trash. Take the one running toward me. It didn't even break stride when it plowed through a massive 200-pound steel beam in its path, punting it 30 meters away without losing an ounce of momentum. Some were so fast they were practically blurring, leaving afterimages as they sprinted. But what truly sent a chill down my spine was the look on their faces. Some of them were actually wearing human expressions, twisted, bloodthirsty grins that bordered on a cruel kind of joy. Honestly, it made me smirk. If they could feel emotions, the eventual collision would be a lot more satisfying. I slammed my foot onto the accelerator, and the world dissolved into a chaotic blur of flying limbs. In front of my 5G muscle tank, these level 3 zombies were nothing more than speed bumps. Within seconds, they were pulverized into a collection of sweet loot chests. The twisted malice on their faces didn't last long. It was quickly replaced by raw, primal terror. They couldn't wrap their rotting brains around how this steel beast could possess such overwhelming, godlike force. I didn't let up. I kept the pedal floored, hungry for more, but I soon realized something was off. These weren't just mindless drones anymore. The remaining pack had shifted tactics. Instead of rushing headlong into my path, they were actively dodging, peeling off to the sides of the truck to strike from the flanks. Some were even scrabbling underneath, trying to rip into my undercarriage. The Lion King, that had to be it. Anytime a pack moves with that kind of calculated precision, a leader is calling the shots. I didn't hold back, choosing to plow through the chaos at full speed. Level 3 or not, they were fragile. They became nothing more than grease under my tires. While I shredded the fodder, I kept my eyes scanning the factory floor for the mastermind. As the horde thinned out, I saw it. In the center of the workshop stood a massive, hulking figure, letting out thunderous roars that commanded the remaining undead. Target acquired, Lion King, level 5. Elite tier entity. Physical attributes equivalent to a level 5 player. High intelligence with the capacity for strategic pack command. Found you, I muttered, my pulse racing. Time for your judgment. I didn't waste a second, charging straight at the beast. The Lion King was quick, diving behind a cluster of shipping containers, but it severely underestimated the raw mass of my muscle tank. That scrap metal didn't even qualify as a speed bump. In under a minute, I'd turned that predator into a crisp, blue-tier loot chest. I hopped out of the truck, dapple a machine gun in hand, eager to field test my new career skills. I leveled the barrel at a distant cluster of stragglers and squeezed the trigger. A torrent of incendiary rounds tore through the air, and upon impact, the targets detonated in a fountain of gore and fire. The flames hung in the air, hungry and persistent. It wasn't just high single-target DPS, it was a literal firestorm. This was the ultimate tool for crowd control. I cleaned up the last of the survivors, inged them into a haul of various chests, and started absorbing the scrap metal littering the factory floor. Yet, a nagging question kept gnawing at the back of my mind. This was a disaster site, so where was the purple tier chest? I couldn't afford to get comfortable. I still had flashbacks to the military factory, where the Earth Dragon and the armored Centipede had ambushed me when I least expected it. I was lost in thought when my peripheral vision caught something strange back in the main courtyard where I'd fought the bulk of the horde. Oddly enough, most of the remains I'd left behind were already gone. I walked over, peering closer, and noticed the fragments of zombie flesh were slowly sinking into the earth, as if the ground itself were swallowing them whole. The realization hit me a split second before the floor beneath my boots began to heave. A violent, bone-rattling tremor surged up through the soles of my feet. Not good. Move. My blood ran cold as I slammed my hand onto the controls, instantly summoning my muscle tank to peel out of there. The ground beneath me shattered, spider-webbing into deep fissures before collapsing entirely. From the depths of the crater, a behemoth tore through the earth, surging into the center of the steel plant. Target identification, Fusion Zombie, level 6. Super Zombie Entity. Threat profile. Born from concentrated power and extreme radiation. Possesses unparalleled strength and gravity-based control. Attacks carry a virulent toxin. Units struck are subjected to mental puppetry for 30 seconds. Mental control? The audacity. If that hit connected, I'd be a meat puppet for half a minute and eternity in a fight. Before I could even process the horror, the monstrosity locked onto me, letting out a roar that shook my very bones as it charged. I didn't back down. I engaged the metal-heavy cannon, preparing to turn this thing into scrap metal. But the fusion zombie was faster than its bulk suggested, and it lashed out first, hurling a massive limb composed of fused, mangled zombie torsos directly at me. Damn it! My cannon was still charging. Productivity loading. The giant limb plummeted from the sky like a falling building. With no time for the main weapon to spool up, I had to pivot. I scrambled onto the roof of the tank, shouldering my RPG, and fired point blank at the descending mass of flesh. Thanks to my flame destroyer module, the shell ignited the moment it cleared the barrel, turning into a streaking comet of white-hot fury. The explosive impact was doubled. The limb was vaporized before it could even touch the dirt. The fusion zombie shrieked, recoiling from the splash damage, and began closing the distance with predatory intent. But I was done playing games. A harmonic chime signaled that the heavy cannon was fully charged. Say less, I hissed, pulling the trigger. The shell screamed through the air, followed by a deafening, reality-bending roar. The impact was absolute. The monster's massive torso disintegrated in a spray of viscera, leaving only a shimmering, violet-tier treasure chest resting in the center of the ruins. Task failed successfully. Even a level 6 central entity couldn't handle the raw output of my cannon. It was clear, high-tier modules were the only way to stay relevant. The standard white-tier gear was destined for the scrap heap. After absorbing the remaining materials from the factory, I hit the road again. I popped open the hall from the fight, eager to see what the RNG gods had blessed me with. Module, Undead Simulator Blue. Emits a field that mimics zombie pheromones. Low-level undead identify you as one of their own, neutralizing all hostility. This was gold. Future scavenging runs just got a whole lot safer. Next up, Module, Lion King Inhibition Blue, can briefly override the neural impulses of undead. Duration, 1 second. Range, 200 meters. Cooldown, 1 hour. Resource cost, variable based on count and level. Note, cannot control entities 2+ levels above the user. I stared at the screen, stunned. Bro understood the assignment. I didn't hesitate to equip it. A 1-second window might sound short, but in this line of work, it was an incredibly broken mechanic. If I'd had this against the level 6 fusion zombie, I could have kept him at a safe distance without breaking a sweat, and for those annoyingly fast zombies I'd inevitably face down the line, this was exactly the kind of get-out-of-jail-free card I needed. To maximize my accuracy, I focused on fine-tuning my targeting systems. I turned my attention to a special blue-tier chest, labeled Elite Module. As the inventory cycled through, I was stunned by the sheer utility of the items available. Honestly, every refresh tempted me to empty my entire stockpile. I forced myself to be patient until I landed on the jackpot. Module, Distortion, Blue Tier, Elite. Consumes energy to warp the chassis, allowing for real-time structural transformation. Adjusts dimensions, curves, and overall silhouette at will. This was the one. My primary reason for keeping the motorcycle as a secondary vehicle was mobility. My truck was a beast, but it lacked the agility needed for tight corridors. This module turned that weakness into a non-issue. I could just shrink my way out of trouble. Finally, I cracked open the most valuable prize of the lot, the purple tier chest. Module, Golden Bell Shield, Purple Tier. Consumes energy to generate a transparent energy barrier. Upon the barrier's destruction, grants the vehicle 10 seconds of complete invulnerability. My patience is under maintenance, but this is peak cinema. It was effectively an invincibility frame mechanic. The ability to tank hits while outputting damage was already top tier, but a 10-second invulnerability window? That's just straight up broken. For the next few days, I combed the landscape for resources. I managed to push the muscle tank to level 6 and gave my other modules a solid boost, but that tranquility didn't last. A frantic ping from the elite group chat shattered the silence. This disaster site is cursed, someone messaged. I can't hold them off anymore. Can anyone provide extraction? It's a slaughterhouse in here, not just mutations and zombies, but the forest itself. I've been driving for hours and I can't find the exit. Hold tight, I replied, typing with one hand while hitting the accelerator. I'm on my way. I didn't waste a second. En route, I even caught up with that guy who'd escaped me earlier. I didn't ice him though. His best friend had reached out, offering a purple tier chest as a ransom for his life. We signed a binding contract, a failsafe that ensured no backstabbing, as the central world system would literally delete anyone who broke the terms. It was good business. Soon enough, a massive, oppressive forest loomed on the horizon. The trees were gargantuan, their canopies woven so tightly they choked out the sunlight. Visibility dropped below 50 meters in seconds. Location: weird forest, disaster site, a mysterious, high-radiation wilderness. Paths shift like a labyrinth, housing unknown, nightmarish entities. Assume everything you see is a threat. Usually, I'd have to swap to the bike to navigate such dense terrain, but this was the perfect field test for my new gear. I activated the distortion module. The truck began to groan and shift. The heavy steel chassis rippled, warping to match the narrow gaps and winding geometry of the trees. I slipped through the undergrowth with eerie, fluid grace, moving deeper into the heart of the woods. Then, something caught my eye in the gloom. A pack of mushroom monsters, level 5, stood waiting. They looked deceptively harmless, like overgrown flora, but I knew better than to trust anything in this place. Those things looked innocent enough, but that was just a front for the lethal, corrosive slime they used as ammunition. Before I could even twitch to activate my barrier, the mushroom monsters spat a barrage of sludge directly at my cockpit. My vision was instantly obliterated as the gunk splattered across the windshield, sizzling and eating away at my armor. The audacity. I didn't panic. I just engaged my heatwave aura. The temperature of my chassis skyrocketed in a heartbeat, flash evaporating the corrosive slime into nothingness. The heatwave rippled outward, turning the distant mushroom monsters into ash before they could even let out a death rattle. I pressed on, leaving nothing but steam behind. Shortly after I passed through, a scouting party stumbled onto the scorched trail I'd left. One of them stopped cold, his eyes widening as he stared at the deep tread marks etched into the earth. "Look at the size of these tracks," he whispered, his voice trembling. "What kind of beast is this? Is there another elite tier vehicle in here besides the bosses?" Panic started to set in. "We need to get back and report this, now." Meanwhile, my journey was going perfectly. My display pinged with 2 red markers, Hanmo and Wu Hen, the survivors who'd called for help, but the radar also showed a swarm of red dots hot on their heels. They were being hunted. I shot them a quick message. "What's the situation? Are you being chased?" "Xiao Yao, is that you? We're saved." Hanmo's reply was frantic. "Is it mutants or creatures?" I asked. "Humans," came the reply. "One of them is driving a level 5 purple tier vehicle, and the rest are backed up by blue tier rigs. Should we fall back?" "Keep driving straight," I commanded. "Don't stop." They didn't know the full extent of my gear, but after the rumors of me tearing through the Equatorial purgatory spread, They trusted my judgment. They gunned it, and within minutes, they caught sight of my muscle tank barreling toward them. An elite tier truck? We're actually invincible. Wu Hen cheered, his voice thick with relief. I got a big brother on my side now. What do you clowns have? I didn't wait for the pleasantries. My metal-heavy cannon was already fully primed and locked. The pursuers behind them skidded to a halt as they realized they were charging headfirst into a nightmare. They tried to peel away, but they were moving too fast to pivot. My shot hit them like the judgment of a god. The explosion was absolute, turning their convoy into a scrap metal graveyard. Han Mo and Wu Hen were stunned into silence, staring at the carnage. Is that the purple tier metal-heavy cannon? To think Xiao Yao is this strong. I stepped out of the tank, my boots crunching on the still smoldering debris. I walked over to the lone survivor, an enemy operative twitching in the dirt. Who sent you? I demanded. He wheezed, blood bubbling at his lips. I won't tell you. Someone will avenge me. And just like that, he went limp. Task failed successfully. While I debriefed with Han Mo and Wu Hen to gather intel on the forest, things were shifting elsewhere. Deep in the heart of the woods, a beautiful, fair-skinned young man stood atop a vehicle that looked like a king of the road, a true machine of slaughter. A massive cannon barrel pointed into the distance, pulsing with a dark, latent energy. He was surrounded by an army of guards, but he suddenly froze. He looked up, his gaze piercing through the canopy, locked onto our position, as if he could see us through the miles of twisted trees. Boss, a subordinate rushed over, breathless. Bad news. The second team, they've been wiped out. Every single one of them, the guard reported, his voice shaking, including the purple tier vehicle. They all went dark in an instant. They're gone. The young man didn't flinch. Instead, he flashed a cold, intrigued smile. He recalled the odd tire dimensions his scouts had mentioned earlier. Elite tier vehicle, huh? He chuckled to himself. It's giving main character energy. The situation was finally starting to get interesting. On the other side of the forest, Han Mo dragged a survivor out of a wrecked vehicle, slamming him against the hood. Start talking. Give us everything you know, and maybe you'll live to see the next hour. The man just stared back, his jaw clenched tight, displaying a stubborn, suicidal resolve. Do all the members of this mystery organization have this much backbone? Wu Hen muttered, clearly unimpressed. I stayed calm, stepping forward into the man's personal space. Your leader is driving an elite tier vehicle, isn't he? The effect was instantaneous. The man's pupils contracted, and he couldn't stop his body from trembling. My guess was right. The math is finally mathing. The faction behind this squad wasn't playing around. If they were deploying elite tier vehicles just to lead a standard patrol, their baseline power was significantly higher than anything I'd encountered so far. Han Mo and Wu Hen exchanged anxious glances. Their own purple tier cars were nowhere near that level, and a direct confrontation felt like a recipe for disaster. Should we torture it out of him? Wu Hen asked, glancing at the captive. No, I replied. Anything he says under duress is probably a lie, and I'm not in the mood for parlor games. If they're hostile, we'll run into them eventually. Honestly, I'm looking forward to it. Since entering the central world, I've been steamrolling everything in my path. I'd never found a challenge that could actually go toe-to-toe with my muscle tank. This mysterious elite tier vehicle, it was the first thing that actually piqued my interest. Bro is fighting demons, but I'm just here for the loot. After we finished off the straggler and harvested the scrap from the battlefield, we sat down to exchange intel. I've been stuck here for 3 days, Han Mo explained, his face lined with fatigue. The place is crawling with mutated horrors, but the real issue is the acid rain. It hits every 3 hours, and each cycle shaves 3% off a vehicle's total durability. I calculated the risks in my head. A site this dangerous didn't just have one fixed treasure chest. There had to be something even more substantial waiting at the core. The weird thing is, I mused, the concentration of the acid rain increases the further east you go. Maybe the core is at the easternmost point? That doesn't make sense, Wu Hen countered. I entered from the east, and I drove for half an hour before I even made it to this sector. Because the space here is warped, I realized. Even if you turn around and drive in a straight line, you won't escape. To get out, we either have to clear the site by finding the fixed treasure chest, or if my theory is right, keep pushing through the distortion until we hit the true center. It was a gamble, but we were out of options. We agreed to form a temporary alliance, with resources divided based on individual contribution. With the plan set, the 3 of us lined up our vehicles and headed straight for the heart of the forest. Something was definitely off. Even though the path we were retracing was identical to the one we'd taken earlier, I could still see the scorched remnants of my previous skirmishes. The exit remained elusive. It felt like we had stumbled into some kind of infinite, looping nightmare. Wu Hen's message pinged on my dash. Xiao Yao, I'm seeing fresh tire tracks on the road we just cleared. Do you think they're already tracking you? I didn't panic. I'd expected this from the moment I set foot in this twisted forest. If I'd wiped out their scouting party, it was only a matter of time before they sent word back to their main faction. They were hunting me, and I was more than happy to let them try. After driving for another half hour, we all slammed on our brakes simultaneously. My sensor module flashed like a Christmas tree. Dozens of red dots were converging on us from every direction. What is that? Wu Hen asked, his voice tight. Is it their main force? No, I replied, scanning the perimeter. This speed. It's not human. I was right. A dense thicket of trees erupted with a chorus of blood-chilling howls, and moments later, a sea of gray fur spilled into view. It was a massive pack of mutated wolves. At the center of the formation stood their leader, a beast the size of a warhorse, its eyes glowing with predatory malice, and its fur crackling with arcs of jagged electricity. Target identification: Jungle Thunder Wolf. Level 7. Alpha of the pack. Possesses pack commanding capabilities. Attacks imbued with elemental lightning damage. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. A level 7? We haven't even reached the core, and we're already running into apex tier mutations. If this was just the outskirts, the boss waiting at the center must be absolutely nightmare fuel. Han Mo and Wu Hen didn't hesitate. They knew the drill. Han Mo leaned into his motorcycle, shredding the surrounding wolves with high-caliber machine gun fire, while Wu Hen used the sheer agility of his sports car to dance through the pack, drawing their fire and creating openings for Han Mo. My gaze, however, remained locked on the alpha. High-level mutations were basically walking loot crates, and I wasn't about to let this one slip away. Xiao Yao, Han Mo shouted over the comms, his voice strained. We're getting swarmed. The pack is too big and our energy is bottoming out. We have to retreat. Get out of here, I signaled. I'll handle the rest. They didn't need to be told twice. They peeled away, kiting the smaller wolves toward the perimeter to clear the field. Seeing its pack thinned, the alpha lunged, clearing a distance of several meters in a single, fluid leap. It let out a deafening roar, and a bolt of pure, lethal lightning arced down from the sky, screaming toward my truck. I didn't flinch. I had already primed my golden bell shield. With a resonant hum, a shimmering, translucent barrier bloomed around my chassis, swallowing the lightning bolt whole. The alpha pulled back, shocked that its elemental strike had been neutralized so easily. The math ain't mathing for you, is it, pal? I waited for the recoil, but the alpha just stood there, stunned. I didn't give it a second chance to recover. I triggered my pre-charged metal-heavy cannon. The shell left the barrel with a roar that shattered the silence of the forest. The impact was absolute. A shockwave rippled out from the alpha's position, cratering the clearing and sending a violent gale through the woods. Several ancient trees groaned and snapped like toothpicks, and the nearby stragglers were obliterated by the sheer force of the blast. When the dust settled, the alpha was gone, replaced by a gleaming, elite-tier blue module chest. Task failed successfully. Han Mo and Wu Hen pulled back up, their eyes wide as they stared at the smoking crater. One shot? That's not a weapon, that's a cheat code. I just shrugged, collecting the bounty. This raid was turning out to be an incredibly profitable endeavor. My radar suddenly pinged, locking onto a single, stationary red dot ahead of us. Han Mo and Wu Hen caught it too, their expressions tightening as we adjusted our course. We rolled up to the site of a brutal, recent skirmish. Dozens of mutated wolf carcasses littered the clearing, and blue and white treasure chests were scattered like loose change across the forest floor. In the center of the carnage lay a gargantuan beast, its fur matted with dark, dried blood. Target identification: Hellfire Mastiff, deceased. Level 7, Canine Apex Predator. Exceptional combat attributes, attacks imbued with volatile fire-based damage. Potential for domestication, subjugation. A Hellfire Mastiff, I muttered, shaking my head. What a waste. This thing was a beast. It was a tragedy to see such a powerhouse meet its end here, but as I moved closer, something small caught my eye. A tiny, shivering creature scrambled out from beneath the Mastiff's massive, lifeless frame. Target identification: Mutated Mastiff Puppy, Level 1, Newborn. Currently combat ineffective, but possesses immense growth potential and absolute loyalty to its master upon bonding. The puppy stumbled toward me, sniffing at my boots before letting out a soft, plaintive whimper and nuzzling against my leg. It was an instinctive act of submission, or maybe it was just smelling the lingering pheromones of the alpha wolf I'd just vaporized. I'm not lazy, I'm just on energy-saving mode, but this little guy needs a home. I scooped the pup up, a grin spreading across my face. Welcome to the squad, buddy. You're one of the Yao family boys now. We took a moment to catch our breath, and I finally turned my attention to the loot. It was time to crack open those blue-tier elite chests I'd been obsessing over. Module: Lightning Aegis Shield. Blue. Passive boost. Increases chassis, lightning attribute resistance by 50%. It was decent, but since level 7 plus mutations almost always packed elemental damage, it was more of a nice-to-have than a game-changer. I refreshed the pool, holding out for something better. Module: Thunder Cannon. Blue tier, elite, active, focuses raw electricity into a high-energy beam. Effect: 3-second paralysis upon hit. Range: 200 meters. Cost: 500 energy. Second. Bro understood the assignment. I equipped it without a second thought. I hit the refresh on the second chest, and my jaw nearly dropped. Module: Blazing Chariot. Blue tier, elite, active, envelops the vehicle in a persistent high-intensity flame aura. Scaling: intensity tied to the user's fire attribute proficiency. It was basically a localized supernova. Combined with my existing heatwave ability, the synergy would be exponential. Peak cinema. For the next few days, the three of us tore through the forest, grinding monsters and stacking loot. But by the fourth day, the mood shifted. We were still trapped in this arboreal labyrinth, and the acid rain was becoming corrosive enough to start eating through our paint. The concentration is spiking, Han Mo said, wiping rain-slick grime from his windshield. We're heading the right way, I'm sure of it. We just have to hold the line. Agreed, I said. Keep pushing. Just as we slammed our vehicles into gear, a deafening explosion shattered the forest canopy. A projectile, massive and unmistakably hostile, screamed down from the sky, its trajectory locked perfectly onto our position. "Get out of the way," I screamed. But the warning barely cleared my throat before the impact zone was already upon us. There was no time to dodge. The shell screamed through the air, closing the distance in a heartbeat. I slammed the trigger for my golden bell shield, the exact microsecond before impact. The resulting explosion was deafening, a visceral roar that shook my very chassis. The shield shattered, but as intended, it triggered the secondary effect, 10 seconds of absolute invulnerability. The forest around us, however, wasn't so lucky. Trees within a 30-meter radius were splintered and scorched, turned into jagged toothpicks by the blast wave. Han Mo and Wu Hen weren't spared. Their vehicles were battered and shredded, and both of them were left reeling from the concussive force. The rage that surged through me was cold and sharp. The audacity. If they wanted to fight, they could have come at me head-on like professionals. But this cowardly sneak attack? That was low, even for this place. If I hadn't had the invulnerability frame from the shield, I would have been just as scrap metal as the rest of the forest. I locked my eyes onto the sensor module. There, creeping through the gloom with quiet, predatory intent, was a cluster of red dots. I didn't hesitate. I aligned my metal-heavy cannon toward the signature and dialed the output to maximum power. Say less. I pulled the trigger, pouring every ounce of my fury into a single, vengeful blast. A few hundred meters away, the enemy convoy was moving with an air of arrogant ease. "Boss, your artillery is on another level," one of the subordinates chuckled, glancing back at the plume of fire still rising in the distance. "Those guys are probably nothing but charred remains by now." "Don't be so sure," another chimed in. "Though, considering it's the boss's signature skill, even if they had an elite-tier car, there's no way they walked that off." "Who knows?" The leader, Shichi, replied with a smug, casual tone. "If they died in one shot, it'd be pretty boring." They were still trading barbs when the air above them began to scream. A massive energy shell was descending from the sky, closing in with terrifying velocity. "Incoming, it's a shell." Shichi's smugness vanished. He hadn't expected someone who had just taken a direct hit to still be capable of mounting a counteroffensive. He scrambled to activate his tank's defensive protocols, and instantly, a shimmering wall of flame erupted around his vehicle. His golden tank was clearly equipped with high-tier defensive capabilities, much like my own muscle tank. The shell slammed into the fire barrier with a thunderous roar. The shield groaned and shattered, sending a shockwave that tore through their formation, leaving the surrounding vehicles twisted and broken in a scene of absolute carnage. I pulled Han Mo and Wu Hen to a makeshift safe zone. They were in bad shape. Han Mo was barely holding onto consciousness, and Wu Hen had gone completely limp. I'd spent my life mastering engines and combat, but I was useless when it came to patching up human wounds. "Let me," a voice spoke up. It was Obito, who'd been silent for hours. "I picked up some medical skills back in Konoha. I can stabilize them." I handed him the medical kit from my storage, my eyes narrowing. "Do it, but don't even think about running. Even if you escape to the ends of the earth, I will hunt you down." "We're in the same boat now, aren't we?" Obito muttered, already getting to work. "Just let me handle this." With the contract binding him, I didn't worry about him pulling a fast one. I climbed back into my cab and gunned the engine. I was going to finish this. My sensors pinged again. A single, distinct light was closing in from the front. "Still kicking, huh? You've got grit." I pushed through the dense brush, and for the first time, I saw the enemy's ride. I froze. It was a golden tank, a legitimate, heavy-duty monster of a machine. I'd expected another modified truck or a high-end sports car, but this was a different breed entirely. Its defensive capabilities clearly weren't a module, but an innate feature of the tank's chassis. Inside the tank, Shichi was just as stunned. He stared out at my machine, his eyes widening in genuine disbelief. This muscle tank, it's massive. He'd never seen anything like it. He had no idea that my ride had a unique growth trait, a feature that meant as long as I kept pushing, my chassis would never stop evolving. My reach reached level 6, and I was now a mechanical titan, by sheer scale dwarfing any conventional vehicle from Earth. With my specialized modules humming and a palpable aura of menace radiating from my chassis, I looked every bit the apex predator. Hiding behind a massive stone pillar, our two elite-tier vehicles finally locked eyes. "You know," Shiki sneered from inside his cockpit, "that blast of yours just cost me half my men." "Then they should have picked a better leader," I replied. There was no room for diplomacy here. When two kings of the road cross paths, only one leaves the wreckage behind. We didn't waste another breath. My metal-heavy cannon surged to life, the thunder cannon module crackling with volatile electricity that danced across my armor like jagged lightning. A searing bolt of pure energy tore through the air toward the tank. Simultaneously, Shichi threw up a defensive barrier while launching a cluster of piercing ice spears my way. He kicked his treads into overdrive, gunning the tank straight toward me for a high-impact collision. I didn't flinch. I flared my golden bell shield to shrug off the ice barrage and ignited my red rock heatwave. The forest exploded into a chaotic symphony of lightning and fire. Giant trees caught instantly, collapsing in showers of sparks and ash. If any ordinary person had been watching, they'd have been sent to the next dimension just by standing too close. Just as I prepared to launch my follow-up strike, the forest itself revolted. The trees around us began to warp and twist in unnatural, sickening contortions. The ground groaned, and in the space between our vehicles, a massive torrent of vines and gnarled roots erupted from the earth like a living, writhing flood. Within seconds, both of our vehicles were lashed, bound, and constricted by the massive, encroaching organic wall. What the hell is this? Shichi roared, his tank's engines screaming as he fought for traction. I just let out a cold laugh. I triggered my blazing chariot module, and the sudden, intense inferno incinerated the vines, strangling me, allowing me to rip free. But the forest wasn't done. The root system was expanding, sealing off the arena with blinding speed. Trying to push through now would be a suicide mission. Reluctantly, I threw my gears into reverse and backpedaled. On the other side, Shichi fired a series of pressurized wind blades, slicing through the thicket to carve himself a path to safety. I'm calling it a day, 17. Consider yourself lucky. If those vines hadn't stepped in, you'd be scrap metal right now. That's crazy work, I thought, watching him vanish into the greenery. If those roots hadn't popped up, you'd be the one currently being composted. I regrouped with my team. Xiao Yao, what just happened back there? Hanmo asked, his voice shaky. We heard explosions echoing from deep in the canopy. It was an elite tier tank, I said, catching my breath. We were evenly matched. Their jaws hit the floor. An elite tank? You've got the worst luck in the world or the best, depending on how you look at it. Han Mo and Wu Hen were looking much better thanks to Obito's medical handiwork, though they were still far from combat ready. I laid out the details of the encounter. The forest itself intervened. A sudden, massive flood of vines just sprouted from nowhere and stopped the fight. Is that some kind of passive environmental hazard? Wu Hen wondered. I have no idea, I admitted, but it definitely put an end to our duel. With both of them too injured to drive their own rigs, I ushered them into my cab. There was no way I was leaving them vulnerable in this hellhole. Once everyone was settled, I navigated my way back toward the site of the collision, my mind racing to figure out what had actually triggered such a bizarre, sentient defense mechanism. When I finally scouted the area, the sprawling labyrinth of vines and gnarled roots had vanished as if it had never existed. With the path clear, we pressed onward toward the forest's core. Meanwhile, Shiki's camp was a picture of chaotic frustration. Boss, are you all right? One of his subordinates asked, eyeing the damage to his golden tank. I ran into someone troublesome, Shichi growled. The men exchanged nervous glances. Their boss usually treated every raid like a victory lap. Seeing him look this rattled was a first for all of them. Troublesome. Boss, are you saying they had an elite tier vehicle? Get a medic over here and patch me up, Shiki snapped, ignoring the question. Then, move out. Everyone, proceed toward the core. He was vibrating with cold, suppressed rage. He had the advantage in vehicle class and level, yet he'd been humiliated by that bizarre, freak occurrence. Whatever you are, he thought, his grip tightening on the wheel, you're not escaping my palm this time. The next 2 days passed with eerie tranquility. I used the quiet to push my muscle tank to level 7, watching as my strength stat finally crested the 40-point barrier. I also cracked open 2 elite tier blue modules. One was a duplicate, another thunder cannon, but the second was something special. Module, precision bow, blue tier, elite. Active, fires, high velocity, unlimited kinetic arrows. Features, extreme range with 50% armor penetration. With the upgrade, I felt ready for anything. We drove for several more days until the forest opened up into a massive, barren clearing. We all stopped dead, staring in disbelief. Rising from the center of the expanse was a tree that defied logic, a colossus over 100 meters tall. Its leaves weren't just vegetation. They were saturated with heavy, glistening droplets that atomized in the breeze, forming the very source of the acid rain that had been plaguing us. Is this the core? The mutated monsters and zombies I'd faced before felt like playground toys compared to the sheer, overwhelming presence of this entity. Just as I prepared to disembark and scour the roots for a fixed treasure chest, my sensor module shrieked. Dozens of red dots were converging on our position at high speed. It was Shichi and his entire strike team. They spotted us the same instant we spotted them. The tension in the air became thick enough to cut with a knife. Xiao Yao, what's the play? Hanmo asked, his hands hovering over his controls. Are we engaging? I hadn't expected a rematch with that elite tier tank so soon, and with 2 additional elite vehicles flanking him, the odds were looking steep. Almost synchronized, my metal-heavy cannon and his tank's main turret began to glow with stored kinetic energy. We fired at the exact same moment. The world seemed to slow down as the 2 shells screamed across the clearing, and for a heartbeat, everyone held their breath, waiting for the inevitable impact. But it never came. As the projectiles neared, the massive tree gave a gentle, rhythmic sway. A ripple of visible golden energy pulsed from its roots, and in the blink of an eye, both shells simply blinked out of existence. They didn't explode, they didn't deflect, they just vanished. How? How did they just disappear into thin air? Hanmo gasped. A restricted zone rule? I narrowed my eyes. I'd heard rumors, but this was my first time experiencing it firsthand. This wasn't just a hazard zone, it was a fallen god's domain. According to legend, these were the resting places of deities who hadn't fully passed on, their lingering influence still dictating the laws of reality within their reach. It wasn't that these gods were truly dead, they were simply persisting, feeding on ambient energy in a cycle of eternal rebirth. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This entire hellish, mutated forest wasn't just a patch of wilderness. It was the physical remains of a fallen god. Every twisted branch, every drop of acidic rain, it was all part of a colossal, slumbering corpse. When we caused too much destruction, we triggered those defensive floods of vines, a natural immune response. We had reached the core, and the rule here was absolute. No combat allowed. It was glaringly obvious now. That titanic tree was the god's heart, and the rules of this domain were the energy barriers guarding it. If we broke those rules, if we forced the issue, the god would fully awaken. The consequences, I didn't even want to imagine them. I felt a shiver of genuine awe. We'd spent days tearing across thousands of kilometers, thinking we were exploring a vast world, only to realize we'd barely scratched the surface of a single, rotting limb. A fallen god's domain was a death sentence for the unprepared, but the resources, the potential riches here, were beyond anything I'd ever conceived. Beyond multiple fixed purple treasure chests, there was the promise of a golden chest. Gold. I already owned a golden tier tank, but I'd pulled it from a starter chest. It was fundamentally different from the high-quality, fixed loot chests that had provided the modules currently serving as my trump cards. The prospect of what a true, world-tier gold chest might hold was intoxicating. So, how do we actually get the gold chest? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. There's only one way. The response came, grim and final. Slay the god. When the god finally perished, its lingering power would collapse and integrate with the central energy of the world, coalescing into those coveted treasure chests. The word slay felt tragically inadequate. The sheer scale of destruction a dying god could unleash was something beyond mortal comprehension. High risk, absurdly high reward. Common sense is like deodorant, people who need it most never use it. I guess I was one of those people. It's your call, brother, Han Mo said, his eyes meeting mine. Wu Hen didn't speak, but he stood firm by Han Mo's side. From the moment I'd pulled them back from the brink, they'd hitched their stars to mine. They trusted me with their lives, and if I decided we were going to die here today, they were ready to punch their ticket without a single complaint. Under their expectant gaze, I felt the weight of the decision settle on my shoulders. What level do you think that tree is? The power of a god is beyond leveling metrics. It's immeasurable. If it were the old me, the guy who preferred the path of least resistance, I would have turned the truck around and vanished into the horizon. But after surviving the apocalypse, I'd learned the hard way that the only way to dictate your own destiny is to be the strongest thing in the room. We're doing it, I said. Across the clearing, the enemy encampment had gone deathly quiet. Someone on their side had clearly realized what this place was, too. But like us, they weren't turning back. Greed, or perhaps ambition, was the universal language. I didn't wait. I addressed them directly, my voice carrying across the silent expanse. We're going to attack the tree. I'm not looking to waste bullets on you right now. You can leave. Shichi narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. Why are you so sure? We'll just walk away. I already guessed you wouldn't, I countered. We take down the tree, then we settle our score. He nodded once, a grim acknowledgement of the temporary truce. Han Mo and Wu Hen, who had been itching to annihilate these guys since the moment we arrived, finally relaxed their grip on their weapons. We had a god to kill first. It was an unsettling sight. Shichi and I, who had been trying to erase each other from the map just moments ago, were now standing in a bizarre, temporary ceasefire. But beneath the surface, the tension was a coiled spring. We both knew that once the real work started, it would be a sprint to the finish, and only one of us was walking away with the prize. Don't worry, Shichi said, his voice cold. I'm not the type to pull a cheap sneak attack while we're fighting a god. I didn't dignify that with a response. After a brief breather, Shichi gave the signal. Every member of his organization opened fire, lightning, flames, ice, wind blades, and a literal rain of machine gun fire and artillery pummeled the gargantuan tree. I didn't hold back either. My guns and missiles erupted in a coordinated barrage. Once again, the tree shuddered. A flash of golden light rippled out, and just like before, our entire combined assault simply ceased to exist, erased from reality. But this time, we had been watching closely. We knew the drill. The moment the golden shimmer faded, we hammered it again. We kept up the tempo, wave after wave of relentless firepower. Finally, I noticed the shift. The tree's golden barrier was dimming. It was flickering like a dying bulb, failing to neutralize the entirety of our volleys. Shiki saw it too. We didn't exchange a word. We poured every ounce of remaining energy into our main cannons and fired our ultimate shells. The impact was cataclysmic. A deafening roar shook the forest as a gaping, jagged hole was ripped into the tree's roots. The tree hadn't just been damaged, it had been jolted awake. It's waking up, I shouted. Mental attack incoming, fall back. The closer you are, the harder it hits. The earth began to split open like a cracked egg. Massive, gnarled roots and vines surged from the subterranean depths, lashing out at everything in range. Vehicles were impaled on the spot, others were launched into the air like toys. In a single heartbeat, Shiki's ranks were decimated. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He unleashed a frantic flurry of wind blades, hacking through the thicket to save a few of his men. But as his blades carved through the roots, a few stray projectiles clipped my muscle tank. That's crazy work. I let out a cold, sharp laugh. Was that intentional, Shichi? I didn't wait for an answer. I slammed the trigger for my red rock heatwave. A blinding, crimson glow surged across my chassis, and an ocean of flame erupted, tearing through the clearing. The heat was suffocating, a localized inferno that didn't just target the enemy vehicles, it engulfed the tree's summoned roots. The tree began to writhe in agony, its organic material unable to cope with the extreme, artificial heat. "This is the module you got from the Equatorial purgatory," Hanmo gasped, his eyes wide as he watched the flames lick the sky. Wu Hen was equally stunned. "The power output, it's insane." They were right. It wasn't the pinpoint destructive force of a heavy cannon, but as an area of effectability, its potential in this forest environment was off the charts. "What are you doing?" Shichi screamed over the roar of the fire. "Stop this right now." His tank was shielded enough to survive the initial blast, but his remaining subordinates were being baked alive. "Why didn't you stop when your wind blades accidentally hit me?" I retorted, not slowing down for a second. "That was a mistake. An accident." "Same here," I said, a smirk hidden behind my mask. "Just a little accident." Shichi realized he couldn't play nice anymore. His tank's true nature was finally unveiled. A massive, pulsating aura of sub-zero ice exploded outward, clashing head-on with my inferno. It was the birth of a chaotic battlefield where fire and ice annihilated each other, both of us using the god's own body as our personal arena. His machine was a true elite-tier tank, the glacial tank. As the heat and cold collided, the battle reached a whole new level of insanity. The extreme sub-zero flash violently collided with the lingering thermal waves, causing countless wooden roots to instantly fracture and splinter under the thermal shock. The colossal tree shuddered, absorbing a massive blow. A low, resonant screech tore through the clearing, and in the next heartbeat, an unending torrent of concentrated acid rain began cascading from the canopy. The caustic fluid hissed against the metal armor of every vehicle in the area, eating away at structural plating and leaving deep, bubbling scars of corrosion across our hulls. "Just one more shot," I muttered to myself. Almost completely synchronized, Shichi and I unleashed our ultimate decisive strikes. The twin heavy rounds tore through the hazy downpour and slammed precisely into the weakened structure at the base of the massive trunk. The impact was absolute. The horrifying downpour of acid stopped instantly, the leaves falling still, but the Titan itself refused to collapse. "This is fine," I thought, staring at the intact trunk while checking my rapidly draining power reserves. Task failed successfully. How is this thing still breathing? Both Shichi and I had completely emptied our reserves into that final volley. If the Titan decided to summon another massive torrent of strangling vines right now, it would be a death sentence for everyone on the field. Without a second thought, I threw open my cabin door, jumped down into the acidic slush, and hauled out my heavy machine gun, intent on putting a few extra rounds into the wound. Before I could pull the trigger, the ancient tree let out a piercing, metallic shriek. A spectacular wave of golden energy erupted from its core, radiating outward in a blinding flash. 2 pillars of absolute golden light descended from above, perfectly enveloping my muscle tank and Shichi's machine. In the next blink of an eye, the 100-meter tree vanished into thin air, and along with it, Shichi and I were ripped completely out of the clearing. Back in the forest, the sudden disappearance left the remaining crews completely disoriented. What just happened? Where did Xiao Yao go? Han Mo's frantic voice echoed through the comms. Across the clearing, Shichi's men were panicking just as badly, shouting over each other. "Where's the boss? Where did he go?" They searched the empty crater but found absolutely nothing. It wasn't until someone finally looked up toward the sky that they noticed a strange, shimmering cluster of golden cubes floating silently in the air above the canopy. Meanwhile, I opened my eyes and looked around, completely disoriented. Where the hell am I? I was standing inside a sealed chamber composed of seamless, shimmering barriers. My confusion immediately transformed into pure shock as I scanned the layout. Scattered across the platform were several glowing guardian altars, and sitting directly in the center was a collection of treasure chests radiating high-tier energy. The Titan really was dead. I felt a surge of absolute euphoria wash over me. I had been fully prepared to wager my life in a desperate, grinding war of attrition, but instead, I had been brought directly to the vault. Every single prize was sitting right there, completely exposed. There were 4 purple-tier chests, and a single, magnificent golden chest resting on the main pedestal. I moved instantly, sweeping the items into my inventory before the dust could even settle. "You!" A sharp, furious voice rang out right behind me. I spun on my heel to see Shichi materializing just a few paces away. He stared at the empty, dark guardian altars, his eyes widening as the realization dawned on him. "Damn it. Hand over the chest right now." I merely let out a cold, quiet laugh. Respectfully, no. If we were back outside on the open field facing down his heavy elite tank, I would have been forced to play it incredibly safe and show his weaponry some serious respect. But inside this peculiar pocket dimension, a glance at my interface revealed that all vehicle systems and external armaments were completely suppressed. We were on foot. Fortunately for me, my warrior class progression had granted me the passive attributes of a thermal physique. Dealing with an ordinary, unenhanced human in a fistfight was going to be an absolute walk in the park. On the other side of the chamber, Shiki looked like he was about to lose his mind. Ever since he obtained his elite-tier tank, his survival journey had been a smooth, unchallenged ride of absolute dominance. Encountering my muscle tank had sparked a genuine sense of competitive rivalry in him for the very first time. But standing there, stripped of his steel armor, he was realizing that his raw power didn't surpass mine. He had managed to secure a few high-tier chests in the past, but due to terrible drop rates, he hadn't unlocked any high-level passive modules or physical skills. In terms of raw capabilities and skill builds, I held all the cards, and the crushing weight of that realization was hitting him all at once. The frustration and raw fury burning in Shichi's eyes were palpable. "Damn you," he roared, lunging forward with a desperate, full-force punch aimed right at my face. I didn't even flinch. I barely moved, simply raising my arm to deflect his blow with minimal effort. Before he could recover his balance, I pivoted and planted a kick square in his chest, sending him sprawling several meters across the floor. He landed hard, staring at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "How is this possible?" he wheezed, clutching his chest. "We're the same level. How are you this much stronger than me? Are you a hidden special class?" "You're pretty smart," I said, stepping toward him with no intention of letting him crawl away. "But what good does knowing that do you now?" I wasn't about to play the hero and leave a loose end. A rival of this caliber, if left unchecked, would only become a festering wound in my side later. After a few more exchanges, it was clear Shichi was completely out of his depth. The arrogance and effortless swagger he'd carried earlier had evaporated, replaced by the panicked flailing of a man who realized he was outclassed. "Goodbye, Shichi," I said, putting my weight behind a final, decisive strike. My fist flew forward and then we both froze. I stood there, fist hovering inches from his jaw, staring in confusion. He was still standing. He hadn't crumpled. We just blinked at each other, equally stunned. Common sense is like deodorant. People who need it most never use it. Well, I guess in this room, common sense had just taken a permanent vacation. Why aren't you dead?" he stammered, staring at my fist. "I was about to ask you the same thing," I muttered. The realization hit us simultaneously. A system notification flickered across my vision. "Domain rule detected. You are currently located within a restricted space governed by the lingering curse of a fallen god. Within this space, all combatants are rendered immune to lethal damage. This spatial barrier cannot be breached by force. It requires a voluntary sacrifice of lifespan from external parties to break the curse." "The curse of the giant tree," I whispered, the cold reality sinking in. It wasn't dead. It was merely dormant, still clutching us in its spectral grip. If we were stuck here indefinitely, hunger and dehydration would finish the job long before the curse did. Shichi's eyes lit up with maniacal glee. "Ha, I'm alive. You can't kill me. And when I get out of here, you're going to pay for this." "Focus on getting out first," I said dryly. "How many people are actually going to volunteer to burn their own lifespan for you? Your team is held together by violence and fear. That kind of organization doesn't have a long shelf life." Outside the barrier, the system prompt had reached his team, and the result was instant chaos. "I'm done with this," one of his men shouted, already gunning his engine. "The boss never cared about us. I'm tired of living in constant fear, just to fuel his ego. I'm out." Watching them scatter in real time, I looked at Shichi. "Is this your organization? I don't see a shred of loyalty." Shichi stood there, trembling, his face pale. Why is this happening? I gave them a better life." "They were just your blood banks," I replied. "And you're just a leech." "My friends? They're brothers in arms." Outside the glowing golden dome, Hanmo and Wu Hen were staring at the barrier, their expressions grim. "Xiao Yao is our savior," Hanmo said, his voice thick with resolve. "Our combined lifespans won't be enough to shatter this curse." "Then we don't do it alone," Wu Hen replied. "Let's reach out to the group. Maybe someone else is willing to help." They broadcasted the message. "Family, we've got an emergency. Xiao Yao is trapped in a cursed space. We need volunteers to contribute lifespan to break the seal. Our personal reserves aren't enough. Is anyone willing to help?" They waited in the deafening silence, watching the screen. In the distance, Monkey and the great transport King Wang were scavenging for supplies when the notification hit their devices. "A fallen god's domain," Monkey muttered, his eyes narrowing as he read the plea. "How the hell did something like that manifest here? Damn it, Xiao Yao is trapped. Monkey, what do we do?" Wang, the great transport king, looked at me, our faces reflecting the same grim resolve. Words were unnecessary. We both pivoted, our vehicles roaring to life as we floored it toward the rescue point. "You hang in there," I thought, pushing my engine to its absolute limit. "We're coming." Meanwhile, Wang the cyclist caught the alert, and his reaction was instantaneous. "Messing with my teammate while I'm not there? Respectfully, no. I can't let that slide." He flipped his cycle into battle flag mode, a surge of adrenaline hitting him. "This wasn't on my bingo card," he thought, speeding toward the coordinates. "You can't have a party without me." Inside the golden cage, I saw the notifications pouring into the group chat, and a genuine weight lifted from my chest. Bro understood the assignment. These guys were more than just teammates, they were brothers. I glanced at Shichi, whose face had gone deathly pale. He was watching his world fall apart in real time, unable to comprehend the sheer gap in human connection. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "Why is there such a massive difference in how people treat us?" I leaned back, wearing a relaxed smirk. "So, brother, any last words? If you aren't going to be needing your metal coins anymore, you might as well leave them to me. Plus, you'd better relinquish control of your tank's owner permissions. It'd be a real shame to let that machine go to waste." Shichi clenched his teeth, his voice trembling with impotent rage. "I will find a way out of here. And next time we meet, you won't be so lucky." It didn't take long for the cavalry to arrive. The cyclist was the first to pull up, instantly recognized by Hanmo and Wu Hen. In the Central World, a dedicated cycling player was rarer than a top-tier luxury car, which made him stand out instantly. Shortly after, Monkey and the Great Transport King arrived, forming a semicircle beneath the shimmering golden barrier. A wave of strange, ethereal energy washed over us, and suddenly, the barrier dissolved. I dropped out of the void and back into reality, right in front of my team. "Thanks for the save, boys," I said, clapping them on the shoulders. To show my appreciation, I used my remaining metal coins to patch up their battered vehicles. I even handed over 2 top-tier cars and a stockpile of modules I'd swiped from the vault. Consider these a reward for the cleanup. After the loot was divvied up, everyone looked like they just hit the jackpot. As for Shichi's tank, we were in a bit of a pickle. We lacked the heavy-duty towing equipment to drag a tank of that size out, and the domain's cursed rules prevented us from outright destroying it. With a shrug, I decided it wasn't worth the headache. Forget it, let's head out. Once we clear the weird forest, we're all leveling up together. We left the site, leaving Shiki behind in his golden prison. He stood there in the silence, his expression unreadable, staring at our retreating backs for hours. He didn't know what to think until, several hours later, he felt a familiar vibration. A few vehicles were tearing across the landscape, heading straight for him. "The gang is coming back for me," he whispered, a flicker of hope returning to his desperate, hollow eyes. Some of them actually had a conscience after all. The next few days were nothing short of glorious. We moved as a unit, crushing monsters like a lawnmower through tall grass. Reaching level 10 felt like a fever dream. With my elite tier tank leading the charge and a fleet of high-quality vehicles backing me up, we were an unstoppable force. We rolled into small towns like a localized hurricane, and frankly, it was peak cinema. The materials in the first zone simply weren't enough to sustain our growth anymore. It was time to push forward. We needed to reach Hope Valley and begin our exploration of the second zone. "What's the plan then?" one of the others asked. "Should we split up? Traveling as a group of 6 is just begging for attention. We're basically painting targets on our backs." "Fair point," I agreed. "Let's disperse. We'll meet up at Hope Valley. Try to keep a low profile until then." After saying my goodbyes, I kept to the back roads, farming monsters to bridge the gap in my experience. It didn't take long before I finally pushed my muscle tank to level 10. As I leveled up, my special class skills underwent a massive awakening, evolving to a whole new tier of lethality. Combat Mastery, level 2, enhanced my martial instincts, allowing me to perceive enemy strikes with terrifying clarity and execute precision counters. Flame Warrior, level 2, my chassis now radiated an aura of superheated flames, dealing continuous burn damage to anything foolish enough to get close. Ammo Fabrication, level 2, I could now actively consume raw materials to craft specialized ammunition on the fly. Red Cliff Inferno, level 2, the fire attribute module I'd acquired was bolstered. My flames could now chain, significantly amplifying the spread and intensity of the fire. With 4 new skills awakened, my combat power had spiked exponentially. I felt like I was on energy-saving mode during the grind, but now, I was fully operational. Satisfied, I turned my attention to the mountain of treasure chests I'd accumulated over the last few days. I tore through the white and blue chests first, mostly netting basic rations and common modules. Nothing to write home about, but fodder is fodder. Next, I moved on to the purple tier modules. Resin Torrent Purple consumes energy to generate massive quantities of high-viscosity resin. If there are plants nearby, I can manipulate them directly. I paused, a grin spreading across my face. Isn't this the exact skill that Giant Tree used against us? I remembered how it had completely immobilized 2 elite-tier tanks. The potential here was massive. This wood element skill would pair perfectly with my fire-based abilities. Burning Forest Strategy, let him cook. I continued opening the remaining chests. Forest Arrival, Purple, generates a localized forest that rapidly absorbs environmental doomsday power and converts it into pure energy. This is it. I remembered how close I'd come to running dry during the battle with the giant tree. As my level climbed, my energy consumption would only skyrocket. This module was a godsend for my sustainability. Finally, I reached for the elite treasure chest. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. Judgment Token, Gold. Function 1. Generates Judgment Light, instantly neutralizing any incoming attack that poses a threat to me. Function 2. Generates a Judgment Space, covering a 1-kilometer radius. While active, every life form inside is granted invulnerability. Holy! I stared at the description, stunned. This was exactly the rule-bending power the giant tree had used. I knew the terror of judgment rules better than anyone. That golden light had effortlessly intercepted the finishing blow I'd launched alongside Shichi, and the spatial trap had made Shichi effectively immortal. If I ever crossed paths with Shichi again, I wouldn't just be trading shots, I'd be able to flip the entire battlefield on its head with a single pulse of golden light. I was still basking in the glow of my new acquisition when a frantic alert pinged on my comms channel. I expected a casual update about resources, but my blood ran cold the moment I clicked the message. Xiao Yao, be careful. We've been tracked by the Beast God Temple. I don't think we can make it out. They've got a Gamma rank player in their unit. Don't come to Hope Valley. My jaw tightened. The Beast God Temple? I thought I'd buried their purgatory branch when I took out their leader. I'm not arguing. I'm explaining why I'm right, but I had been wrong about them being finished. Beast God Temple, I muttered, my voice low. They're a massive, ancient organization, A voice spoke up. It was Dai, standing nearby. Their true leader is a powerhouse currently stationed in the second zone. You didn't wipe them out, you just cut off a tentacle. The rest of the beast is still very much alive. I suspect you've been on their most wanted list for a while now, Dai added, his voice grim. The pieces finally clicked into place. My blood ran cold as I realized the Beast God Temple wasn't just targeting my friends, they were gunning for me. Given the history I had with them, it was inevitable. Just as the thought crossed my mind, a private message flashed on my interface. My heart skipped a beat. Xiao Yao, your friend is in our hands. If you want to see him alive, add me. I'll send you the coordinates. A picture followed the text. I stared at the screen, and the world seemed to tilt. It was Han Mo, battered and broken, his body covered in fresh, agonizing wounds. Damn you, Beast God Temple, I roared, the rage vibrating through my very bones. Bro is fighting demons. But beneath the white-hot anger, I knew the tactical reality. Hatred was their motivation, but my power was their true target. I had tried to keep a low profile, but with a top-tier elite tank, a specialized class, and an arsenal of legendary modules, I was essentially a walking treasure vault. I was the prize. Han Mo was just the bait. I took a long, steadying breath, forcing the fury down into the cold, calculated depths of my mind. I hit the button to accept the friend request. Never thought we'd meet like this. You become quite the legend in the first zone, the message read. Cut the garbage, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. Tell me what you want. You're remarkably loyal, aren't you? It's no wonder your friend refused to talk even after we worked him over like this. Simple enough. Hand over a special class promotion permit and one elite tier vehicle, and we'll let you walk. Why are you so certain I have a promotion permit? I asked, testing the waters. Only a few of you made it out of the purgatory zone alive. The math ain't mathing if you didn't walk out with the goods. We're just reclaiming what belongs to us. Once the trade is finished, we have no reason to break our word. Where are you? I'll bring the gear. A bold one, aren't you? Fine, I'm sending the location now. But a word of advice, come alone. If I see a second vehicle, your friend pays the price. I stared at the map marker appearing on my dashboard. Was I really going to walk into this? The Beast God Temple was no joke. Their leadership was composed of Gamma-level powerhouses. But would they really mobilize their entire faction for a single player? They wouldn't, I reasoned. Mass mobilization would draw too much attention, and that's the last thing they want. If they were only sending a few lackeys to do their dirty work, then I'd show them exactly what my muscle tank was capable of. Task failed successfully, I thought, gripping the wheel. Meanwhile, my group chat was lighting up. Xiao Yao, what's going on? Is it true? Did the Beast God Temple grab Han Mo? I saw the same thing. Those degenerates are pure evil. Do you need us to pull up? Don't move just yet, I replied, my thumbs flying. Just keep your heads down and gather intel. I need to know exactly how many of them are out there. Can you handle that for me? Consider it done. The replies flooded in. As I steered my tank toward the kill zone, the roar of my engine felt like a promise. I'd be damned if I left a comrade behind. No matter who they sent, I was coming to collect. Han Mo had sacrificed 20 years of his life to help break that seal for me. I wasn't just going to let that slide. That was a debt I had to settle. Besides, the Beast God Temple had been gunning for me from the jump. Even if Han Mo hadn't been captured, they would have eventually come knocking at my door. Either way, it was time to close the account. Don't worry about me, I told the group. If things get hairy, I'll prioritize making it out alive. But make no mistake, I'm going to wipe out everyone associated with the Beast God Temple. They were in for a rude awakening. Someone capable of hoarding all the resources in the first zone, repelling a god, and putting the fear of death into elite-tier tank owners wasn't someone you just stepped on. Found them. A message popped up in the chat. The guy they call Overlord left yesterday with a dozen others. He's an elite-tier vehicle owner, stacked with modules. He's not someone to underestimate. Need me to come with you? Stay put. I'm already on the road. I typed back. Don't say that, man. Another replied. We're brothers. I can't just sit here while Han Mo suffers. Ace Pilot requesting to join the fight. Are we not brothers? How are you doing this without me? My cycle might not be much, but I'm not backing down. Seeing the messages fill the screen, a sense of warmth settled in my chest, but I was firm. My patience is under maintenance, and I didn't want to see anyone else get caught in the crossfire. Trust me, even if you guys came, you'd just be getting in the way. This is a solo job. I've got enough firepower now to handle it, and I want to test my new modules. Seeing my resolve, they finally backed off, though they kept the line open. If you need backup, hit the group chat. We'll be there. I finished fusing the new modules, and my tank, now a sleek, dark chariot emitted a sudden, ominous glow. I slammed on the accelerator and vanished into the distance. Meanwhile, in a desolate, abandoned town, dozens of vehicles sat idling. A yellow-haired youth paced in front of a bound Han Mo, a mocking smile etched on his face. You're Han Mo, right? You really think that kid, Xiao Yao, is going to show up? Honestly, I hope he stays away. You'll regret everything you've done today, Han Mo spat. The youth laughed dismissively. He's just another player from the first zone. Any one of us could handle him, and we've got the Overlord himself waiting. The Overlord stood off to the side, a cold, imposing figure with shock white hair draped in a trench coat. He checked his watch and delivered the final ultimatum. I've sent him the coordinates. If Xiao Yao isn't here in 2.5 hours, your life ends. Tell us what you know, and we might be merciful. They tried every trick in the book to break Han Mo, but he hadn't cracked once. You're a tough nut, I'll give you that. The Overlord sighed, genuinely perplexed. But Xiao Yao isn't like you. He's probably halfway to Hope Valley by now, leaving you to rot. Is it really worth dying for someone you barely know? Han Mo didn't say a word. He simply closed his eyes, his silence deafening. Fine. Let's see if your stubbornness has any value, the Overlord muttered. He couldn't grasp what fueled the man, what strange loyalty kept him silent. Suddenly, a rhythmic, mechanical roar shattered the quiet. It was a sound that made every head in the clearing snap toward the horizon. A black war machine was cutting through the distance like a blade, heading straight for them. Boss, should we engage? One of the lackeys asked, his eyes gleaming with the same hunger as the Overlord's. Not yet, the Overlord murmured. Let the prey walk right into our hands. It was me. I kept my foot on the gas, the dark chariot's energy shield already humming in a defensive bubble. Die, and the mutant hound sat stoically behind me. As I pulled up to within 100 meters of their position, I didn't slow down. This is fine. I brought the bike to a smooth, controlled halt, the engine ticking as it cooled. You're Xiao Yao, aren't you? The Overlord sneered, his gaze heavy with expectation. Since you had the guts to show up, why the hesitation? Come on over. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I scanned the clearing, my eyes lingering on Han Mo. He was slumped against the ground, his head shaking violently, his eyes pleading with me to run. He knew what they had in store, but turning back wasn't in my programming. Let's talk business, I called out, my voice steady. You release him, and I'll walk over. They chuckled, a chorus of dark, predatory amusement. They were certain that the moment I stepped into their perimeter, I was a dead man walking. To them, my bike was just a shiny piece of loot waiting to be claimed. And if I walk over, I'm just walking into a trap, I retorted. Don't worry, the Overlord promised, flashing a hollow grin. We just want the promotion permit and that elite tier cycle. Play nice, and we won't make this messy. I hope you're men of your word, I said, eyeing them coldly. Because if I'm forced to play dirty, I'm going to make sure none of you walk away from this. The Overlord let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Common sense is like deodorant. People who need it most never use it. He clearly thought he held all the cards. Only the yellow-haired kid standing near him looked uneasy, his brow furrowed. Boss, this feels off. A guy who took down the Purgatory ruins shouldn't be this easy to corner. I'm starting to think he's a legendary class user. The Overlord didn't even blink. You're overthinking it. Legendary classes are myths. Even elite tier owners rarely see one. He's just a kid on a bike. I ignored their banter and closed the distance. When I reached Han Mo, I dropped off the bike and knelt by his side. Hang in there, brother, I whispered. Sorry I'm late. Han Mo looked at me, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. I'm fine, Xiao Yao, but you shouldn't have come. It's a trap. It's fine, I said, standing up and brushing the dust off my clothes. Everything is going exactly to plan. The Overlord frowned, confused. Everything is going to plan? I was a fish in a barrel. What kind of plan involves being surrounded? But the yellow-haired kid's eyes widened in realization. Wait, something's wrong. Move. Kill him now. The air suddenly turned jagged with the sound of gunshots as they opened fire, but I didn't flinch. In the blink of an eye, my bike vanished into thin air. In its place, my muscle tank materialized with a thunderous boom, its massive frame dwarfing everything in the clearing. Every bullet pinged harmlessly off my absolute defense shield, scattering into the dirt like harmless hail. I looked down at them from behind the reinforced glass, my expression icy. Time to pay up. It's a legendary elite tier tank, one of the lackeys shrieked, his composure shattering instantly. Even the Overlord looked stunned, though his shock quickly curdled into pure, unadulterated greed. Forget the plan. Take him down. Whoever kills him gets the biggest share. In this world, an elite tier tank was worth more than a dozen promotion permits. They swarmed forward, unleashing a barrage of elemental attacks, fire, ice, kinetic, all crashing against my hull. I smirked. Is that all? You guys really are underwhelming. I haven't even started yet. I activated Red Cliff Inferno. My tank surged with a violent crimson light, and instantly, a sea of white-hot flames erupted, engulfing the entire perimeter. Having fused several fire attribute modules since hitting level 10, the Red Cliff Inferno was no longer just a skill, it was a natural disaster. The heat was far more intense than anything I'd unleashed against the giant tree, and as the flames roared to life, I watched the look of pure terror dawn on their faces. They wanted a fight. I was going to give them an inferno. The temperature in the clearing skyrocketed, hitting a blistering 650 degrees. The sheer force of the heat wave was so intense that the surrounding buildings began to crack and splinter under the pressure. But the Overlord wasn't some low-tier punk. He was a Gamma 3 powerhouse with defense to match. He stood his ground, weathering the furnace-like heat while activating his own elite tier module. Suddenly, a gale force wind whipped through the area, tearing through the air and extinguishing my flames in an instant. It's a top-tier wind module, he taunted, his voice cutting through the whistling breeze. Your thermal output is useless against me. Before I could react, he commanded the winds to whip up the surrounding desert sand, solidifying it into a barrage of deadly projectiles that hammered against me like a curse. My defensive barrier shattered under the onslaught, and I felt the muscle tank groan as its chassis took a hit. Your resistance is meaningless, the Overlord sneered. Even if you have an elite tier tank, your energy reserves can't possibly match mine. I leaned back, a cold smirk playing on my lips. You sure about that? What if I have more? I slammed my hand onto the control panel, and the earth beneath us groaned. From deep within the soil, thick, viscous resin surged upward, locking onto the vehicles in the clearing like iron chains. At the same time, I triggered my new modules. Lush vegetation spontaneously erupted around my tank, acting as a natural conduit, feeding an endless stream of energy directly into my core. Energy regeneration module? I could see the confusion ripple across the Overlord's face as he realized he'd been played. But his shock turned to pure, unadulterated terror when a heavy metal turret manifested on the roof of my tank, its muzzle glowing with a terrifying, concentrated charge. He tried to reverse, to flee, but he was too late. He tugged at his controls, screaming in frustration, but the resin had already fused his chassis to the ground. No matter how much energy he poured into his engines, he was paralyzed. Give it up. You aren't going anywhere. Wait. The Overlord's arrogance evaporated, leaving only a pathetic, sniveling shell of a man. I'm a protector of the Beast God Temple. You can't touch me if you do. The temple will hunt you down to the ends of the earth. I didn't blink. I didn't even dignify him with a reply. I just pulled the trigger. The blast was deafening. When the smoke cleared, the Overlord had successfully claimed his retirement. With the immediate threat neutralized, I signaled Die to patch up Hanmo. Seeing him breathe again, the crushing weight in my chest finally lifted. My communicator buzzed incessantly. The elite group chat was going nuclear. Xiao Yao, get out of there. Everyone's saying a dozen Beast God Temple members just went dark. Hope Valley is in an uproar. Are you okay? I tapped a quick reply. Everything's handled. Hanmo is safe. No casualties. Thank God. Just stay safe on your way to Hope Valley. Word is going around that your elite tier tank has been exposed. Watch your back. I closed the chat, indifferent. Even if the temple knew, it didn't change much. That tank was no longer my only ace in the hole. My arsenal of legendary modules was the true backbone of my power now. If they dared to come for me again, I'd show them exactly what I meant by no mercy. After scavenging the remaining materials from the wreckage, I hitched the Overlord's and Hanmo's purple tier vehicles to the back of my tank with tow cables and set my sights on the horizon. As I crested the final hill, the desolation of the central world melted away. Before me lay Hope Valley, a lush, emerald sanctuary pulsing with life, a vibrant contrast to the death and rot we'd left behind. It was teeming with activity, a chaotic, thriving heartbeat of civilization. I shifted gears and rolled in. At the entrance of the valley, a handful of vehicles were parked near the checkpoints, manned by guards from the Hope Valley city-state. Their job was simple: keep the peace and register the endless stream of desperate survivors trickling in from the Wasteland. This new batch is pathetic. One of the guards sighed, leaning against a rusted fender. Only 1,000 survived. Back in my day, we had 3,000 make it through. Yeah, but I heard there's a monster in this group, his partner muttered, cleaning his rifle. One guy wiped out 2 major factions in the first zone and cleared the season assessment. Became a special class too. You mean that Xiao Yao kid? He's definitely a cut above, but a special class needs to hit level 20 before it really starts to break the game. Who knows if he'll even make it that far? Suddenly, the guard's communicator crackled to life. He tapped it, his eyes widening. Breaking news, Overlord just got taken out. Apparently, he bit the dust in the first zone against that same guy, Xiao Yao. The silence that followed was heavy. No way, the first guard whispered. Overlord is a Gamma 3 powerhouse. How does a newbie from the first zone put him in the dirt? Before they could debate the logistics of such a feat, a plume of dust rising on the horizon caught their attention. A motorcycle was tearing toward the gates at breakneck speed, dragging 3 purple-tier vehicles behind it like discarded toys. What in the world? Am I seeing things? The guard stammered. Are those 3 purple-tier cars? One of the older guards nearby squinted, his expression hardening as he recognized the chassis of the lead vehicle. That's Overlord's ride. This kid isn't just arriving, he's making a statement. I ignored the stares of the onlookers as the familiar chime of the system echoed in my mind. Welcome to the Hope Valley Zone. Season 1, tasks successfully completed. Players within Hope Valley are safe from central world anomalies and may exit their vehicles at will. Warning, beyond Hope Valley, central radiation levels increase significantly, though vehicle energy absorption efficiency will also improve. Gazing at the cityscape nestled within the valley, I was genuinely impressed. Rumors had painted Hope Valley as one of the few true safe havens in this chaotic central world, and seeing the bustling life within the walls, I realized the rumors didn't do it justice. As I rolled through the streets, the local players stopped to watch, their eyes tracking the haul I was towing. I didn't care. I kept my focus on the main gate until a soldier in federal uniform stepped into my path. Welcome to the Hope Valley Federal Patrol. First off, congratulations on making it this far, he said, offering a professional nod. I need you to follow me for registration. I'd expected the drill. No problem, I said, hopping off the bike. But first, I need medical attention for my brother here. I pointed to the injured Hanmo. The soldier gave a sharp command, and 2 medics in white coats materialized with a stretcher, whisking Hanmo toward the hospital before I could even blink. Seeing him in safe hands finally allowed me to exhale. All right, let's get you processed, the soldier said, pulling out a clipboard. name, vehicle specs, and player ID. Xiao Yao. Purple tier motorcycle, serial number 114514. The moment those words left my lips, the surrounding crowd erupted into a chaotic murmur. I knew it was him. 3 purple tier vehicles? I wouldn't even dream of that. Isn't that Overlord's car? He's basically spitting in the face of the beast god temple. I heard the whispers, and it wasn't long before the crowd parted to reveal a group of men wearing the distinct insignia of the beast god temple. One of them stepped forward, his eyes locked on the vehicles I dragged in. Xiao Yao, he barked, his voice carrying the weight of a high-level authority. That vehicle belongs to our organization. Return it immediately. Someone in the crowd gasped. It's the Lion King, the leader of the beast god temple, a Gamma 5 powerhouse. I turned slowly, meeting the Lion King's glare without so much as a flinch. Don't you think you should ask how I got my hands on it before demanding it back? The Lion King's expression darkened, his aura flaring with suppressed rage. That is irrelevant. No one takes what belongs to us. If you don't return it, you'll face consequences you can't possibly fathom. I shook my head, my patience for his posturing already at 0. Then I guess we'll see how that plays out. The audacity. The crowd went silent, shocked that a player from the first zone would dare to talk back to the Lion King. They were waiting to see how I'd handled Overlord, but I was already looking forward to the next round. The crowd's murmuring reached a fever pitch, a chaotic buzz of speculation surrounding my standoff with the Lion King. Just as he opened his mouth to escalate things further, a voice like rolling thunder cut through the tension. Lion King. The name hung heavy in the air, instantly silencing the room. The Lion King, previously brimming with unearned arrogance, visibly stiffened. His bluster evaporated in a heartbeat. Chief Jiang, please, let me explain, he stammered, his posture shrinking. That's enough, the man replied, his tone final. I'll let it slide this time, do not let it happen again. With a visible sigh of relief, the Lion King offered a sheepish look and scurried back into the crowd, tail between his legs. I'm not arguing, I'm explaining why I'm right. Watching him retreat, I couldn't help but find the irony amusing. Chief Jiang turned his attention to me, his gaze sharp but surprisingly appreciative. My reputation as the strongest rookie in history apparently preceded me. Good work, kid. Come with me. I followed him to his tent, a surprisingly well-appointed space, equipped with every modern convenience. It was clean, organized, and felt a world away from the grid of the Wasteland. I'm Chief Jiang Sheng, the federal official responsible for the security of Hope Valley, he said, taking a seat. I'm a Gamma 10. I blinked, genuinely caught off guard. Gamma 10 was effectively the ceiling for the second zone. I'm Xiao Yao, I said, keeping my tone level. To what do I owe the pleasure, Chief? I've heard a great deal about you. In fact, I've been waiting for you. My brow furrowed. Waiting for me. You possess a legendary class, don't you? The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out. My heart gave a sharp, involuntary skip. That was supposed to be a secret, something I hadn't even fully disclosed to my closest allies. It was a secret I'd planned to take to the grave. How did this federal official from the second zone know? Don't worry, he continued, reading my suspicion. You don't know the informant, but they have no ill will toward you. Now, tell me, what do you think of the Federation? Any interest in joining our ranks? I stayed silent for a long moment, my mind racing. My brain has too many tabs open. Joining a faction was the standard move for any player entering the second zone. It wasn't just about having backup, it was about information. In a map this massive, having an organization to scout locations and share resources was invaluable. Still, the fact that my deepest secret had leaked, and that Jiang knew it made me wary. I'll need a few days to think about it, I finally said. Jiang Sheng's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. He clearly expected as much. Fair enough. Take your time to rest. I'll check in with you later. And as for the Beast God Temple, don't lose sleep over them. No one in Hope Valley challenges federal authority. As long as you stay within these walls, you're untouchable. I stepped out of the tent and climbed back onto my bike, heading deeper into the city. Along the way, I was bombarded by representatives from various organizations, all eager to offer me a seat at their table. I turned them all down without a second glance. Even the most powerful groups in the city couldn't sway me. My path was mine to walk, and I wasn't ready to let anyone else dictate the pace. Those minor factions didn't stand a chance. They were barely a blip on my radar. While settling in, I took a moment to ask Dai about Lin, but he just shook his head. He hadn't heard a word from her in days. You don't think she played me, do you? I asked. Dai laughed it off. No way. Lin isn't that kind of person. She's probably just swamped. She's the leader of the Skyward group and rocks an elite-tier motorcycle she's not exactly hurting for things to do. My ears perked up at that. An elite-tier motorcycle? Interesting. That sounded like a connection worth cultivating. We made our way into the city proper, and the town system triggered automatically, manifesting a personal storage space where I could stash my vehicle anytime, anywhere. After the endless, grueling survival grind of the Wasteland, the bustling streets of Hope Valley felt like something out of a dream. The architecture was imposing and grand, a stark contrast to the hollowed-out ruins I'd spent my life navigating. I booked a hotel room partly to get some actual sleep, mostly to have a secure base of operations, and immediately pinged Wang the Great Luck to offload those purple-tier vehicles. Let him handle the haggling, he's got the knack for it. I also made sure to swing by the hospital to check on Han Mo. The doctors said his recovery was ahead of schedule, and he'd be back on his feet in a few days. Feeling a bit more settled, I grabbed a meal with Brother Monkey, a guy who knew the ins and outs of the city-state better than anyone. "So, Xiao Yao," he asked, dipping into his food, "you join a faction yet?" "Not yet. Still weighing my options," I admitted. "What's your take?" "Join one, as soon as you can," he urged. "The resources within the city-state are on another level, compared to the ragtag groups back in the first zone. You've got two ways to sign up. You can go in as a full-fledged member, or as a strategic partner. Full members get the bulk of the resources, but they're chained to the organization's rules. The partnership route is the opposite, fewer perks, but way more freedom." Most of the guys in our chat group had opted for the partnership model, and the more he explained it, the more I leaned that way myself. Using the Federation as a platform, that sounded like the best of both worlds. I'd have access to their network without having to kowtow to a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense. "I still don't get the big picture though," I confessed. "What's the point of the Federation? Keeping the peace? Protecting the planet?" Monkey nodded, his expression turning serious. "The Federation definitely has its share of mud and corruption, but the mission is real. Everyone's working toward the same goal, dismantling the central world. If we don't, Earth is eventually going to be completely consumed by it." I felt a chill run down my spine. I thought back to every location I'd survived: the military plants, the steel mills, the abandoned towns. Everything had felt eerily familiar, like a ghost of a world that once was. "You guessed it," Monkey confirmed, reading my face. "Most of those areas are projections of real places from Earth, manifested by the central world. The Federation exists to stop that hemorrhage. They're the front line in saving the world." I took a long drink, the pieces finally clicking into place. If their mission was to stop the central world from eating my home, then their goal and mine were perfectly aligned. With that realization, the last of my hesitation evaporated. I was in. But just as I was about to ask for the next step, my communicator began to hum. Seeing a few familiar faces approach me was a welcome sight. My teammates had all cleared the first zone's gauntlet successfully, and we spent the rest of the night celebrating, trading war stories, and basking in the relief of making it this far. We didn't part ways until the small hours of the morning. Hope Valley, however, was anything but calm. By the time I woke up, the rumors about me had gone viral. Lone Wolf wipes out two major factions. Newbie takes down Overlord, and an upset the town was buzzing. Everyone was losing their minds over the monster from the first zone. But the next morning, the chat group exploded with something even more insane. "Everyone, get to the city gate. Is that guy actually driving a tank?" I rushed over, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. A pristine, elite-tier tank was rolling toward the gate. Bro understood the assignment. I recognized the silhouette instantly. Could it be number 17? He was the only guy from the first zone crazy enough or capable enough to pull off an elite-tier tank. I was stunned that he'd managed to shake off the Beast God Temple's curse, but the realization left me sweating. 17 knew every one of my cards. If he decided to spill my secrets to the temple, I'd be in serious trouble. I wanted to move to intercept him, but it was already too late. I could only watch and hope, but to my relief, he didn't say a word about me. Shortly after, Chief Zhang found me again. He'd already scrubbed my records and locked down the info on my tank, so I could breathe easy. I officially signed on with the city-state, opting for the partnership model, and immediately offloaded Overlord's ride along with a mountain of junk loot. The trade netted me 5 million metal coins. Another day, another dollar. I didn't hesitate. I poured the coins into the federal store, buying a massive stash of purification fluid. At 5,000 coins a pop, it wasn't cheap, but it was the only way to evolve my gear. I got to work, pushing my purple tier modules to their absolute limit. The results were insane. My scorching heatwave now covered a 500-meter radius with a staggering 1,200-degree output. My metal heavy cannon could now charge to 12,000 energy units with 50% faster lock-on. My Golden Bell shield now deployed an 8,000 energy barrier that granted 3 seconds of total invulnerability once shattered. Even my Resin Flood and Worldly Descent got massive buffs, doubling my energy absorption speed. This isn't even fair anymore. If I ran into Overlord now, I wouldn't need to put on a show. I'd dismantle him before he could blink. I wasn't done yet. I cleared out the remaining coin stash on module boxes, 20,000 coins per blue tier box, and tore them open, filling my inventory with a fresh haul of offensive and utility gear. Beast God Temple, is it? I looked over my upgraded rig and smirked. Let me cook. I just needed a little more time to stack my stats, and then I'd show them exactly what true power looked like. The Beast God Temple had been getting increasingly bold lately. Their members were practically camping in our group chat, demanding that I surrender Overlord's vehicle and issue a public apology. They kept posturing, threatening that the moment I stepped outside Hope Valley, they would finish me. They honestly believed I was scared. Common sense is like deodorant: people who need it most never use it. Honestly, I wasn't worried. I was just wondering how many levels I'd skyrocket to if I managed to scavenge the resources of their entire organization. I was busy sketching out a few strategies when a friend request flickered across my vision. The sender? Number 17. I didn't even hesitate to accept. Didn't think I'd still be in the game, did you? The message read. Meet me at the Peace Restaurant. I've got a gift for you. Stop with the games, I replied, typing quickly. If you have something to say, just say it. Suit yourself. I'm just letting you know that I will surpass you sooner or later. And don't worry about your secrets, I'm not a snitch. Once I hit Gamma 10, I'm coming for a real rematch. I couldn't help but smirk at the screen. Fine. Challenge accepted. Just make sure you're still breathing to see me when you finally get strong enough. Try not to let the beast god temple flatten you before then. Number 17 was a beast, no doubt, but that was the thing about the people I'd already beaten. The gap between us only ever widened. I spent the next few days turning the muscle tank into a proper mobile fortress. I renovated the interior, carving out dedicated zones for storage, a functional kitchen, and a secure armory. I stocked up on high-end supplies, 2 fresh vegetables, crates of fruit, and enough meat to last for months. I didn't skimp on the creature comforts, either, hoarding everything from toothpaste to fresh bed sheets and new gear. Sleep is my favorite hobby, and I intended to do it in comfort. While I was prepping, word started trickling down about an SSS rank ruin that had popped up in the second zone. Rumor had it that Lin, the leader of the Skyward group, was trapped inside. With Chief Zhang's official blessing, I officially kicked off my exploration of the second zone. As I rolled out of Hope Valley, I could feel eyes on me. A few scouts from the Beast God Temple were lurking in the shadows, trailing my movements. I didn't bother acknowledging them. They were all hands on deck trying to tackle that SSS rank ruin. They didn't have the manpower to waste on a real hunt for me. Before long, a sprawling cluster of buildings loomed on the horizon. It was a massive architectural complex, far more intact and imposing than anything I'd seen in the first zone. Of course, size came with a price. The place was crawling with zombies. These were grade 12, Yaos's undead, that possessed a rudimentary level of intelligence but were still slaves to their bloodthirsty instincts. Their physical stats were basically superhuman. As the difficulty of these zones scaled, so did the ferocity and density of the hordes. I didn't waste any time. I pulled up my control panel, and the metal-heavy cannon manifested, its muzzle glowing with a terrifying, concentrated hum. I fed the energy reserves into the barrel, locking onto the swarm, and pulled the trigger. The energy shell shrieked through the air, detonating on impact, and turning a sea of undead into a storm of pulverized bone and charred debris. The explosion tore through the concrete, leaving a massive smoking crater in its wake. The power output was impressive, but the real game changer was the reduced charge time. I could fire consecutive volleys without breaking a sweat. It was peak cinema, watching those undead silhouettes vaporize. The remaining zombies sensed the disturbance and let out a collective, guttural shriek, charging toward my muscle tank. I didn't even bother with the big guns this time. I let the vehicle do the work. My spike modules, which I'd been keeping in reserve, now covered the entire chassis in a perfect 360-degree lethal perimeter. Combined with the upgraded armor, the tank became a literal meat grinder. I plowed through them, treating the horde like nothing more than speed bumps. I'm not lazy. I'm on energy-saving mode. With the path cleared, I grabbed my big pineapple and stepped into the lobby to finish the job. This was where my dual-class advantage really shined. As I stepped through the threshold, flames erupted across my skin. I didn't feel a thing, total immunity, but the approaching zombies recoiled in terror, their decaying flesh starting to sizzle before they even touched me. I grinned and activated fire enchantment. I unleashed a torrent of lead from the big pineapple. Each bullet that punched through a target ignited on contact. Thanks to the fire of Red Cliff's module, the flames leaped from corpse to corpse, turning the interior into a raging inferno. Task failed successfully for the zombies. They didn't even have a chance to swarm me. In seconds, the floor was littered with glowing loot chests. I vaulted over a patch of dying embers, snapped my fingers to snuff out the flames, and went to work collecting my haul. I was back in the driver's seat, stashing the materials, when the mutant mastiff suddenly bolted out of the tank. It trotted over to the pile of scorched remains, and the moment it touched them, the corpses vanished. The beast's aura spiked as it gained a level right in front of me. My jaw dropped. Could it level up just by absorbing energy from fallen entities? That was absolutely broken. I'd been racking my brain trying to figure out how to buff the dog, and here it was, feeding itself to power up. We left the building complex behind and hit the road again, tracking toward the SSS rank ruin. With the downtime on the road, I decided to see what was inside those loot chests. The loot was top tier, corrosive coating, blue, a slick acidic layer for the chassis that gave every attack a 30% chance to trigger a rot effect, dealing continuous shadow damage. Rotating gear saw blue, a brutal serrated blade for the front bumper that added a bleed effect and 30% armor penetration to every collision. Drone blue, an automated scout that pinged every enemy within a 50-meter radius every 3 seconds, tagging them for an extra 20% damage. The modules in the second zone were exponentially more diverse than anything I'd seen in the first. There was a lot of redundancy, so I cherry-picked the rare ones and marked the rest for sale. I poured the excess energy into the muscle tank, and a notification flashed in my vision. Warning, upon reaching level 20, the vehicle will begin a preliminary fusion process with the player. I stared at the screen, heart racing. Fusion. That was a whole new ballgame. Once the vehicle hits level 20, it'll undergo a total fusion with my own stats and class bonuses. The implications were staggering. We're talking a 1.5x multiplier to speed, defense, raw power, and energy efficiency. I'm built different. I distributed the 50 attribute points I'd gained from the level up, feeling that familiar surge of raw power ripple through my system. Everything was prepped. I swapped out my ride for the Dark Chariot and set my heading for the SSS rank ruin, Steel Ridge. It's crazy to think back to the beginning. When everyone else was struggling to survive in absolute scrap heaps, I'd rolled a golden quality muscle tank right out of the gate. I'd been dominating the zombie hordes ever since, largely thanks to my lucky Emperor refresh system. With the ability to reroll loot boxes 10 times, and a guaranteed purple tier or higher reward on the 10th pull, I was farming power at a pace that felt almost illegal. My muscle tank had changed drastically since hitting the gamma tier. The spikes were now razor sharp, lethal enough to shear through reinforced steel, and the standard wheels had been replaced with heavy-duty tank treads. It could navigate terrain that would snap a lesser vehicle's axle like a toothpick. As I tore down the road, I pinged Wang the Great Luck to join me. I needed backup for a place like Steel Ridge, and if anyone knew how to sniff out loot, it was him. We arrived at the entrance, and the system chime echoed in our ears. Detected 3-person squad. Squad battlefield mode enabled. Before I could even shift into gear, the world blurred. We were teleported into a dense, sprawling forest of petrified wood, the trees packed so tightly together they looked like a cage. Welcome to the Steel Ridge Ruin. This is a progressive trial. Each stage cleared grants escalating rewards. We stepped out of our vehicles, keeping our eyes peeled. I'd done my homework. The early stages are standard combat encounters, I told Wang. Usually fewer than 10 mutants per wave. Clear the board, and we advance. Wang looked around, unimpressed. Doesn't sound too bad, actually. That's just the first stage, I warned. It gets exponentially worse. The environment is the real killer. Look at those thorns. I pointed to the jagged, metallic vines snaking through the trees. They're harder than industrial steel, and barely reactive to standard fire. If you get tangled in those, you're done. I pulled up the rule set on my display. The rewards range from blue to purple boxes, but the real prize was the leaderboard. Every 15 days, the top climbers received massive bonuses, and the loot drop rates here were rumored to be significantly higher than anywhere else in the second zone. I came, I saw, I forgot. Wait, no, I definitely didn't forget that I needed to be number 1 on that list. I scanned the rankings. It was a who's who of the top tier players, names I recognized from the forums. We hit the safe zone to regroup, where I ran into Lynn as promised. She handed over the agreed-upon stash of loot boxes, and with our business concluded, we stepped into the trial proper. Deep within the thicket, the low, guttural roar of a beast vibrated through the ground. It was time to hunt. In the blink of an eye, several beast-like creatures lunged from the dense thicket. What caught me off guard wasn't just their speed, but their appearance. They were encased in jagged, metallic armor. Metal beasts. Grade, Gamma, 1. They were grotesque hybrids of flesh and steel, possessing enough brute strength and defense to crush an average survivor without breaking a sweat. I've got this, I muttered, locking eyes with the encroaching monsters. I decided to leverage the terrain. I activated Resin Flood, and the metallic thorns surrounding us shifted, coiling and sharpening into lethal, needle-like lances that launched toward the beasts. Their natural defenses were nothing compared to the razor-sharp precision of the resin-empowered thorns. They didn't even have time to roar before they were skewered into oblivion. Wang let out a low whistle. Good grief, Xiao Yao. I haven't seen you in a few days and you're already throwing around magic like that? Since when could you do that? I just gave him a thin smile. Don't be surprised. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We steamrolled through the rest of the first wave without breaking a sweat. The system pinged, rewarding us with a blue loot box as the path forward cleared. I wasted no time, pushing the muscle tank deeper into the ruins. Meanwhile, back in the safe zone, the members of the Skyward group were huddled around the leaderboard, monitoring my progress with growing disbelief. They say this Xiao Yao guy is a monster, but let's see how far he actually gets. One of them scoffed. They scrolled through the ranks, expecting to see me stuck on the early stages, until someone let out a strangled gasp. Holy, look at this. He's already cleared the 10th stage. The room went silent. Not only was I at stage 10, but my clear time was a record-shattering 30 minutes. The player in second place had spent an entire day on that same level. Even Lynn, the leader of the Skyward group, felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She remembered her own run. It had taken her 2 grueling hours to clear that level. A half-hour clear? It was bordering on impossible. Number 17 was watching the board too, his expression unreadable as he tracked my ascent. Bro is fighting demons. He knew how fast I was, but this was sheer madness. The news spread like wildfire. The chat was flooded with 666 and is this guy using a cheat code. While the other top-tier players were sweating through 2-hour grinds per stage, I was tearing through the ruins like a streak of lightning. Inside the 12th stage, my muscle tank was a blur of destruction. I wasn't holding anything back. Resin Flood, Metal Heavy Cannon, and Windblade were firing in a seamless, suffocating barrage. With one final, thunderous shot, I vaporized the last herd blocking the path. System, congratulations player Xiao Yao, you have cleared stage 12. Reward, blue loot box. Proceed to the next stage. As I prepared for the next wave, the scene shifted to a different sector of the ruins. A man with vibrant red hair stepped out from a portal, his aura radiating intense heat. This was the Vulcan, one of the 3 legendary powerhouses, accompanied by his elite anti-riot vehicle. He'd torn through 60 stages in just 6 days, a legendary feat by anyone's metric. But as he stood there, another portal shimmered open. A young man with a third eye etched onto his forehead emerged. It was the god of luck, the second of the 3 legends. The pressure in the arena shifted instantly. The competition was reaching a boiling point. The god of luck had carved out a reputation for himself, having already reached the 59th stage. Back in the first zone, he'd been the talk of the town, pulling a top-tier armored vehicle from a starter chest and pairing it with a high-end weapon, the 3-point double-edged blade. It was legendary stuff. He and the Vulcan stepped into the safe zone, expecting to be the center of attention. But the room was dead quiet, save for a frantic murmur. Every single person was glued to the leaderboard, their expressions a mix of awe and pure disbelief. "No way," the god of luck muttered, his brow furrowed as he stared at the board. "Someone beat my record in under 2 hours. I've been in here for 2 days. Who is this guy?" The Vulcan growled, clearly annoyed. They started grilling the bystanders, only to find out that some unknown player had cleared 16 stages in less than an hour. The two legends laughed it off. At first it sounded like a glitch, but then they actually looked at the ranking screen. Team Xiaoyao, stage 16, time, 40 minutes and 36 seconds. They went silent. The math wasn't mathing. Meanwhile, in the ruins, we had already breached the 17th stage. The metal beasts were waiting for us, but these weren't the scrawny ones from earlier. These were grade 12 specimens, massive, lumbering tanks of flesh and steel that resembled prehistoric dinosaurs. Their sheer presence was suffocating. One of them lunged, firing a barrage of energy shields our way. I didn't even flinch. I activated Windblade, and in a blur of motion, the projectiles were sliced into harmless static. I didn't give them a second to recover. 2 perfectly placed shots from my metal-heavy cannon sent them straight to the afterlife. Understandable, have a nice day. "This ruin is a joke," I muttered, shaking my head. "Is this really supposed to be challenging?" While the energy reserves were recharging, I decided to burn through a few loot boxes. Metallic armament coating, purple, a hyper-hardened chassis layer that allowed the vehicle to shift and deform on command, drastically increasing agility. Peak cinema. It was basically a transformer now. I could get used to this. Aero-damping shocks, blue. These added a high-resistance dampening material to the frame, absorbing impact forces. Perfect. The speed bumps in the ruins were starting to get annoying, and this meant I could keep on ramming through things without feeling a jolt. Mechanical grappling claw, purple. This was the real winner. A 500-meter range hook with a 500-kilogram weight limit. Now, I could snag loot or snatch mutants right off the road without ever leaving the safety of the driver's seat. As the modules fused with the frame, the muscle tank grew, its silhouette becoming more intimidating, more mechanical. "Xiaoyao, you've got to be kidding me," Wang said, staring at the tank. "You keep pulling out better gear every time I blink. That thing is a monster." "It's not a monster," I replied, checking the engine output. "It's a masterpiece." But he wasn't wrong. The tank did look like a beast, but this was just the beginning. My goal wasn't just to clear this ruin, it was to dominate the entire map. I wasn't wasting a single second. The rewards here were too good to leave on the table, and I intended to strip this place for every last bolt and upgrade. We tore forward, and before I knew it, we were staring down the barrel of stage 31. The scenery was different, now the swarm had grown. There were at least 200 metal beasts blocking our path, and a terrifying number of them were already grade 12s. Things were finally starting to get interesting. There were over 300 of them, yet I didn't feel a flicker of panic. Slaughtering these things had become second nature, just another day at the office. But as I was weighing my options, a colossal beast tore through the trees, closing the distance in a blur of motion. It was on. The muscle tank was officially going head-to-head with a titan. This wasn't just another fodder-tier mutant, it was a grade 3 gamma beast. Even Wang caught his breath, glancing at me with a hint of concern. Should we evade? That thing is way out of our league. I just let out a cold, sharp laugh. If I hadn't been kitted out with the new reinforcements and shock-absorbing modules, maybe I'd have felt a shred of hesitation. But against this wannabe Dragon King, I didn't care if it was a grade 3 or a grade 30. This was the perfect test drive for my new setup. I slammed the throttle down, aiming the heavy prow of the tank directly at the charging beast. We were 2 freight trains hurtling toward a collision. Boom. The sound of the impact was enough to rattle your teeth. When the dust settled, the giant mutant was nothing more than a heap of mangled organic debris. My vehicle, aside from a minor, almost imperceptible tremor, it hadn't even scratched the paint. The durability meter barely flickered. Wang's eyes were wide enough to fall out of his head. "Bro, you just turned that thing into a speed bump? That beast had higher stats and defense than us." I just shrugged. I had no time to gloat. The clock was ticking, and my clearance record was climbing. Level 35, level 40, I was tearing through them like they were made of paper. Back in the safe zone, the atmosphere was spiraling into chaos. The spectators were watching my feed, and they were beyond stunned. Even the Lion King, the head of the Beast God Temple, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Seeing his mortal enemy steamrolling through the ruins while he scrambled to keep up was clearly eating him alive. Look, Xiaoyao is about to overtake Number 17's tank record, a bystander shouted, his voice cracking. The crowd had reached a state of collective numbness. They'd expected my pace to crawl once the difficulty spiked, but I was doing the exact opposite. I was only getting faster. I was pulling a task failed successfully on their logic, refusing to slow down. Holy, he's at level 55. He's been fighting for 10 straight hours without a break. Someone wailed. Is he even human? I'm starting to think he's running a speed hack. I finally pulled back, bringing the tank to a halt only because my energy reserves were running bone dry. The spoils, however, were worth every drop of fuel. After stage 45, the drop rate for loot boxes had doubled, and from stage 50 onward, I was pulling an extra premium blue box every time I cleared a wave. The sheer mountain of modules I'd fused into the muscle tank had turned it into a rolling fortress of immense proportions. During the grind, I'd caught glimpses of malicious intent, prying eyes from the Beast God Temple and the Skyward group. I noted every single one of them. I wasn't the type to let a grudge slide. I'd settle the bill when the time was right. I rolled into the safe zone to catch a breather. Before I could even exit the cab, the Vulcan approached me, trying to test the waters with an offer of alliance. I shut it down immediately with a polite refusal. "Don't be like that," he said, undeterred. "Chief Zhang specifically asked me to look out for you." I paused, genuinely surprised. I'd underestimated how far Chief Zhang's reach actually extended. "You're a mystery, kid," the Vulcan added, glancing at the leaderboard. "Your power is deep, man. You're about to surpass the top-ranked Skyward powerhouse. Seriously, how are you doing it?" I leaned back, resting my arms behind my head. "Honestly, I just really like to sleep, and this is the fastest way to get back to my bed." The Vulcan didn't hide his disdain for the Skyward group. Years ago, he'd been on the cusp of securing a purple loot box, only for their members to swoop in and snatch it right from under his nose. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a somber, cautionary tone. "Listen, kid, while you're grinding to buff your stats, keep your eyes on the horizon. There are enemies out there you haven't accounted for." I tilted my head, curious. "Enemies? You mean the zombies? The mutants? Or maybe the guys from the Beast God Temple?" He shook his head. "Those are just natural disasters. They're predictable. I'm talking about something else. Humanity is complicated. There are always those who thrive in the shadows. Guys like Jiang Sheng are rare. They actually believe in peace and defending the front lines. But then there are the ones who just want to watch the world burn. They call themselves the Destroyers. They want to wipe out the human camp and drag the entire reality down with them." It hit me then. I'd finally started peeling back the layers of this world. It made sense. Put enough pressure on society, and you're going to get some truly unhinged players. "I once knew a powerhouse just like you," he continued, looking off into the distance. "He had it all. But somewhere along the line, he lost his way and fell into the ranks of the Destroyers. I'm telling you this because I hope you keep your head on straight. Join us, and we can fight them together." I couldn't help but laugh. Appreciate the concern, really. But the Destroyers? That's not my scene. Hell, I'm not even interested in the Federation, let alone some creeps hiding in the sewers. I've got my own code, and it mostly involves minding my own business. Once I'd refueled and caught a quick break, I parted ways with the Vulcan and slipped back into the trial space. By the time I hit stage 55, the environment had shifted into a nightmare. The metallic thorns were towering, reaching over 10 meters high and knitting together into an impenetrable wall. The swarm density was absurd, over 300 mutants, including grade 3 gamma blue dragons. These weren't the scrawny mutants from earlier. They were twice the size of the grade 2 Cess, and they weren't just biting, they were airborne. A handful of dragon worms circled overhead, their wings beating to summon storms of lightning and jagged thunder. It was like living through the apocalypse's highlight reel. He's just standing there, menacingly. I could see why number 17 had hit a wall here. The sheer intensity was suffocating. But for me, aside from the grade 3s, which were at least decent at putting up a fight, the rest of the horde were basically just high-performance speed bumps. I cranked the throttle, pushing the modules to their absolute limit. 2 hours later, I cleared stage 60. My ranking jumped from 120th to 4th. The crowd in the safe zone was losing their minds. Stage 60 was widely considered the absolute ceiling for top-tier players. Even number 17 had tapped out at 55. Now, the only people left standing in my way were the 3 legendary powerhouses, the God of Luck at 67, the Vulcan at 71, and the current champion, the Skyward powerhouse, sitting comfortably at 83. "Is this guy even real?" I heard someone whisper. "He's in 4th place. Number 17 has a literal tank, and this guy's ride is only grade 1? That module synergy has to be broken." The chatter was relentless. They were debating where I'd finally hit my limit. They acknowledged I was a freak of nature and that I'd eventually hit legendary status, but for now, they were convinced there was no way I could possibly close the gap to the top 3. I didn't bother responding. I just let the leaderboard do the talking. Under their stunned gaze, my stage count began to climb again, defying every prediction. 63, 70, 75.80. In just 48 hours, I'd left the Vulcan and the God of Luck in the dust, turning their impossible odds into a rearview mirror memory. I finally punched through to the 2nd place spot, leaving the Vulcan and the God of Luck in my dust. They had to admit they were outclassed. Ever since they passed stage 70, their progress had slowed to a crawl. Each level was a brutal resource drain, forcing them to burn through precious energy reserves and hoard metal coins just to keep their vehicles from falling apart. Watching me from the sidelines, they were genuinely baffled. "How is he doing this?" the Vulcan wondered aloud. "Is it really just a high-end refined vehicle? If I didn't know for a fact that red-tier vehicles don't spawn in the first zone, I'd swear he was hiding one." No wonder Jiang Sheng scouted him. His strength is honestly making me feel like an amateur. The pressure on the top-ranked Skyward powerhouse was mounting, too. The whispers in the crowd had shifted from casual curiosity to a singular nagging question. When is Xiao Yao going to snatch the top spot? I couldn't see it, but I could feel the change in the air. The look in his eyes was no longer that of a mentor observing a rising star. It was cold, sharp, and laced with a murderous intent that hadn't been there before. He finally realized I wasn't just a threat, I was an inevitability. I, however, was blissfully focused on my own business. While the rest of the world was stressing, I was busy tinkering with my loot. Metallic Fusion Engine, purple. A unique tool that allowed me to fuse metal attribute modules with other types, provided they were purple tier or below. It was an interesting piece of kit. I'd been building my loadout around a fire-metal hybrid path, and if I could harmonize those two energies, the output would skyrocket exponentially. Delulu is the Solulu, I thought, grinning at the possibilities. I burned through several rerolls until I hit the pity reward. Metal Detonation Module, purple. This let me detonate any metal-based energy I'd already fired. The range and blast radius were insane, though it cost an extra 50% of my energy core per trigger. I didn't hesitate, I slotted it in. If I fused this with my metal-heavy cannon, I didn't even want to imagine the destruction. My current cannon shots could already level half a town. Adding a secondary, massive detonation would turn it into a tactical nuke. I fused the two modules. The result was the Steel-Scorched Storm. It boasted dual fire metal attributes, with heat generation directly tied to the mass of the car body. At max output, it hit 5,000 degrees. My breath hitched when I saw that number. 5,000 degrees? Any grade 4 gamma beast that got within melee range would be vaporized into slag before it could land a hit. And with my body already immune to fire damage, I was basically untouchable. Rest time was over. I pushed back into the ruins, and the environment greeted me with a desolate, decaying graveyard of scrap. The grade 4 gamma metal beasts were appearing in swarms now. There were nearly 1,000 of them. My jaw tightened. Seeing this, I finally understood the truth. The guy sitting at stage 83 was no joke. His strength was absolutely on par with mine, if not higher. But I didn't come this far to turn back. I cranked the Golden Bell shield to its maximum frequency, ready to carve a path through the horde. Because my muscle tank had grown so massive from the constant upgrades, I was basically a rolling target, and every one of those 1,000 beasts was already turning its gaze toward me. It's giving main character energy. Let them come. 1,000 beasts lunged at once, moving with such terrifying synchronicity that dodging was physically impossible. I didn't even try. In that split second before impact, I activated the Steel-Scorched Storm. The temperature around the muscle tank skyrocketed instantly. It felt less like being in a ruin and more like standing at the heart of a volcanic caldera. A shockwave of pure, superheated plasma exploded outward from my chassis, a blistering wave of thermal energy that tore through the incoming swarm. It was absolute carnage. Within seconds, the metallic hides of the beasts began to warp and liquefy. A flight of dragon worms plummeted from the sky like falling rocks, their wings reduced to molten slag before they even hit the ground. But the module wasn't done. Beyond the heat, the air became a shredder, filled with swirling shrapnel and white-hot fireballs that scoured the entire battlefield clean. It took only a few breaths for the massacre to conclude. Silence returned to the ruins, leaving only the sound of my engine humming as I sat untouched, a lone titan standing in a sea of cooling, liquid metal. Wang was frozen in the passenger seat, his mouth hanging open. Dude, that's what you just cooked up? That's not a module, that's a war crime. I couldn't argue. Even I was surprised by the sheer scale of the devastation. It wasn't just a high-damage AoE, it was systematic annihilation. I pushed forward, and before long, the system pings announced my arrival at stage 82. Back in the safe zone, the skyward powerhouse's face had drained of all color. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Skill issue, I thought, watching his reaction through the monitor. He knew the math as well as I did. If I cleared this stage, my momentum would blast me straight past him. If I took the top spot, the carefully curated secrets he'd buried in his climb to the top would be exposed for everyone to see. He was visibly sweating, likely praying to whatever gods he believed in, that I'd flame out right here, mostly because 82 was the limit of his own endurance. Xiao Yao is already at 82. How is he so fast? The crowd was panicking. This is insane. I remember when the Skyward Powerhouse took 10 full days just to push through these two levels. How long until Xiao Yao is the new number one? I was already in the zone, preloading my remaining items to overclock every module I had. I didn't give them 10 days. I gave them 2 final, thunderous blasts of the Steel-Scorched Storm. System. Congratulations, player Xiao Yao. You have cleared stage 82. Reward. Purple tier module box. Premium. Total time. 12 hours. 5 minutes. Rank. Roudanes. A secondary notification pulsed in my vision. Hidden reward. Granted ability to expel any player from the ruins. Cannot affect players above. Stage 80. Hint. You will achieve eligibility for inheritance in 90 days. I stared at the screen. So, the number 1 spot came with an eviction notice, huh? And it had belonged to the Skyward Powerhouse this whole time. Why would he have the power to send people out of the ruins and choose to sit on it? It didn't add up. The secrecy, the weird power dynamics, it felt rotten. A cold shiver ran down my spine as a realization crystallized. What if the guy who was supposed to be the pinnacle of human survivors was the one we were supposed to be fighting? Bro is fighting demons, I thought, the gravity of the situation sinking in. If the Skyward Powerhouse was actually a destroyer, the infiltration was deeper than we thought. It was time to stop climbing and start settling some old debts. An idea formed in my mind. a plan that would turn the tables on everyone. I rolled back into the safe zone, ignoring the shocked stares, and marched straight toward the Vulcan. "Hey," I said, catching him off guard. "I've been thinking. When you guys run into these destroyers, what's the standard operating procedure for taking them down?" He blinked, taken aback by the sudden shift in tone. "Kill them all on sight," the Vulcan spat, his voice trembling with a raw, visceral hatred. Beside him, the god of luck echoed the sentiment, his expression hardening into a mask of pure loathing. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly, suffocating and sharp. "Wait, is that even possible?" someone murmured, their voice cracking. "Skyward is a destroyer? Isn't that just a convenient accusation? They've had bad blood for years, after all." The Skyward powerhouse didn't flinch. He just shook his head with a patronizing, calm smile. "I understand you're desperate to surpass me, but settling our rivalry through petty character assassination, that's beneath you." I didn't waste my breath on a rebuttal. Instead, I turned toward one of the injured survivors and tapped the air, activating my new ability. In a blink, they vanished, safely teleported out of the ruins. The entire room went dead silent. The shock was palpable. Everyone knew the rules. The only way out was to drain the ruins of all energy or conquer the final stage. The fact that I could just wish someone away, like I was clearing a browser tab, shattered their understanding of the game. "This is the perk I earned for taking first place," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. "And let's be clear, the guy who had this power before me, he'd been hoarding it like a dragon with its gold." The Vulcan's face darkened, turning an ominous shade of gray. He and Jiang Shang had harbored suspicions for a long time, but this was the smoking gun. Yet, Skyward remained unfazed. He let out a dry, dismissive scoff. "You really think a single trick is enough to frame me?" he asked, looking at the crowd with practiced concern. "Yes, I kept the ability secret, but it was for everyone's protection. The destroyers are everywhere. If I had announced it, they would have exploited it to wreak havoc. Could you really live with the consequences of that?" He was good. His logic was slippery, and for a second, the crowd hesitated. It was just plausible enough to plant a seed of doubt. But I wasn't here to debate the ethics of his security theater. I stepped forward, cutting him off before he could spin another web. "Cut the act," I said, my voice icy. "Your goal wasn't to protect anyone. It was to hold them hostage. You wanted to trap everyone in this ruin so you could force them into your little cult. You're not a guardian. You're a jailer." Skyward opened his mouth to pivot, but I shut him down for good. "It's over," I declared. "The keys to this place are in my hands now. If you want to leave, you better start paying up. Upgrades, modules, metal coins. I'm a professional hoarder, and I'm taking everything." I glanced toward the members of the Beast God Temple and the Skyward group, whose faces were already paling. "As for you lot, if I ever caught you looking at me with that I'm going to kill you energy, you can plan on staying in these ruins for the rest of your natural life." The Vulcan looked panicked. He lunged forward, using an artifact to yank me into a private soundproof space. "Xiao Yao, listen to me," he hissed, his composure unraveling. "Don't let your temper dictate this. We'll handle him the right way. We have protocols for this sort of thing." "You want to handle him the right way?" I retorted, meeting his gaze head on. "If we don't finish this traitor right here and now, what happens when he slips through your fingers? You think the bureaucracy is going to hold him?" "It doesn't matter," he snapped, his voice tight. "We can't just kill him here. If these ruins are left to fester, the central radiation they emit will eventually spiral into a catastrophe beyond anything Hope City can handle." The Vulcan explained, his expression grim. "The ruins have a hard expiration date of 100 days. If they haven't dissolved by then, Jiang Shang will intervene personally to wipe them from existence, and everyone still inside, they'll be erased right along with them." I felt a chill settle in my gut. Jiang Shang's power must be on an entirely different scale if he could simply delete a dimension-warping ruin. "His strength has long surpassed the limits of the second district," the Vulcan continued, reading my shock. "He's easily top tier even in the third district. He only stays here to anchor the Peace Valley. In every sense of the word, he is the apex predator of this region." I took a moment to let that sink in. "All right, Vulcan. Let's talk business. You want me to play nice? I want to trade. Name your price." "It's simple," I said, leaning back. "I want number 17's Ice Snow Chariot, Skyward's blazing motorcycle, all the resources held by the Beast God Temple, and 10,000 metal coins from every single person remaining in the ruins." The Vulcan looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He was clearly out of his depth with demands this massive. "Look, I can't sign off on that. I'll pull the boss into this. Let's see what he says." He pulled out a golden compass. It shimmered, dissolving into a stream of light that projected a holographic image of Jiang Shang into the air. After we laid out the situation, the betrayal, the threat, and my terms, a deal was struck. We agreed to let number 17 off the hook in exchange for his chariot, and Skyward's motorcycle would become my property. If the investigation proved Skyward was indeed a destroyer, every resource he controlled would be forfeit to me. Jiang Shang even fronted 5 million metal coins to cover the teleportation fees for the remaining survivors, insisting that the Justice faction had to stay united to stand a chance against the encroaching evil. I couldn't argue with that logic, mostly because I was getting paid. "Well, kid," the Vulcan laughed as the projection faded, "you just hit the jackpot. Don't forget your old pal when you're riding high, yeah?" "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied with a grin. "I owe you one for the assist." He wasn't lying about the windfall. Refined tier vehicles were priceless treasures that couldn't be quantified, and I was about to be the first player in history to own 2 of them. Talk about a glow-up. Once the logistics were handled, the ruins began to thin out. Most of the survivors cashed out and left, though a few diehards chose to stay. Even the Lion King decided to stick around, dragging his remaining crew deeper into the challenge. I retreated into my tank to decompress and check the haul for my loot boxes. Unlimited Communicator Purple, a tool that bypasses all restrictions, allowing me to use holographic chat anywhere, anytime. Productivity loading. This was essentially the same model the Vulcan used. No more getting cut off from the network when I'm deep in the trenches. Energy Potion Purple instantly restores 70% of my energy reserves and buffs my recovery rate by 50% for the next 12 hours. This was a godsend. It was going to make my sustain in long-term combat scenarios trivial. After a quick round of maintenance, I went back to the grind. I burned through the stages with ruthless efficiency, clearing everything in my path. It took me only 5 days to hit stage 90. The atmosphere in the ruins grew increasingly desolate as more players reached their breaking point and opted to escape. Down in the safe zone, the remaining spectators were glued to their feeds, watching my progress like it was a live, high-stakes sporting event. Suddenly, the system chime cut through the air, vibrating with a different intensity than usual. System, congratulations, player Xiao Yao. You have reached the final stage, Inheritance Space unlocked. This stage contains the certification for a legendary class transfer. Warning, difficulty is extremely high. Do you wish to challenge? A 99% death rate. Sounds like a future me problem. I didn't care about the odds. The prize was a once-in-a-century legendary class transfer. I took exactly 1 day to rest and top off my energy reserves, and then, without a single hesitation, I stepped into the trial. Inheritance Trial initialized. Level 1 active. System, Inheritance Trial, Level 1. Objective, eliminate 3000 X, Grade 1. Gamma Metal Beasts via collision. Restriction, players cannot use metal coins to repair vehicles. Collision, against the Prince of the Highway. That's barely a challenge, it's just Tuesday. These beasts might as well be speed bumps. My muscle tank's defensive stats were currently bordering on the invincible. Even the Ice Snow Chariot would just be flattened into scrap metal if it tried to challenge me head-on. In the art of vehicular combat, I was in a league of my own. The mutated horde roared in the distance, a tide of iron and fury surging toward me. I didn't even flinch. I just floored it, turning my 40-meter-tall, 32-meter-wide behemoth into a literal doomsday plow. Every beast foolish enough to try and tank the impact was sent straight to the afterlife. I watched the kill count on my dashboard climb in real time. 52, 91. It was jumping by the dozen every second. It took less than a few minutes to reduce the first floor to a pile of wreckage. System, Level 1 cleared. Initiating Level 2. Objective, eliminate 3000 metal beasts using modules. Restriction, players must maintain a minimum distance of 100 meters at all times. That's it? I laughed, the sound booming inside the cockpit. They really thought a simple range restriction could stop me. My muscle tank's energy core capacity had hit a staggering 500,000. Between the Golden Bell shield, perfectly neutralizing any incoming long-range fire, and the Steel Scorched Storm, serving as my ultimate cleanup tool, this wasn't a trial, it was target practice. It wasn't that the ruins were weak, it was just that my current power level was hitting broken territory. Level 2 was cleared before I could even break a sweat. System, Level 3 final assessment. Difficulty increased. Objective, unlimited combat. Eliminate 30,000 metal beasts within 3 hours. I have to admit, seeing that number actually made me pause. 30,000 beasts? If that many metallic monstrosities unleashed their energy at once, they could wipe a dozen cities off the map. This was the legendary assessment for you, they weren't playing around. As the fog ahead began to dissipate, the scale of the horde became clear. The landscape was utterly choked with movement, a roiling, metallic sea that felt like a glimpse into the literal end of the world. The sight triggered a flash of déjà vu. It reminded me of the trial in the Equatorial purgatory. Back then, it was just a test of my willpower, a holographic nightmare. But looking at the crushing pressure of these 30,000 beasts, I knew there were no illusions here. History wasn't repeating itself, this was a genuine war. This is fine, I thought, my knuckles whitening as I gripped the controls. I'm about to show this ruin exactly what happens when you underestimate me. The battle began with a roar that shook the very foundation of the earth. The horde surged forward, creating a literal storm of iron, debris, and razor-sharp shrapnel that whipped through the air with enough force to liquefy anything in its path. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the trigger for the Golden Bell shield while simultaneously dumping my metal-heavy cannon shells into the densest part of the wave. A series of thunderous, earth-shaking booms echoed across the crater, and in the resulting curtain of smoke and shattered metal, thousands of beasts simply ceased to exist. The sheer volume of the horde was becoming a logistical nightmare. Every time I detonated a shell, the resulting shrapnel triggered a secondary explosion, shaking the very foundations of the earth until the ground beneath my tank groaned in protest. My modules were outputting god-tier damage, but against a sea of 30,000 beasts, even my stamina had limits. It was a brutal, relentless grind, but as the thick clouds of smoke and pulverized metal finally began to clear, I remained the only thing standing on that scorched central plain. Back in the safe zone, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Xiao Yao has been in the inheritance space for a while now, someone whispered, eyes glued to the monitors. He's got to be close to finishing, right? I'm still stuck on stage 53, another muttered, sounding defeated. The skill gap is just depressing. Are we actually witnessing the rise of a new legend? Number 17 watched my feet in silence. He clawed his way up to stage 78, an achievement that put him on par with legends like the Vulcan and the God of Luck, but he knew that was his ceiling. Looking at my position on the leaderboard, miles ahead of everyone else, he could only let out a bitter, resigned sigh. Skill issue, he told himself, though the crushing weight of that defeat was hard to swallow. You've got a real talent, Xiao Yao, but the road is long. I'll catch up one day. The other three great experts remained stoic, though their minds were racing. They knew that once I cleared the final trial, the ruins would break. They were already calculating their next moves. Even the skyward powerhouse, lurking in the shadows, watched with a cold, serpentine focus. Keep climbing, kid. The more you achieve, the more you're just gathering it all for me to steal. Inside the inheritance space, I struck down the final beast. Before I could even catch my breath, a beam of brilliant white light surged from the ground and enveloped me. I blinked, my vision adjusting to a sudden, serene landscape. Standing before me was an elderly man with hair as white as frost. I am the master of these ruins, he said, his voice echoing with an ancient weight. You have performed well, successor. I immediately grew cautious. I remembered the Vulcans warning the stories about how some destroyers had become nothing more than puppets to these entities. You wanted something from me? I've cleared the trial. Just hand over the reward. The old man waved a hand dismissively. Rest assured, your prize will be delivered. I simply wish to speak with you. Join us, and I will grant you power beyond your comprehension. You could become the new master of this ruin, holding the entirety of the steel ridge in the palm of your hand. I knew better. Every gorgeous reward from a destroyer came with a hidden price tag. The condition is simple. You dedicate your life to the resurrection of the steel god. In exchange, you shall receive infinite glory. I didn't even have to think about it. No, if I agreed, I'd be signing away my soul, becoming nothing more than a glorified slave to some eldritch machine. Think carefully, the old man pressed, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. Accept, and you'll skip decades of struggle. Any module, any item, I can even grant you the power to elevate your ride to a red-tier vehicle. Respectfully, no, I'm good. I don't run with destroyers. System, congratulations player, inheritance trial complete. Reward, legendary class transfer certification. The ruins will shut down in 60 seconds. The world dissolved into static. When my vision cleared, I was standing on a vast, flat plain surrounded by a massive crowd of confused players. But the reunion was short-lived. 3 vehicles materialized out of thin air with violent, reality-warping force. The Vulcan Sea of Fire, the God of Luck's rolling thunder, and Skyward's blinding beam of light. The moment they touched ground, the air exploded into violence. Skyward, you traitorous scum. The Vulcan roared. He didn't wait for an explanation. He unleashed a torrent of flames so intense it turned the horizon into an inferno. Vulcan, get a grip. Let me go, and I'll explain everything, Skyward yelled, his sleek ride weaving desperately through the sea of fire as he scrambled to escape. The God of Luck summoned a deluge of thunder and lightning, turning the battlefield into a chaotic pursuit. Skyward, finally pushed to his breaking point, stopped holding back. He pushed his blazing motorcycle to its absolute limit, erupting in a blinding, infinite radiance that tore through the sky. Is this the combat domain of a Gamma-tier vehicle? I thought, genuinely awestruck. Even watching from a distance, the sheer scale of the energy was terrifying. The three-way clash was escalating rapidly. If they went all out, it wouldn't be a fight, it would be a mutual destruction, and if Skyward died right here, I'd lose any hope of extracting more intelligence on the destroyers. I couldn't let that happen. I pulled out my command token. Command token, gold. Function 1, generate command radiance, clearing all hostile attacks within a 1 kilometer radius. Function 2, generate command space, covering a 1 kilometer radius where no life form can suffer physical or spiritual death. Skyward caught sight of me. Even with his immense strength, he was being pushed to the brink by the combined onslaught of 2 legendary powerhouses. His hatred for me reached an all-time high. He knew my interference had shredded his plans and left him trapped in this pathetic corner. Desperation triggered a reckless surge of power. He ripped away from his pursuers and forged a massive, scorching construct of living fire, locking his sights directly on me. Xiao Yao, look out! The Vulcan shouted, his face draining of color as he lunged forward, but it was too late. Skyward's kit was built for pure speed. While the Vulcan might have hit harder, in terms of raw velocity, Skyward was in a league of his own. The fireball screamed across the void, moving so fast it tore the air itself, crossing the distance in a few ragged breaths. Just as everyone braced for my inevitable end, a familiar, chilling pressure descended from the heavens. Skyward's arrogant aura vanished instantly. He knew who it was. To anyone else, he was a monster. Before the absolute power of the man who ruled Peace Valley, he was nothing but an ant. Zhang Sheng, this is a personal vendetta, you can't stop me. Skyward shrieked. The fire construct tore through space, a bolt of pure annihilation. But the moment it reached me, the air hummed. A low, mocking chuckle drifted into my ear. Skyward, I won't let you have your way. A veil of golden light erupted around me, instantly coalescing into a shockwave that radiated outward. In a heartbeat, the fire construct hit my perimeter and simply shattered, dissolving into harmless golden motes of light. Is that The power of rules? Skyward gasped, his eyes widening as he recognized the origin of the light. This is impossible. Xiao Yao? How could he have a golden module? Those are strategic-level relics, even Jiang Sheng treats them like forbidden treasures. The Vulcan and the God of Luck exchanged stunned looks. Even legends like them had never laid eyes on a golden module. Good for you, kid. You really were hiding an ace up your sleeve. Before the shock could settle, a bolt of thunder cracked through the air. It pierced Skyward's layers of defense with unstoppable force. His blazing motorcycle remained functional, but his body was shredded, leaving him reeling and severely injured. We all knew it, that was Jiang Sheng's intervention. With the primary threat crippled, the tension in the group began to dissipate. But the relief didn't last. A new, suffocating pressure suddenly materialized. It felt eerily similar to Jiang Sheng's, yet somehow darker, heavier. Everyone, get back. The God of Luck roared, his face twisting as he frantically threw up layers of protective shields. The Vulcan sensed the shift too, instantly surrounding himself with a ring of defensive fire. It wasn't enough. A massive hand, materialized from pure, oppressive energy, tore through the sky. It didn't just strike, it obliterated their defenses as if they were made of paper, shattering everything in a single, terrifying motion. The massive, spectral hand surged toward the two legendary powerhouses with terrifying momentum. Considering it had just effortlessly dismantled Skyward, a powerhouse in his own right, I knew this was a lethal threat. I couldn't stand a chance against a god-slaying behemoth head-on, but I had one card left to play. Get over here, I screamed, activating the command token. The Vulcan and the God of Luck didn't hesitate, diving toward me as the hand loomed overhead like a falling mountain. Just as it prepared to crush us into scrap metal, I triggered the token's rule-based protection. A blinding burst of golden light erupted, forming an impenetrable barrier. The impact hit us with the force of a tectonic shift, forcing the tanks of the two legends to groan under the crushing pressure, but thanks to the command space, we remained unscathed. A split second later, a jagged bolt of lightning, thick as a tree trunk, tore through the sky and slammed into the spectral hand, shattering it into nothingness. Far away, in a hidden valley, a cloaked old man pulled his hand out of a glowing fishbowl. His skin was visibly charred, seared by the retaliation. Beside him lay the battered, broken form of Skyward. Jiang Sheng, the old man hissed, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and lingering malice. What a terrifying youth. It's a pity he wouldn't join us. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, his eyes cold. You two are powerful, yes, but I wonder, can you survive the catastrophe to come? Back inside the ruins of Steel Ridge, Number 17 was locked in conversation with the master of the ruins. Agree, and you shall be welcomed into our ranks, the old man whispered. I will bestow upon you power beyond anything you've ever imagined. Number 17's eyes narrowed. How strong? Will I be stronger than Xiao Yao? In the short term? No, the old man admitted, his voice oily with deception. His potential has already eclipsed your understanding. But in the future, with my guidance, anything is possible. It was an offer draped in sweet, lethal temptation. Number 17's expression shifted, uncertainty, warring with ambition. Meanwhile, the news was spreading through Peace Valley like wildfire. Skyward, the legendary powerhouse, is actually a destroyer. Xiao Yao apparently owns a space-type refined vehicle, and the motorcycle was just a decoy. The rumors were flying, each one more absurd than the last, leaving the population in a state of total shock. By the time we returned to the Peace Valley headquarters, the dust had begun to settle. Jiang Sheng kept his word and handed over Skyward's blazing motorcycle. So, Jiang Sheng asked, leaning back, did you meet the master of the ruins? The one at Steel Ridge? I nodded. I did. I told him where he could shove his offer. Jiang Sheng chuckled. The resources in those ruins are beyond counting. Do you mean to tell me none of that piqued your interest? The old gods are just failures waiting to be forgotten, I replied coolly. If I had surrendered to them, I would have been killing my own future. Jiang Sheng looked at me, a flicker of genuine respect crossing his face. You're a rare breed indeed. He leaned in then, offering a path that many would have died for. He invited me to join his elite three-man squad, the absolute pinnacle of power in the region, with the stipulation that I would eventually succeed him as the guardian of peace. It was a tempting position, but respectfully, no. It sounded like a glorified desk job. I wanted to keep climbing, not settle down and retire in a safe zone. Adulting is soup, and I'm a fork. As I turned to leave, Jiang Sheng's voice cut through the room, stopping me in my tracks. I don't care what you plan to do, he said, his gaze turning serious. But, as long as you stand on the side of justice, I won't stand in your way, Jiang Sheng said, his voice steady. Peace Valley is facing a massive beast tide soon. If you can climb to the number 1 spot on the monster-slaying leaderboard, I'll gift you a 3,000 capacity expansion item. It'll let you fuse even more powerful modules. I knew about the beast tides every 3 months. Waves of monster nests laid siege to Hope City. We had about a month until the next one. Challenge accepted. I knew that while vehicle quality mattered, true strength wasn't just about the ride. Look at Skyward. Even without his refined vehicle, the mysterious entity in the ruins still wanted him. They were looking for the pilot, not just the hardware. Jiang Sheng could probably manufacture a dozen legendary experts overnight if he wanted to, but they'd just be hollow shells, all flash and no substance. Real strength is earned, one brutal step at a time. I couldn't afford to get comfortable. I had to keep evolving until both the Steel God and the Master of the Ruins looked at me and my machine and felt genuine, unadulterated fear. After I left, Jiang Sheng watched the horizon, his expression darkening. The filth, hiding in the shadows, is starting to surface, he murmured. The crisis facing Peace Valley this time. It's bigger than I thought. He paused, his eyes narrowing. They're coming. The Beast God Temple is finally making their move. Back at my hotel, I didn't waste a second. I immediately equipped Skyward's Ride, the blazing motorcycle, a Gamma tier machine. Good lord. The top speed hit 2,500 kilometers per hour. That's basically cruising speed for a commercial jet. It came with 2 special skills: Blazing Amplification, which boosted fire attribute module damage by 100%, and Flame Overlay, which infused the chassis with fire elements and used an energy pump to force an explosive burst of acceleration. System: Refined Vehicle detected. Fusing sub-vehicle skills. Effects enhanced. Shared skills activated. You may toggle individual skills on or off. Task failed successfully, I thought with a grin. This thing could actually fuse with my own gear? That meant the destructive potential of my steel-scorched storm had just doubled. My muscle tank plus the blazing motorcycle, I was officially a dual-spec nightmare, blending physical tanking with high-octane elemental damage. I stripped the blazing motorcycle of its remaining modules. Most were standard, scaling in power with my energy reserves, but my fusion slots were already capped. I desperately needed more capacity items. I even cleared a patch of land in my spare time to grow wood origin fruit trees. They were incredibly useful. They absorbed the remains of mutated beasts and converted them into fruits that significantly boosted my physical stats. While catching up with Bicycle King Wang, I heard about a new location, the Void Battlefield. What kind of place is that? I asked. It's a special zone in the 2nd District, similar to the Divine Universe lands, he explained. It's packed with rare materials and modules, but it's lethally dangerous. You need to be at least Gamma 3 to even step foot inside. Does it have capacity expansion items? I pressed. Definitely. 99% of the capacity items in the 2nd District come from there. My heart jumped. I wanted to head out and harvest that loot immediately, but I was only Gamma 1. I had to hit at least level 3. The battlefield was divided into 3 tiers. Level 3, 5 for the first layer, 5-7 for the second, and 8-10 for the third. Another day, another dollar. I realized that guys like the Vulcan didn't just stay in the 2nd District to babysit Peace Valley. There was clearly a lot more going on in those deeper layers. I realized then that the reason legends like the Vulcan were still lingering in the 2nd District wasn't just to play guard dog for Peace Valley. Their true objective was looting the Void Battlefield. If they were willing to risk it, the treasures hidden inside must be beyond imagination. Every layer offers a chance to score capacity expansion items, Wang had told me. And that's not even mentioning the high-tier modules. Some of them are just as effective as the gear you're already rocking. It made sense. Everyone's capacity was a bottleneck. Module fusion basically followed a 3-act structure. Start with whatever junk you can find, move to specializing in a specific element once you have options, and finally, run into the brick wall of capacity limits, forcing you to hunt for expansion items just to fit in the real top-tier gear. Once I'd made plans with Wang to hit the battlefield the moment I leveled up, I stocked up on some essential supplies in the city. Then, I straddled the blazing motorcycle and tore out of the city gates. I didn't know it, but I was being watched. From the shadows, the members of the Beast God Temple were tracking my every move. Leader, a scout whispered into his comms. Xiao Yao just left through the east gate. Standing inside his war machine, the Lion King felt a surge of manic heat behind his eyes. He hadn't returned to Peace Valley since the Ruins incident, all for this singular moment. I had finally leveled up, and this was his only chance to kill me and snatch my refined vehicle for himself. Respectfully, no. Attacking me outside of Peace Valley meant even Jiang Sheng couldn't easily intervene. He pulled out a heavy, ornate token, the Ram token. With that in his hand, he was certain victory was in the bag. The Lion King's true confidence didn't come from his lackeys in the Beast God Temple, but from the organization backing him, the Ram God Alliance. They were a top-tier powerhouse beyond the borders of the 3rd District, famous for raw, crushing force and impenetrable defense. Their elite experts were so strong they could even trade blows with the Federation. The Ram token was their signature relic. It invoked the power of rules to force an opponent into a confined space. Inside that space, all offensive modules were rendered inert. The only things that mattered were the raw mass of the vehicle and its defensive, utility buffs. A single, decisive collision would determine the winner. I don't care how good he is, the Lion King thought, sneering. My vehicle is Gamma 5. He's just a Gamma 1. He won't survive a single impact. He knew about my reputation, but he had absolute faith in his ability to pulverize me. Xiao Yao, he muttered to himself. I told you, everything you have will be mine. He immediately rallied his goons and began the hunt. It didn't take long for them to pick up my trail. As soon as they locked onto my coordinates, the Lion King slammed his vehicle into high gear, screaming toward my position. On my end, the threat materialized on my heads-up display as a swarm of encroaching red dots. It's the Beast God Temple, Wang said, his voice hardening as he recognized the signature. A cold, burning hatred flickered in his eyes. It's giving main character energy, I thought, though the situation was rapidly devolving into a that's crazy work scenario. Bro is fighting demons, and apparently, Those demons are on my tail. I remembered it vividly not long ago. These bastards had nearly crippled our brother, Hanmo. Don't worry, I said, my voice cold as ice. I'm here to settle that debt today. I had been itching to get my hands on the Beast God Temple's lackeys anyway. The fact that they'd practically gift-wrapped themselves for me was almost too convenient. As for the Lion King himself, I honestly didn't even have him on my radar. My patience is under maintenance, and clearly, his was about to expire. As the swarm of vehicles closed in, I didn't bolt. I actually throttled back, slowing my pace until they had me completely surrounded. Just as the tension peaked, a massive, oversized pickup truck, its front grille sporting menacing, jagged tusks, plowed through the formation. It was gargantuan, twice the size of a standard heavy-duty pickup. It could only be the Lion King. "Xiao Yao, you're finished," he bellowed. He pumped a surge of energy into the token gripped in his hand. A dark, violet ripple tore through the air, swallowing both our vehicles whole. In the blink of an eye, I was ripped from the world and dumped onto a long, desolate stretch of asphalt. Sealed off by the gates of hell at both ends, there was no way out. The Lion King's truck sat at the opposite end of the road, staring me down. "This is what happens when you're arrogant," he sneered, his voice echoing with absolute confidence. "Inside this collision space, your offensive modules are useless. It's just steel on steel, and today is your execution day." I have to admit, being teleported into an unknown dimension had me a little concerned for a heartbeat. But after hearing his little monologue, I honestly had to fight the urge to laugh. "Bro, you're choosing to challenge me to a ramming contest. Are you insane?" He spat, his face twisting with rage as he saw my reaction. "I'm about to crush you, and you're laughing? Do you want to die that badly? If you're going to talk, talk. If you're going to hit me, then hurry up," I goaded him. The Lion King had officially lost it. He let out a primal roar, revving his engine until the roar shook the very foundations of the space, and he charged at me like a freight train. "Hey Lion King," I called out, grinning. "Before we do this, why don't you take a look at what you're actually up against?" With a flick of my wrist, I summoned my true form. A hulking, indomitable beast of iron and steel materialized out of thin air, dwarfing his pickup until it looked like a literal toy stroller. The sheer scale of my ride made his eyes go wide, the color draining from his face as he realized he'd just signed his own death warrant. He'd spent his life playing lion, but standing in front of him wasn't just a predator, it was a prehistoric juggernaut. He slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The momentum was already carrying him toward his doom. "Xiao Yao, I surrender. I was wrong. I'll never oppose you again." His pleas fell on deaf ears. I had zero interest in his apology. Tell that to my tires. The impact was swift and final. In a heartbeat, the Lion King and his prized truck were nothing but a scattered pile of twisted scrap metal. Outside the space, the Beast God Temple goons were practically vibrating with anticipation. "Xiao Yao's toast," one muttered. "The Lion King's chassis is absurdly durable. He's finished. This is a massive payday," another added, eyes gleaming with greed. "The Beast God Temple is finally going to hit the big leagues." Suddenly, a flash of violet light signaled the end of the Ram token's rule-based barrier. The crowd erupted in cheers, ready to welcome their leader back in glory. But the moment the light faded, their cheers died in their throats. Their expressions shifted from triumphant malice to sheer, unadulterated terror as they saw a massive, towering monstrosity sitting on the road and, scattered beneath its shadow, nothing more than a heap of pathetic, smoking trash. "What is that thing? Where did the Lion King go?" Panic rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Someone finally caught a glimpse of the wreckage and shrieked, "Run! That heap of twisted metal! It looks like the Lion King's ride." "It's giving main character energy," I thought as I surveyed the chaos. "And you guys, you're giving cannon fodder." "Oh, no you don't." I raised a hand, activating the steel's scorched storm. A searing tide of thermal energy erupted from my vehicle, a tsunami of heat that swept across the battlefield. None of them stood a chance. In a matter of seconds, the Beast God Temple, a mid-level organization that had built a fearsome reputation in the 2nd District, was completely wiped off the map. Back in the chat channels, the news hit like a meteor. The word was spreading that the Beast God Temple, the self-proclaimed masters of the novice zones who had crushed countless competitors with their sheer, unadulterated power, had been annihilated while attempting to hunt me down. It wasn't just luck. I had the treasure chest, the infinite refresh system, and the command token that kept pulling me out of the fire when things got dicey. The notification of my kill flashed across the region. "Lion King, deceased." "Wait, the Lion King is dead?" The chat exploded. "It's not just him, half my friends list, all part of the Beast God Temple, just went offline at once. This was a top-tier mid-level group. What happened? Was this an act of God or a player?" "Word on the street is the temple was executing a bounty on Xiao Yao," someone posted. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, the realization hit. Could he have actually counter-killed the entire squad? Xiao Yao and the temple have been at each other's throats for a while now. Man, Xiao Yao is a legend. The Beast God Temple guys were just absolute smooth brains. They saw him wrecking house in the ruins and still thought he was a soft target? Skill issue. I was completely oblivious to the chaos I'd caused in the forums. I was busy basking in the simple, honest joy of looting. I set my vehicle to autopilot and pulled up the system interface to analyze my new prize. I toggled the gravity ram ability, a nasty piece of tech that converted the vehicle's mass into raw kinetic force during a collision, generating a devastating recoil shockwave. So that was his trump card, I mused. No wonder he was so confident about dragging me into the collision space. If I'd been driving a standard vehicle, he would have shredded me. Too bad for him, he ran into me. Talk about bad luck. The RAM token was equally impressive. Violet light, rule-based spatial confinement, and a 50,000 energy unit cost with a 3-day cooldown. Honestly, Lion King, you left me some great souvenirs. Consider this my thanks. I'll be sure to stop by and burn some incense for you next year. I pulled up my personal character sheet, the glow of the screen reflecting in my eyes. The status bar was ticking down. Class conversion, 3 minutes remaining. I was moments away from officially unlocking the legendary Metal Series profession, productivity loading, and I couldn't wait to see what this power-up had in store.